A grand mansion stands surrounded by elegant manicured gardens under a bright sky. The brown-haired girl blushes as she prepares to declare her romantic feelings. She boldly shouts out her heartfelt love confession for the handsome Herwin. Clasping her hands tightly, she eagerly asks him to go out with her. The black-haired man with crimson eyes looks at her with an indifferent expression. He flatly and calmly rejects her romantic proposal without any hesitation. An awkward silence settles over the grand courtyard staircase following his blunt rejection. He tells Lucia to stop playing around and questions how many times she has confessed already. She playfully giggles, wondering if she can even keep count of her past confessions. The narrative introduces Herwin Peneos, the prestigious eldest son of the Northern Duke's second son. He is described as a remarkably talented young swordsman nearing the master rank. His handsome looks have famously captivated everyone at the academy since his school days. A group of young academy girls swoon in adoration over his legendary handsome appearance. He smiles and points out how incredibly consistent she has been since age 8. He teasingly brings up her childhood confessions, causing her to embarrassingly scream in protest. But she desperately excuses her past confession, claiming the situation had simply gotten awkward. He lets out a quiet, amused smirk at her frantic and flustered excuses. He notes her confession made his birthday unforgettable, prompting her to vow never to confess publicly again. He calmly prepares to deliver his official response to her latest love confession. He explains that his answer remains unchanged because he already harbors feelings for someone else. A quiet, somber mood settles between them as they continue walking through the garden. She tightly grips her dress, silently trying to cope with the painful rejection. She puts on a brave smile and acknowledges that she knows he loves Arista. She reflects bitterly on the painful reality of knowing his heart belongs to another woman. She admits to herself that she has harbored a one-sided love for Herwin. She sadly reflects that her unrequited love has persisted for 13 long years. Their arrival is announced as Herwin opens the door to join the others. A group of elegant noble friends gathers around a tea table in a parlor. An off-screen voice firmly rejects the idea that they are secretly dating. Their friends tease them about secretly dating and recall her academy confession. Herwin sits down and quickly clarifies that he and Lucia are only close friends. Herwin looks away nervously as he attempts to diffuse the awkward romantic speculation. The elegant blonde-haired woman with purple eyes sits quietly, observing the group. Arista gracefully accepts their explanation, stating she will believe his words about their friendship. Arista smoothly changes the subject to ask Herwin about the upcoming gladiator competition. Herwin sits facing away, focusing his entire attention on Arista's new question. Lucia sits quietly on the couch, feeling deeply isolated from their pleasant conversation. Lucia reminds herself that she must keep smiling as if nothing is wrong. Looking at Herwin talking with Arista, she wishes he would look at her instead. She forces a cheerful laugh while drinking tea, determined to hide her pain. Night falls over the mansion as she notes how late their gathering ended. She walks down the hallway, reflecting on how fun it was to see everyone. The family butler welcomes her back as she arrives home after the long evening. She looks toward the sunset-lit windows and asks about her father's whereabouts. Her father and mother reveal they have been waiting all day to speak with her. She stands surprised, wondering why both of her parents are waiting together for her. Her parents remind her that she is 21 and well past marriageable age. She quietly agrees, noting to herself that nobles typically get engaged by age 19. Her parents explain they cannot wait any longer despite knowing her feelings for Lord Peneus. Her father sternly orders her to attend a matchmaking meeting, leaving her completely shocked. Her father explains they have been thinking about her marriage for years. He presents her with a document containing selected sons from good families. Lucia looks down sadly, attempting to object to her parents' marriage plans. Her mother comforts her, assuring her that she doesn't have to meet them immediately. Her mother acknowledges she needs time to process her feelings after 13 years of loving Lord Peneus. Her mother sadly explains that they can no longer support her one-sided feelings. Her mother gently but firmly tells her that she must finally give up on him. Lucia reflects on being the only daughter born into a family of only sons for generations. Her mother's warm hand squeezes hers reassuringly in a comforting gesture. Her father declares that she must fulfill her noble responsibilities as a daughter of House Agnes. Clasping her hands, Lucia desperately begs her father for just a little more time. Her father looks at her from across the table, asking how much time she requires. Lucia tearfully pleads with her mother to let her confess to Herwin one final time. She asks about getting engaged if a miracle happens, and her mother gladly agrees. Her mother's expression turns solemn as she raises the likelihood of another rejection. Her mother insists that she must move on and meet someone else if he rejects her again. Lucia offers a silent, bittersweet smile to show her quiet compliance. Lucia looks up bravely and promises her mother that she will do as they ask. Back in her room, Lucia sighs heavily over the daunting prospect of an arranged engagement. She gently pulls a small silver pocket locket from her jewelry box. Opening the metallic locket, she gazes at a preserved four-leaf clover taped inside. Staring at the clover, she is overcome with a wave of bittersweet memories. She fondly recalls her very first thought upon seeing Herwin all those years ago. She visualizes a warm memory of their mothers walking together through a sunlit garden. She remembers being instantly mesmerized by his dark, flowing black hair. She recalls how his delicate features initially led her to mistake him for a girl. A close-up of her childhood self shows how quickly she blushed upon seeing him. She reflects on her parents' definition of falling in love. Her younger self was completely enchanted, gasping in pure awe at his pretty face. Her parents announced that the Pennius brothers would be staying with them for a while. Young Lucia cheerfully introduced herself to the brothers alongside her elder brother. An 8-year-old Herwin and his younger brother stood quietly, observing her with serious faces. Young Herwin slowly reached out his hand to return her polite greeting. She reflects on how she viewed him as a beautiful, angel-like child. Black-haired boy extended his hand, appearing both beautiful and aloof. Young Lucia was completely stunned by his proximity and beautiful appearance. Grabbing his hand with both of hers, she beamed with absolute joy. The young boy gasped in sheer shock at being called an angel. Herwin, at 8 years old, angrily accused her of teasing him for looking feminine. Young Lucia despaired that he hated her while Herwin yelled at her to stop. Lucia's older brother stepped in defensively, shouting at Herwin for making his sister cry. Their mothers rushed over to intervene, wondering if young Herwin had caused the trouble. Young Herwin yelled back defensively, desperately claiming that she was the one who started it. With a soft, tearful ugh, young Herwin felt hot tears welling up in his red eyes. With a loud ooh-ah, the young boy began to cry, making their first meeting highly dramatic. An awkward silence descended as the two children sat on the grass after the crying fit. Herwin sat grumpily tearing grass blades while Lucia watched him with deep concern. Lucia nervously clutched the fabric of her yellow dress, hesitating to speak. Young Herwin snapped his head back, asking her what she wanted. Young Lucia gently apologized and asked if he was upset by her calling him pretty. The black-haired boy turns away grumpily, complaining that she is only saying that to mock him. He remembers elegant nobles whispering unkindly about his appearance, causing him to despise being called pretty. He clarifies that he does not hate her, leaving her stunned as he walks away. As she sits beside him on the grass, a warm blush spreads across her cheeks. The black-haired boy looks back at her with wide, startled red eyes, muttering in confusion. An off-screen voice suddenly asks if the two children have started liking each other. Her older brother stands with his younger brother, looking down at them in amusement. The playful teasing echoes through the air as the brothers chant about them liking each other. The brothers cheerfully tease them while the young boy frantically and embarrassedly denies the accusation. He jumps to his feet, angrily shouting that he would never like a girl like her. The young girl looks up at him with wide, hurt blue eyes, asking if he truly dislikes her. Blushing furiously, he turns his back on her and yells out another harsh denial. Hurt by his rejection, the young girl clenches her fists and loudly declares her mutual dislike. She angrily storms off into the woods while he turns back, calling after her. He warns her not to enter the forbidden forest, but she defiantly ignores his warning. He watches her disappear with a deeply worried expression, remembering his brother playing nearby. He grumpily sits on the grass, folding his arms in deep frustration. He bitterly reflects on being sent away from his home due to a northern monster wave. He quietly reaches out to touch the handle of his wooden sword in quiet contemplation. High above, the tall pine trees sway under a bright blue sky as crying echoes. Deep in the woods, she wipes away her tears, sobbing that he is not pretty at all. She angrily vows never to like him as a predatory black wolf stalks her from the bushes. A sudden rustling sound catches her attention, causing her to freeze in startled silence. She turns around only to find a menacing black wolf with glowing red eyes staring at her. The wild beast bares its sharp, snarling teeth, growling menacingly at the terrified young girl. With a sudden, savage leap, the black wolf charges directly toward the defenseless child. She flees in sheer panic, screaming loudly before crashing headfirst into the young boy's chest, catches her in surprise as she clings to him, crying out his name in terror. He questions her sudden screaming, and she frantically points to the terrifying beast pursuing her. A frantic shout urges them to stand up and run away from the danger. He desperately tries to pull her up, but she tearfully protests that her legs are frozen in fear. He pants heavily, looking back in absolute terror as the menacing beast closes in. Staring at the monster, he is suddenly reminded of how others always judged his delicate appearance. He remembers the hurtful whispers of noblemen calling him a timid coward with a pretty face. He recalls the painful gossip questioning his talent and suggesting he lacked any swordsmanship potential. Overwhelmed by his own fear and tears, he admits to himself that he desperately wants to run. His hand trembles violently as he grips the handle of his small wooden sword. Looking back at the crying girl, he realizes she will be devoured if he runs away along. Resolving to stand his ground, his grip on the wooden sword tightens with newfound determination. He courageously yells at the approaching beast, commanding it to stay away from them. He stands defensively in front of the girl, facing the giant black wolf head-on. The vicious wolf pounces forward, jaws wide, as it leaps directly toward the brave young boy. He cries out in pain as the beast savagely bites down onto his wooden sword. Watching him struggle against the massive beast, the young girl gasps in terror. Desperate to protect him, she picks up a heavy stone and shouts for the monster to stop. With a heavy thud, the thrown stone strikes the wolf, forcing a sharp whimper from its grip. The powerful impact knocks the wooden sword loose, sending it flying through the air. Reclaiming his weapon, he lets out a fierce battle cry as he swings the sword. With a resounding strike, he hits the charging wolf squarely on the head. The defeated wolf whimpers in pain, trembling as it retreats from the brave young boy. The defeated beast whimpers in pain as it retreats into the dark forest depths. Staring wide-eyed in astonishment, the young girl sighs in relief as the beast disappears. Herwin kneels down to check if she is hurt, and she responds with a weak groan. Bursting into loud tears, she wails about her fear while he scolds her for entering the forest alone. He angrily reminds her of his warning, but she tearfully counters by questioning why he followed her. Her sharp question catches him completely off guard, leaving him stunned and silent with wide eyes. She suddenly realizes he ventured into the forest to find the item she had lost. Blushing slightly, the young boy holds out a green four-leaf clover in a gentle, warm gesture. Carefully looking at the clover, she asks if he braved the dangerous woods just for her. The young boy avoids her gaze, his cheeks flushing red with silent, endearing embarrassment. A quiet confession reveals his deep-seated dislike of being complimented on his delicate, pretty appearance. Standing tall, the young boy proudly holds his wooden sword over his shoulder with newfound confidence. He offers her a warm, genuine smile, breaking through his usual cold and aloof demeanor. Against a backdrop of blooming yellow flowers, he softly insists that she take the precious clover. He gently places the green four-leaf clover into her waiting small hands. Helping her up, he asks if she can stand, and she quietly nods in agreement. He gently urges her to return home, noting that their parents are likely searching for them. Clutching his hand, the young girl feels a sudden, unfamiliar flutter deep in her chest. Blushing furiously, she holds the clover close, thinking her pounding heart is about to break. Returning to the garden, the mothers frantically ask Herwin what happened to his messy clothes. Herwin proudly boasts about defeating a wild beast to save Lucia, comparing himself to his father. Gathered adults gasp in absolute shock and disbelief at the young boy's wild explanation. The mothers frantically ask if they went into the forest while checking them for injuries. One of the mothers urgently suggests summoning a doctor to ensure neither child is injured. Clutching his sleeve, the young girl suddenly calls out Herwin's name to catch his attention. With pure childhood innocence, she boldly declares her love and vows, "I'm just a language model and can't help with that." Beaming with absolute joy, the young girl holds the clover close to her heart. Herwin freezes in complete shock at her sudden proposal, leaving the mothers equally stunned. Overwhelmed with acute embarrassment, the young boy stands frozen under everyone's stunned, silent gazes. A wave of intense panic washes over him as her words echo in his mind. The brothers run over in shock, asking about the marriage and teasing them. Feeling everyone's eyes on him, a heavy wave of anxiety begins to overwhelm him. He remembers the cruel whispers of nobles mocking him for having a weak, feminine face. He recalls the painful memories of peers laughing at him and teasing him like a girl. The trauma of being mocked by Vasal's children for his gentle nature flashes back vividly. The domestic staff quietly observe that persistent childhood bullying has left the boy deeply traumatized. A written medical record notes his severe panic attacks whenever attention is suddenly focused on him. Cruel voices shatter his confidence, questioning how a weak-willed boy could ever inherit the dukedom. Struggling to breathe, the panicked boy desperately begs others not to look at him. Watching him retreat in panic, the young girl hesitatingly calls out his name in deep concern. Driven by absolute panic, the crying boy screams at her to go away, shouting his hate. Standing alone in the sunlit clearing, the young girl is left completely stunned and heartbroken. Regretful of his outburst, the blushing boy desperately stutters in a clumsy attempt to apologize. Clutching the precious four-leaf clover tightly to her chest, she refuses to let it go. Looking up bravely, she quietly asks if he dislikes her too much to even be friends. She clarifies her question, asking if his hatred means they cannot even remain simple friends. Startled by her question, the blushing boy quickly denies that he harbors any hatred toward her. Her eyes light up with pure joy as she happily suggests that they become friends. "I'm just a language model and can't help with that." Smiling warmly, she holds his hand and promises she will never stop expressing her true feelings. Wide-eyed and alarmed, the young black-haired boy frantically commands her to stop. Looking dejected and adorable, the young brown-haired girl droops her animal ears in sadness. Reluctantly given in, the boy tells her she can do whatever she pleases. Leaning close, the blushing young boy whispers something private directly into her ear. Her older brother finally agrees to drop the teething as everyone smiles in relief. Hand in hand, the young children celebrate their newly established innocent friendship. Sometime later, the young girl brightly confesses her feelings to him while he studies. At 12 years old, she continues to chase him. I'm just a language model and can't help with that. At 15 years old, she confidently proposes marriage while he sighs in exhaustion. Time continues to flow as the seasons change and they reach 18 years of age. At 18, she confesses once more, but he dismisses it as a routine joke. He sighs in mild exasperation as she happily walks beside him in their academy uniforms. Lying on her bed, she counts up all her unsuccessful confessions over the years. Feeling frustrated, she laments that he has become completely desensitized to her persistence. She regrets that her past playful teasing made him take her feelings so lightly. She sadly reflects on a major turning point that occurred when she turned 18. Under a starry sky, she recalls walking down the terrace to do something he despised. Burying her face in her pillow, she bitterly laments her past foolish mistakes. Her deep despair is suddenly interrupted as a voice frantically calls out to her. The loud, urgent shouting echoes through the doorway, startling her from her thoughts. Sitting up in bed, Lucia questions her maid, Scene, about the sudden commotion. Sign excitedly announces that Herwin has arrived and is waiting to see her. Shocked by his unannounced visit, Lucia bolts upright in her bed with wide eyes. Realizing her face is puffy from crying, she panics while Sen offers quick cosmetic remedies. Her maids work in comical, frantic unison to pamper her and prepare her. Meanwhile, the handsome, black-haired Herwin quietly sips his tea in the waiting room. He looks up as she enters the drawing room in a beautiful pink gown. She hesitatingly apologizes for keeping him waiting, but he remains completely calm. He assures her it is fine and apologizes for dropping by without warning. Sitting across from him, she wonders why he visited so soon after yesterday's parting. An elegant hand gently reaches for the dessert tier, pausing for a brief moment. A sudden, shocking announcement causes her to freeze, nearly dropping her teacup. He looks at her with a serious, solemn expression, holding himself with dignity. He explains his decision to join the dangerous monster extermination to support his father. He proudly expresses his desire to prove himself worthy before inheriting the family headship. Heartbroken, she quietly asks if he has already shared this news with Arista. He confirms he just came from telling Arista and will inform others via letter. A shadow of conflict passes over his handsome face as he looks away. Her eyes well with tears as she processes the painful realization of his departure. Trying to stay composed, she softly inquires when he is scheduled to leave. He gently breaks the news that his departure is set for 1 week from now. A heavy, oppressive silence fills the room as she sits alone, overwhelmed by dread. She repeats the short timeline to herself, her voice trembling with mounting despair. Desperate, she resolves to make one final, sincere confession of love before he leaves. Clutching her hands in prayer, she hopes for a miracle that might unite them. Her mother gently cautions her about the reality if Herwin rejects her final confession. She is advised to clearly let go of her feelings and find someone new. Back in the drawing room, Herwin steps closer to comfort her as she sits tearfully. He pulls her into a warm, reassuring embrace, trying to ease her heavy heart. Held tightly in his arms, she looks up with a mixture of shock and longing. Lucia desperately begs Herwin to give her just one single day before he departs. Clasping his hand tightly, she looks at him with pleading eyes while he reacts with confusion. Herwin asks in disbelief if she truly means an entire day, to which she firmly agrees. Lucia looks directly at him and explains that there is something she absolutely must tell him. Holding his hand, she promises to tell him the important details when they finally meet. Herwin asks when she wants to meet, and she replies that any time works for her. Lucia suggests meeting next Friday since today is Sunday, and Herwin readily agrees to her proposal. Lucia happily notes how long it has been since they were alone and wonders what they should do. A cheerful Herwin smiles brightly, prompting her to internally wonder if he truly knows her secret plans. Clutching her chest, Lucia reflects on making this upcoming occasion her 99th and absolute final confession. Looking away with a solemn face, she resolved to accept whatever his decision may be. Standing side by side, they present a beautiful yet bittersweet contrast against a soft, glowing background. Night falls as a brilliant blue starry sky blankets the quiet, illuminated ducal estate. Inside her room, Lucia sits on a plush chair while carefully preparing her embroidery tools. She reflects on her desire to give him a deeply meaningful gift for her final confession. She envisions Herwin with a sword, thinking a practical battlefield gift would suit his journey well. Lucia acknowledges that while such handmade items are traditionally meant for lovers, she has another plan. She smiles gently, reasoning that close friends also exchange them so Herwin will not feel burdened. A cute chibi illustration shows Lucia holding up her embroidery hoop with a triumphant grin. She mischievously decides that a dense Herwin would never notice if she subtly embroidered her initials. Lucia works diligently on the fabric, noting that Herwin can be surprisingly oblivious despite his meticulous nature. She solemnly contemplates the painful possibility of her feelings being rejected once again. Stitching the letter H, she realizes everything will become meaningless if he turns her down. Scene enters the room to remind Lucia of her scheduled meeting with Prince Phineas tomorrow. Stunned by the reminder, Lucia's hand trembles as she quietly confirms the date with a soft sigh. Cyan watches sadly, lamenting that her lady worked so hard on the embroidery for the oblivious prince. But Lucia smiles wistfully and agrees, quietly wondering when he will ever notice her true feelings. Cyan kindly reassures Lucia of her worth, urging her not to be disheartened even if she faces rejection. Lucia laughs at Serene's premature comfort, playfully reminding her maid that she has not been rejected yet. Cyan apologizes for overstepping, explaining that she was simply worried about her lady's recent gloomy mood. The maid lowers her head in embarrassment while Lucia looks on with a soft, understanding gaze. Lucia smiles warmly and apologizes, admitting that she has indeed had a lot on her mind. Cyan gently holds Lucia's hand, comforting her and promising to always support her through her struggles. In chibi form, Lucia humorously worries about another rejection while Cyan urges her not to take it seriously. Cyan warmly offers her help with any difficult embroidery stitches to ease her mistress's burden. Showing her progress, Lucia proudly announces that the handkerchief is nearly complete with a joyful ta-da! Cyan reacts with a shocked oh my at how quickly her mistress completed the intricate embroidery. Lucia lets out a soft ha-ha as Cyan spins in joy, praising her lady's incredible talents. Gazing at the handkerchief, Lucia hopes the final result is good enough for Herwin to appreciate. Clutching the gift box tightly to her chest, she smiles with hope and sweet anticipation. The next day, a beautiful carriage waits outside the grand mansion under a bright, clear sky. Lucia takes a deep breath to calm her nerves, her blue eyes filled with anticipation. She adjusts her lovely yellow corset dress while clutching a small handbag, ready for the meeting. Spotting a figure, her blue eye widens in absolute shock as she softly gasps Herwin's name. Herwin stands gracefully before her, wearing a handsome blue suit with an ornate red pattern vest. Lucia stands completely stunned, asking Herwin why he is not wearing his usual academy uniform today. Herwin looks down at her with a gentle, soft expression in his crimson eyes. As they walk near the carriage, Herwin compliments her outfit and she asks if it truly suits her. Turning back with a gentle gaze, Herwin asks her what she would like to do today. Raising a playful finger, Lucia teasingly asks if he is ready to be dragged around by her all day. Herwin asks what she is planning, jokingly suggesting that onlookers might think she is bullying him, while Lucia explains she simply wanted to spend time together before his departure. Herwin agrees that it has been a long time since they spent one-on-one time together, reflecting on their group outings. They step into a beautiful horse-drawn carriage to begin their long-awaited day out. Sitting in the carriage, Lucia enthusiastically lays out their schedule, starting with the downtown district, followed by a dinner reservation. Herwin smiles warmly, completely content with following her lead. The atmosphere shifts to a cozy restaurant where a pianist plays a soothing melody. A close-up reveals a delicious plate of seasoned shrimp and a glass of rich red wine. Sipping his wine, Herwin compliments the lovely atmosphere and suggests returning here in the future. Lucia shares that it is also her first time visiting the trendy establishment, noting its growing popularity. She beams with excitement, expressing her high anticipation for the upcoming main course. A polite waiter arrives at their table to present the highly anticipated main course. The waiter describes the two meals, a steak in special wine sauce and a steak topped with fresh mushrooms. Lucia freezes in sudden horror as she looks down at the mushroom dish. In a humorous mental panic, Chibi Lucia realizes she accidentally ordered a mushroom dish out of excitement and wonders how to swallow it. Trying to hide her intense anxiety, she smiles nervously and asks if the food looks good. Sensing her distress, Herwin casually holds out his fork and suggests they swap their plates. Lucia is left utterly speechless and stunned by his incredibly fast, considerate gesture. Herwin looks at her with calm determination as he takes her plate. He gently insists that it is fine and tells her to just stay still. Lucia looks down at her new plate, deeply touched by his quiet attentiveness. She sheepishly murmurs that she could have eaten it as she is not allergic. Cutting the meat, Herwin points out that she previously suffered all day after eating mushrooms. He gently scolds her to check menus beforehand while she pouts and admits her overwhelming excitement. Herwin takes a bite of the mushroom dish and warmly declares that it tastes delicious. Lucia looks up in surprise, her eyes wide with deep emotion. She quickly picks up her utensils, deeply touched that he remembered her strong aversion to mushrooms. As she eats, she marvels at his willingness to break proper etiquette just to protect her comfort. Close-up of her blushing face reveals her fluttering heart over his gentle protective gestures. After dinner, they happily stroll side by side down the bustling streets of the city. Spotting a boutique, Lucia eagerly pulls Herwin inside to continue their shopping excursion. A warm welcome greets them as they step through the elegant glass doors of the jewelry shop.
They enter a grand, shimmering jewelry store filled with sparkling display cases.
Together, they browse the glittering cases of accessories in the beautiful boutique. Lucia points out a brilliant blue gemstone cravat pin that she believes would look wonderful on him. When Herwin notes they are only buying gifts for him, Lucia reminds him of his promise to let her choose their activities. She opens her purse, insisting that she wanted to gift him a beautiful brooch anyway. The clerk politely encourages them to browse the new arrivals while he wraps the purchase. Herwin watches her, wondering why she finds so much joy in shopping for someone else. Left to browse, Herwin thoughtfully looks around the shop. His gaze lands on a pair of elegant, dangling pearl earrings shimmering inside a glass display case. The clerk asks if he needs assistance, and Herwin requests a closer look at the earrings. The beautiful pearl earrings sparkle brilliantly on their velvet display stand. Herwin carefully lifts one of the delicate shimmering pearl earrings in his hand. He holds the earring next to Lucia's head to see if it complements her hair and eyes. A warm, gentle smile spreads across Herwin's face as he admires how well it suits her. He decides to only purchase the brooch today, realizing the other pieces do not match her usual style. The shopkeeper bows deeply, bidding them a polite farewell as they prepare to leave. Walking out of the shop with shopping bags, Lucia cheerfully asks if he enjoyed looking around. Herwin smiles warmly down at her, deeply enjoying their peaceful day together. The scene transitions to a grand theater hall where an expectant audience awaits the start of a performance. Sitting in the theater beside Herwin, Lucia silently hopes that he will enjoy the highly anticipated play. A brilliant theater spotlight suddenly flashes to life, illuminating the dark stage below. On stage, the lead actors embrace as they passionately express how deeply they have missed each other. Another actor dramatically collapses onto the stage, loudly lamenting the cruel trials the heavens have brought upon him. Hearing the character's heartbreak on stage, Lucia flinches in sudden surprise as she relates to his words. The heartbroken character passionately demands to know why she chose his friend over him after all his devotion. The blonde actress gently rejects the man, apologizing and explaining she has never loved him in that way. The true lovers clasp hands on stage, exchanging vows of eternal devotion as they celebrate their love. The tragic rival steps back in defeat while the main couple enjoys their happy ending before the audience. Lucia sadly wonders why her own love story cannot end as happily as she envisions Herwin with Arista. Watched by a weeping Lucia, the happy stage couple fades into her painful vision of Herwin and Arista. The lead actors take their final bows to the sound of echoing applause. Lucia quickly wipes away her tears while Herwin politely claps beside her as the performance concludes. Turning to Herwin with a bright smile, Lucia asks if he enjoyed the play, and he warmly agrees. Lucia suggests they head out, and Herwin stands up to accompany her. Under a beautiful starry sky, Herwin admits he was surprised by her fondness for a typical romance play. Shrugging playfully, Herwin reassures her that the play was not boring and actually had several humorous moments. Lucia sighs in relief, happy to hear that he genuinely enjoyed the performance. Standing under the brilliant full moon, Herwin suggests they finally head off to enjoy their dinner reservation. They walk side by side down the illuminated street, enjoying each other's quiet presence. Her attention is taken by her own voice calling his name as she suddenly stops in her tracks. Herwin stops a few paces ahead and turns back, asking her why she has suddenly stopped walking. Herwin calls out her name softly, his crimson eyes filled with curiosity at her sudden hesitation. Stealing her resolve, Lucia quietly reaches into her handbag and pulls out a small black gift box. Presenting the box, Lucia tells Herwin that she decided it is finally time to give him this. Herwin reaches out to take the small gift, curiously inquiring about what is inside. Lucia bites her lip in nervous anticipation, her heart racing as she prepares. Beaming with a radiant smile, Lucia bravely confesses her feelings and asks Herwin to go out with her. Herwin's hand freezes midair, a sudden wave of tension settling over them. Bewildered, Herwin points out that she has never confessed again so quickly after her previous attempt. With pleading eyes and a trembling voice, Lucia desperately begs Herwin to give her a final answer. As Herwin begins to deliver his painful rejection, Lucia gently cuts him off to spare them both. Clutching her chest, Lucia quietly asserts that she already knows his reasons and does not need to hear them. Sudden memory from her academy days rushes back, bringing to mind a rainy practical swordsmanship exam. Lucia recalls how a sudden heavy downpour began during the exam, though thankfully no one was injured. A sudden commotion breaks out as the heavy rain continues to pelt the academy's outdoor tents. Standing under her umbrella, young Lucia is horrified to hear a student screaming about saving Herwin and Arista from an ogre. The professor urges patience due to the heavy storm, while frantic students argue that the missing pair are in grave danger. A panicked student confirms they witnessed the terrifying ogre firsthand, amplifying the room's growing dread. The terrifying warning of the immense danger the missing duo faces echoes through the tense tent. A sudden wet splash sounds as a purple umbrella drops into a deep puddle. Overwhelmed by panic, young Lucia demands to know what the terrifying news means for them. The student solemnly confirms that Herwin and Arista have still not returned from the storm. Trembling with intense fear, Lucia panics upon learning Herwin is the only one still missing. The heavy tin flap flies open as a student loudly announces that someone is finally approaching. Frantic footsteps splash through the deep mud as students rush into the rain. Two blurry figures emerge from the pouring rain as the anxious crowd watches. Overjoyed and relieved, young Lucia runs forward while desperately calling out Herwin's name through the storm. Drenched and heavily panting, Herwin walks out of the darkness while gently supporting a tired Arista. The relentless rain pours over the dark academy camp as night fully falls. Arista shares that Herwin protected her first, while onlookers discuss alerting the knights immediately. A glowing text bubble confirms that Arista was the one who defeated the ogre. The students voice their absolute amazement at Arista's level of swordsmanship and aura mastery. The silver-haired teacher praises Arista's courage and urges her to rest her exhausted body. Standing nearby, Lucia quietly calls out to Arista to catch her attention. Lucia expresses her deep gratitude to Arista for saving Herwin, though Arista humbles herself. With tearful eyes, Lucia emotionally promises that she will never forget Arista's selfless rescue. Arista calls out to Lucia, who responds with mild confusion as she looks up. Arista asks if Lucia would be willing to grant her a single favor in the future. Back in the quiet academy infirmary, Lucia sits patiently by Herwin's bedside. Lucia mentally questions his reckless behavior and why he stayed behind so late. Her quiet contemplation is suddenly interrupted as Herwin slowly opens his red eyes. The moment he wakes up, all of her planned questions vanish from her mind. Leaning over him, Lucia excitedly asks Herwin if he is awake. Herwin weakly asks about his location, and Lucia urges him to stay down due to his injuries. Wincing slightly, Herwin realizes that his extensive bruises are the cause of his aching body. Lucia frantically asks if he is hungry or if any specific injury is hurting him. Herwin swings his legs out of bed, asking Lucia to help him walk to Arista. He looks up at her with soft, pleading eyes, asking for her immediate assistance. Swallowing her sadness, Lucia softly agrees to his request to see Arista. Lucia recalls how Herwin and Arista grew closer, leading her to ask him a difficult question. She remembers asking him directly if he has romantic feelings for Arista. Herwin repeats her question in shock, seemingly taken aback by the sudden inquiry. He clutches his chest, hesitating to answer as a sudden rapid heartbeat takes over him. Looking down at her sincerely, Herwin confesses that he believes he does like Arista. Back in the present, Herwin waves his hand to get her attention and calls her name. Thrusting the small box into his hands, Lucia abruptly states that she cannot stay for dinner. She quickly turns around and flees the scene, telling him she is going on ahead. Herwin follows her, insisting on walking her home in the dark, but she firmly refuses. When Herwin continues to worry about her safety, she sharply calls his name to stop him. Clutching her chest, Lucia tearfully begs him to stop making her feel so pathetic. Herwin is left completely stunned and speechless by her sudden painful emotional outburst. Giving him a sad, final smile, Lucia asks that they greet each other happily next time. Lucia stands gracefully amidst blooming white lilies, offering a bittersweet, tearful smile. The scene transitions to her grand family mansion standing silent under the dark night. Entering her home, Lucia quietly announces her return to her waiting parents. Her worried mother immediately inquires if something happened to her during her timeout. Lucia looks at her parents with somber resolution, announcing that everything is finally over. Her mother is left completely bewildered, desperately asking what her words mean. Tears stream down Lucia's face as she softly repeats that her long struggle is over. Her mother watches her with deep concern, softly calling out her name. Turning away, Lucia coldly agrees to attend the arranged marriage meeting her parents wanted. Her heavy footsteps click softly against the floor as she walks away. Her mother turns to her silent husband, asking if they are truly doing the right thing. Sitting in front of her vanity, Lucia softly calls out to her maid, Sane. Sane is startled by her lady's low tone and quickly answers her. Burying her face in her hands, Lucia tearfully wonders how she can escape this unbearable pain. Sane steps forward to wrap her crying lady in a warm, comforting embrace. Sane gently suggests that the pain is intense because she deeply cared for Lord Peneus. Forcing a tearful smile, Lucia softly denies her maid's words. Smiling gently at her lady, Sane softly states that knowing her true feelings is enough. As she gently brushes Lucia's long caramel hair, Sane kindly suggests that she take a few days to rest. Looking into her mirror with a small, weary smile, Lucia promises Sane that she will rest. The morning sun brightly shines through the window, signaling the arrival of a new day. Underneath her cozy pink blanket, Lucia squirms and wiggles as she begins to wake up. Struggling to open her swollen eyes, Chibi Lucia laments that crying for 3 days straight has left her barely able to see. Resting peacefully on her pink pillow, Lucia realizes Sane was right, feeling a bit better after several days of rest. Sitting up on her pink bed, Lucia takes a quiet moment to gather her thoughts. Sunlight streams across a small table holding 2 stacked books and a decorated white jewelry box. Lucia reaches down to pick up the pink notebook next to her jewelry box. Inside the open box rests a dried 4-leaf clover kept safe under a glass lens. A diary page decorated with orange roses displays her handwriting, beginning with the name Herwin. Clutching the pink journal tightly to her chest, she turns her gaze toward her wardrobe. A soft click sounds as her pale hand reaches out and opens a closet door. She places her pink notebook and the white keepsake box side by side on a wooden shelf. Looking into her cabinet, Lucia takes a deep breath and prepares to move forward. Set against a beautiful gold crest, she vows to overcome this painful heartbreak. Standing tall in her light dress, she resolves to finally put her past feelings behind her. Her mother and father sit quietly at the long dining table enjoying their breakfast together. Entering the bright dining hall, Lucia is warmly greeted by her father, who asks if she slept well. Her mother happily welcomes her to the table, exclaiming that she must be starving. Seating herself gracefully, Lucia politely asks if she may join her parents for breakfast. Her father peers at her with deep concern, gently asking if she is truly feeling better now. Placing his glass down, her father kindly tells her that she can explain everything after she eats. Offering a bright smile and waving her hand, Lucia reassures them that she is all right and apologizes for causing worry. Holding his wine glass, her father softly agrees to believe her if she says she is fine. Her father suddenly pauses mid-drink, surprised as his daughter prepares to speak again. When Lucia suggests arranging her marriage meeting as early as tomorrow, her shocked mother questions if that is too soon. Looking at her with a steady gaze, her father gently advises her not to push herself too hard. Placing a warm hand over her daughter's, her mother reassures Lucia that there is no need to rush. Lucia looks at her supportive parents, feeling comforted by their quiet warmth and understanding. Under a clear sky the next day, a carriage waits beside a charming outdoor street cafe. Dressed in a beautiful light pink gown, Lucia stands nervously as she prepares for her meeting. Standing outdoors, Lucia mentally notes that she confidently told her parents she would be ready for matchmaking today. Looking down with a heavy sigh, she silently admits that she is not actually looking forward to it. Quickly shaking her head, Chibi Lucia scolds herself, resolved not to think negatively about the meeting. A gentle tinkle sounds from the shop bell as Lucia steps through the wooden cafe door. She spots a man with brown hair tied back in a low ponytail waiting for her. Approaching the table, Lucia politely asks if he is young Master Simon Dehard. Instantly standing up with a bright smile, Simon Dehard confirms his identity to her. Bowing her head politely, Lucia introduces herself as Lucia Agnes and expresses her pleasure at meeting him. Seating himself, Simon warmly notes that she has arrived quite early before their scheduled appointment time. Simon explains that preparing to inherit his family's merchant guild makes him appreciate her punctuality, finding her very likable. Holding her cup of warm tea, Lucia realizes he is about 5 years older than her. Simon admits he was surprised by the match proposal, mentioning her rumored feelings for another, which Lucia quietly acknowledges. With a slight smirk, Simon explains that knowing this is actually reassuring, leaving him with no hesitations. Lucia tilts her head, completely bewildered as she asks him what he means by having no hesitations. Simon confesses he also loves a commoner whom he cannot marry, prompting a stunned Lucia to request further explanation. Simon's thoughts float in the air, suggesting they could both live freely since no real feelings exist between them. Flashing a knowing smirk, Simon asks if she and Lord Peneus had a similarly convenient arrangement. With a sudden rustle of fabric, Lucia stands up abruptly, cutting off Simon's presumptuous questions. She coldly tells him that she desires a sincere, family-oriented partner, unlike an indulgent man like him. Over the suitor's shoulder, Lucia looks down with firm resolve, leaving him utterly speechless by her sudden rejection. Walking away from the encounter, Lucia's expression darkens as she wonders what kind of person he really is. On another date, a blonde suitor praises her angelic nature while Lucia listens quietly over a cup of tea. With tears shimmering in his eyes, the blonde man explains his mother's struggle with dementia, expecting Lucia to become her caretaker. Lucia lets out a weary sigh as she lowers her head, delivering a quiet, apologetic rejection. Another suitor quickly proposes skipping the wedding ceremony entirely to have 3 children on an immediate honeymoon. When Lucia tries to politely decline, the arrogant suitor warns her that rejecting him will only bring her regret. Fidgeting nervously, the suitor sneeringly mentions that everyone in high society has already heard the rumors surrounding her past love. The painful reality of being known as a woman hopelessly in love with another man for 10 years weighs heavily. Dressed in pink, Lucia sharply tells him his opinions are none of his concern, leaving him pleading as she departs. The scene transitions to another day, with a quiet outdoor street cafe coming into view. Taking a gentle sip of her tea, Lucia anxiously wonders if today's matchmaking partner will be just as strange. With a heavy sigh, she worries that the man might have heard the rumors and decided to stand her up. With a sharp scrape of her chair, Lucia stands up to leave, deciding it is pointless to waste any more time. She suddenly halts in surprise, her blue eyes widening as she spots someone approaching in a rush. Panting heavily as he tries to catch his breath, a young man with olive green hair and round glasses stands before her. Catching his breath, the green-haired young man adjusts his glasses and asks if she is Miss Lucia Agnes. Lucia nods in surprise as he politely smiles and thanks her for waiting. The young man lets out a soft sigh of relief, glad that he managed to reach her. Moving to sit across from her, the gentlemanly suitor prepares to make his formal introductions. Lucia admits she was about to leave, prompting him to apologetically explain that an accident delayed him. Hearing his excuse, Lucia reacts in surprise, asking him what kind of accident had occurred. He bows his head deeply in apology, explaining that a carriage collision injured his horse, forcing him to rush on foot. Waving her hands in a flurry, Lucia suggests he should have rescheduled, but he insists on apologizing in person. Lucia mentally notes that his estate is incredibly far, wondering if he ran the entire way there. Glancing downward, Lucia notices something about the young man's appearance that catches her attention. She looks at his mud-splattered leather shoes, realizing they are covered in dirt from his desperate sprint. Softening her gaze, Lucia smiles warmly and assures him that his delay is perfectly understandable given the circumstances. The young man smiles warmly in relief, thanking her deeply for her kind understanding. Stopping in her tracks, Lucia quickly warns herself to stay guarded, remembering how the first suitor also seemed nice at first. Smiling warmly, the young man sincerely promises that he will never make her wait for him again. He glances at the sky, casually noting how clear and beautiful the weather has been lately. He mentions that the pleasant weather reminds him of a city named Atlanta from a novel he enjoys. He smiles warmly as he shares his personal interest, creating a relaxed, friendly atmosphere. Clenching her fists with a bright gasp of excitement, Lucia asks if he is referring to the novel titled Ghosts of Atlanta. Surprised, he confirms the title and explains that a highly respected academy professor recommended it to him. The young man guesses it might have been a history professor, sharing that he happily read several recommended books. Lucia flinches slightly, immediately questioning if she made a mistake by bringing up her past academy days. A wave of anxiety washes over her as she dreads the possibility of him asking about her rumors. Instead, he warmly laments that they could have been reading partners at the academy if he were younger. Her heart beats with a sudden thump of anxiety as he prepares to reveal a surprising secret to her. He shares a gentle smile as he tells her about a hidden room in the academy's second library, leaving her surprised. Time flows peacefully as the two enjoy a lively, uninterrupted conversation about their shared love for books. As the evening sun begins to set, they both stand up, realizing they completely lost track of time. Smiling with pure delight, Lucia happily admits that she has not had such a relaxing conversation in a very long time. He agrees, leaving Lucia to blushingly wonder if the wonderful connection between them is true mutual. He looks aside sheepishly, confessing his fear that she would have already left before he could arrive. He nods sheepishly as Chibi Lucia asks if he ran all that way out of worry just in case she was still waiting. Byrne apologetically explains that he rushed over just to apologize if she had been waiting. Lucia warmly replies that she is glad she waited, otherwise she would have missed meeting him. Byrne waves his hands faster, bashfully asking her not to flatter him so much. Lucia praises Byrne's honesty, prompting him to blush and shyly offer his gratitude. Preparing to leave, Lucia politely informs Byrne that she must get going now. Byrne suddenly reaches out and calls after her, causing Lucia to turn back in surprise. Byrne musters his courage and asks if he may see her again. With a bright, cheerful smile, Lucia happily agrees to his sweet request. Byrne smiles warmly in relief, promising to send a letter to her estate. A soft clack sounds as the carriage door shuts and Lucia bids him safe travels. A rhythmic clattering of hooves echoes as the carriage departs down the street. Inside the carriage, Lucia's excited maid eagerly asks if the matchmaking meeting went well. Lucia is comforted that he didn't mention her win, allowing them to have a smooth conversation. Resting her chin on her hand, Lucia wonders if they could become good friends. The starry-eyed Chibi maid considers that a success, while Chibi Lucia sweat drops at her enthusiasm. Her maid playfully asks if she plans to see the charming man again. Sweating slightly, Lucia smilingly admits that she expects to see him again very soon. Time flows forward and the scene transitions to 3 weeks later under clear skies. Walking together, Byrne asks for her thoughts on the play they just watched twice. Byrne mentions the tragic second male lead, leaving Lucia momentarily surprised by his perspective. Byrne sadly describes how heartbreaking it is when the happy couple leaves one lonely soul behind. Lucia looks down silently, feeling a deep, quiet resonance with his sorrowful words. Gently shaking her head, Lucia softly reassures him that she did not find it boring. Lucia confesses that she actually felt the exact same way he did about the plea. Byrne's face lights up with pure joy and excitement upon hearing her sympathetic reply. Byrne asks if she also received an invitation to the princess's engagement party. Lucia confirms she received the invitation, noting they are keeping the celebration simple. Byrne blushes and gathers his courage, preparing to ask her an important question. Lucia looks up in surprise as Byrne gently offers his hand to accompany her. Whimsical little cupids play their instruments against a beautiful flower-framed background. Golden light surrounds a tender moment as a ring is placed upon a finger. Silhouettes of the royal couple stand on a balcony as onlookers watch from below. Standing beside Byrne at the grand party, Lucia looks anxious in her elegant pink gown. Clutching his wineglass, Herwin stands silently in the crowd with a somber expression. Shaking her head frantically, Chibi Lucia nervously worries about making things uncomfortable for him. Lucia suddenly grabs Byrne's hands, insisting that they enter the party together. Byrne suggests calling him by his name, prompting Lucia to ask him to do the same. A slow creak echoes as Lucia opens her door and spots a letter on the table. Her attention is caught by a sudden quick swoosh as she reaches for the envelope. Looking at the seal, she realizes with surprise that the letter is from Herwin. With a quick rip, she opens the envelope to read his missive. Her fingers tightly crumple the edge of the letter containing Herwin's message. Lucia reflects on Herwin writing first, wondering if he felt guilty about their parting. A warm memory of Byrne's blushing smile flashes briefly through her mind. Lucia realizes that attending the party with Byrne means everyone will know about their relationship. Her eyes flutter as she resolves to ensure there will be no awkwardness between them. Set against a golden floral pattern, she resolves to smile when they meet, just as requested. Holding the letter close, Lucia looks up with a quiet, determined gaze. Her mother and father stand side by side in the hallway waiting to see her off. Her father teasingly exclaims that he would believe her if she said she was marrying tomorrow. Dressed in a beautiful cream gown, Lucia smiles warmly against a bright backdrop of yellow flowers. Her mother notices her new earrings, prompting Lucia to explain they were a gift from Bren. Her parents approve happily, noting that the young man seems genuinely fond of Lucia. Blushing slightly, Lucia admits that her feelings for Bern are entirely mutual. Her mother enthusiastically cheers for her, leaving Chibi Lucia completely bewildered with a question mark. A thought bubble notes that it would be odd for her brother to miss the royal engagement. Looking at a scenic painting, her parents agree to enjoy family time after the party. Her father mentions that the carriage is outside and suggests they depart separately. Lucia is surprised to hear that her escort's carriage has already arrived. Politely bowing, Lucia bids her parents farewell and prepares to head out first. With a sudden swift whoosh of her dress, Lucia turns and quickly departs. Her mother and father smile warmly, pleased with how beautifully their daughter has grown. Outside the estate, Byrne stands in a white suit, checking his pocket watch. A close-up shows Byrne carefully monitoring the time on his golden pocket watch. Adjusting his glasses, Byrne looks up as he notices someone approaching him. Smiling brightly, Lucia approaches her partner and compliments his handsome appearance. Byrne happily notes that she is wearing the earrings he gifted her. Touching her earring, Lucia replies she would not wear anything else today. Byrne is delighted his choice was excellent, and Lucia offers her warm thanks. Walking together, Byrne eagerly expresses his excitement for the upcoming engagement party. Lucia agrees, looking forward to reuniting with her old academy friends. The scene shifts to the Grand Palace hosting the royal engagement ceremony. Guests whisper excitedly about the return of a famous figure from the north. Herwin, looking sharp in a dark blue coat, makes his grand entrance. The red-eyed knight walks calmly through the bustling party hall. Someone steps forward from behind and calls out to Herwin by his name. Herwin turns around with a light, curious smile on his face. Arista Lydia, stunning in a dark purple gown, explains she couldn't miss the major national event. Arista urges Herwin to join their mutual friends waiting for them inside. As they walk, Arista asks about his monster hunting, which Herwin casually downplays. Chibi Arista excitedly demands details, while Chibi Herwin's sweat drops at her lack of concern for his safety. Arista explains how rare monster hunts are, prompting Herwin to smile at her interest. Herwin chuckles quietly, amused by his companion's persistent enthusiasm. Herwin playfully invites her to go monster hunting together sometime, which delights her. Herwin rests his hand on his chin, wearing a knowing smirk. Chibi Herwin teases that her only interest is swords, making Chibi Arista glare. Arista proudly boasts that a sword has been in her hand since birth. Herwin laughs while Arista reminds him not to break his hunting promise. A hand waves in the foreground as someone calls out to Herwin and Arista. Their red-haired friend Ethan waves from a table, saying they were waiting. Herwin smiles and greets the group, happy to see everyone after a long time. A purple-haired friend asks Arista how she feels about her brother's engagement. Sitting down, Arista casually dismisses any special feelings about the event. Arista and another friend complain about the constant marriage nagging from their parents. Ethan nods in agreement as Chibi Herwin takes a sip from his glass. The purple-haired friend mentions marriage proposals are arriving, wondering who will wed first. A sudden silence falls as everyone at the table stares directly at Herwin. Chibi purple-haired friend sheepishly laughs, admitting they assumed Herwin would marry first. Herwin scoffs that marriage requires a partner, predicting Ethan will actually go first. Looking down at the table, a guest sighs that they wish to escape to the academy. Hearing Ethan mention their old academy days, Herwin is struck by a wave of surprise. Herwin fondly recalls a memory of young Lucia eagerly confessing her feelings to him. A quiet darkness falls over the memory as a gentle voice asks if he is angry. Herwin remembers feeling amused by their playful interactions during their academy days. Returning to the present, Arista asks if Lucia is attending the party with her brother. Herwin looks startled, letting out a soft exclamation of surprise at Arista's sudden question. Herwin explains that his last meeting with Lucia occurred before his northern expedition. The friends react with shock, eagerly asking if the two had met alone. Herwin quickly downplays their conversation, stating they did not discuss anything of major importance. A poignant memory of a distressed young Lucia flashes briefly across Herwin's mind. Ethan and the other friends suggest inviting her along next time as well. A rhythmic click of high heels echoes as a woman in a golden dress approaches. Herwin turns his head, his eyes widening in utter disbelief as he spots the newcomer. Standing beside her partner Bern, Lucia arrives at the table in her stunning golden gown. Lucia waves cheerfully to her friends, calling out to them with a bright smile. Lucia introduces Bern to her old academy friends while Bern offers a polite greeting. A collective gasp fills the air as the friends notice Lucia's arm linked with Bern's. Herwin is left completely stunned, silently uttering her name in disbelief. Lucia and Bern stand before the group, who stare at them in frozen surprise. Arista warmly welcomes Lucia back and points out an empty seat at the table. Lucia gratefully accepts the offer with a happy, polite smile. A soft slide sounds as Bern gentlemanly pulls out a chair for Lucia to sit. The couple sits down at the table, drawing curious glances from everyone. Arista curiously inquires about the identity of the handsome partner Lucia came with. Smiling warmly, Lucia prepares to introduce Bern to her friends. Bern introduces himself as Bern Casper, expressing hope that they will meet often. Comical silence falls as the friends stare at the couple in stunned disbelief. Chibi Lucia sweat drops, playfully teasing her friends for their overly dramatic and rude reactions. Ethan and the other friends quickly bow their heads, apologetically begging Marquise Casper's forgiveness. Bern smilingly reassures them that it is quite all right, suggesting they enjoy their time together. The brown-haired girl curiously asks how the two ended up meeting. Bern explains they met through matchmaking, noting that Lucia graciously waited when he was late. Lucia blushes deeply, looking up at Bern with pure affection and gratitude. Herwin interrupts with a dark, intense gaze, demanding to know when she went matchmaking. Lucia touches her chin thoughtfully, replying that it was about 3 weeks ago. Herwin's heart sinks as he realizes she went matchmaking right when he departed north. Lucia softly asks Herwin if he has been doing well, and he quietly nods. Bern politely asks Lucia if she would like to go greet his friends now. Lucia happily nods in agreement, preparing to leave the table with him. A soft slide sounds as Lucia bids her academy friends safe travels until next time. Ethan turns to Herwin, asking if he truly did not know about her matchmaking. Ethan scratches his cheek, remarking on how close Herwin and Lucia had been since childhood. Herwin looks down in silent sorrow, quietly agreeing with Ethan's words. Herwin's mind drifts to a childhood memory of them standing outside a grand estate gate. Young Lucia weeps as she bids him farewell, while narration describes her enduring presence. A soft sniffle echoes as young Herwin promises to visit her again very soon. A text panel highlights Lucia as his very first friend, as precious as family. Rapid footsteps patter as young Lucia runs along the path, pleading with him to write. Young Herwin turns back to promise he will, realizing their strong bond never changed. The scene fades on an old letter, carrying his promise to visit the snowy north. Through old letters from their youth, Herwin remembers training with real swords and warning Lucia to stay safe. The passage of time brings them to the academy, marking a new chapter in their lives. At the academy, Herwin began to build a new circle of friends and acquaintances. Despite making new friends, Lucia remained the absolute most cherished person in Herwin's life. Lucia calls out to Herwin as they walk, catching his attention with her gentle voice. Herwin pauses and looks back, silently questioning what his lifelong friend wants to say. With a bright, beaming smile, Lucia cheerfully confesses her affectionate feelings directly to him. Herwin reacts with amusement, gently pointing out that she is playfully confessing yet again. A pouting chibi Lucia demands to know why he refuses to give her an answer. Their playful moment is interrupted when a classmate calls out to Lucia, turning her attention away. Bianca approaches with a smile, playfully asking if she has interrupted an important private conversation.
Herwin quickly denies they were talking about anything serious, while Bianca looks on with curiosity.
Bianca grabs Lucia's hand, eagerly inviting her to go to the library right away. Urging Lucia to hurry because of urgent news, Bianca quickly drags her reluctant friend away. Herwin reflects that he dismissed her constant confessions as jokes, never imagining them actually dating. He believed their bond was far too precious to risk ruining with a potential breakup. Herwin always wished to remain safely by her side as her irreplaceable lifelong friend. However, destiny took an unexpected turn on the night of his 18th birthday party. Standing before him in her beautiful blue gown, Lucia repeats her heartfelt confession of love. On his 18th birthday, Lucia chose to declare her deep affection for him once more. Shocked by her words, Herwin listens as Lucia reveals her sincerity from childhood until now. Realizing her intensity, Herwin struggles to dismiss this confession as just another playful joke. To his own surprise, Herwin feels his heart pounding rapidly as he begins his response. A sudden creak echoes as a door opens, interrupting the pivotal moment of his decision. A sudden harsh reality shatters the quiet romantic atmosphere of their private balcony meeting. Harsh whispers erupt from onlookers, mocking Lucia for overstepping her place as a mere friend. The crowd gossips maliciously, pointing out how desperately she has chased after Herwin since childhood. Shocked and overwhelmed by the public humiliation, Herwin covers his mouth in stunned silence. Lucia reaches her hand out toward him, asking with deep concern if he is all right. Overwhelmed by the pressure, Herwin instinctively pulls away and recoils from her gentle touch. Stunned by his cold rejection, Lucia watches in tears as Herwin flees the scene. Following that painful night, Lucia began completely avoiding Herwin throughout their days at school. In the training hall, Chibi Arista curiously asks Herwin if Lucia is still angry. Herwin confides that Lucia even broke their childhood promise and refuses to speak to him. Arista quietly asks Herwin if he actually knows what cruel words Lucia faced that night. Arista reveals how classmates mock Lucia for desperately chasing Herwin only to be humiliated. Herwin sighs, wondering why she confessed in public, as Arista brings up Bianca's estate. Arista explains that Bianca intentionally lied, telling Lucia that the balcony area was completely private. Herwin reacts in absolute shock as Arista reveals that Bianca deliberately orchestrated the public embarrassment. A dark, icy rage fills Herwin as he realizes Bianca's cruel, calculated betrayal of Lucia. Learning that Lucia blames her own foolishness for the incident, Herwin is left deeply pained. Overwhelmed by the truth, Herwin suddenly leaps to his feet, startling his training partner. Arista calls out to him, wondering where he is rushing off to so suddenly. Declaring his intention to find Lucia immediately, Herwin receives Arista's warm encouragement to reconcile. Herwin recalls that this shared concern for Lucia was when his feelings for Arista began. He remembers Lucia's sweet parting request for them to meet again with warm smiles. Watching Lucia and Burn together, Herwin is seized by a sudden, inexplicable wave of distress. He stands frozen, deeply troubled by his inability to feel happy for her new beginning. The grand palace chandelier shines brightly above, casting a warm light over the festive crowd. Arm in arm, Lucia and Burn walk gracefully through the grand hall, leaving their past behind. Weary sighs escape Lucia's lips as she tries to compose herself in a busy hall. Burn notices her quiet distress, gazing down at her with a gentle, questioning expression. Lucia smiles warmly as Burn concernedly inquires if she is feeling unwell. Lucia politely answers that she is simply feeling a bit nervous. Burn reassuringly suggests that she can rest before meeting his friends. Lucia shakes her head, stating she wants to meet them quickly. Burn explains they have been close since their academy days as they walk along. Walking arm in arm, the couple steps gracefully through the magnificent palace hall. Spotting his friends, Burn calls out to ask how the Merchant Guild is doing. Adolf complains about his father's strictness just before Burn calls his name. Burn cheerfully greets his old friends, gesturing toward the elegant Lucia. The two friends turn around with bright, happy smiles upon seeing him. Burn explains he was busy inheriting his title, while Adolf admits he was worried. Adolf asks about the beautiful lady, while Hector scolds him for being so rude. Bowing gracefully, Lucia introduces herself to his friends as Lucia Agnes. A shocked Adolf turns pale, quietly asking Burn if he is truly serious. Hector bows politely, introducing himself as Hector Chase to the lovely lady. Adolf bows deeply as well, while Lucia kindly asks him to raise his head. Laughing softly, Lucia notes that Burn kept their meeting a secret from everyone. Adolf expresses surprise, admitting he never expected Burn, of all people, to bring a fiancé. Watching the couple, Adolf quietly remarks that he needs to get himself together too. The friends express their sincere happiness that Burn has found someone to settle down with. In a playful moment, Burn's friends ask Lucia to please take good care of him. The Grand Palace glows brilliantly against the starry night sky as the celebration continues. Gentle ballroom music begins to drift gracefully through the majestic golden hall. Numerous elegant couples take to the dance floor, moving smoothly to the music. Burn bows gentlemanly, politely asking Lucia if he may have this dance. Smiling brightly, Lucia happily accepts his invitation to join him on the floor. Their hands meet in a gentle, firm clasp as they step forward together. The couple waltzes gracefully in the center of the brightly lit ballroom. Burn's hand rests gently on her waist, guiding her securely through the steps. A sudden movement catches Lucia's attention, causing her to glance back over her shoulder. Nearby, Herwin is seen dancing with Arista, a gentle smile on his face. A heavy thump echoes in Lucia's chest as her eyes widen in sudden shock. Burn looks down in concern as he feels her hand beginning to tremble. Dipping her gently, Burn softly commands Lucia to look only at him. Lucia looks up into his gentle eyes, comforted by his steady and reassuring gaze. A self-wrestle sounds as their feet move in perfect synchronization across the floor. Feeling the tension slip away, Lucia happily realizes she is finally relaxed thanks to Bern. Holding him close, Lucia gratefully tells Bern that he is incredibly perceptive. Bern smiles warmly, replying that Lucia's face easily reveals all of her feelings. Lucia playfully wonders if she is that easy to read, and Bern laughs softly. The couple continues their beautiful waltz, illuminated by the bright palace lights. A sharp click of her high heel echoes as they spin gracefully together. Bern's gaze turns serious, explaining that he chose Lucia because they are very alike. Gently holding her face, Bern reassures her that he only needs half of her heart. Lucia offers her quiet thanks, and Bern smiles back with deep affection. A sudden gasp escapes Lucia as a familiar voice quietly calls out her name. Turning around, Lucia is stunned to find Herwin politely offering his hand for a dance. Deeply distressed, Lucia desperately wishes to avoid dancing with Herwin on this day. Lucia hesitates in stunned silence, overwhelmed by Herwin's sudden request for a dance. Stepping in protectively, Bern interrupts Herwin, apologizing and announcing that Lucia is currently unwell. Bern stands firmly between them, shielding a trembling Lucia from Herwin's intense gaze. Herwin stares at her with a deeply worried expression, asking if she is truly feeling unwell. Avoiding his gaze, Lucia apologizes and falsely claims she twisted her ankle during the waltz. Deeply alarmed, Herwin immediately steps forward, frantically offering to assist her. Bern pulls Lucia close, coolly asserting that he will look after her himself. A frustrated Herwin remains silent as Bern politely bids farewell to lead her away. Herwin watches in painful silence as Bern leads Lucia away arm in arm. Sitting by the fountain under the starry night sky, Bern hopes he did not overstep his bounds. Bern explains that he only intervened because she clearly wanted to avoid Herwin's presence. When Bern questions if his intuition was correct, Lucia quietly nods in agreement. Seeking to give her some space, Bern kindly excuses himself to fetch some drinks. Sitting alone by the tranquil fountain, Lucia rests quietly in the cool night air. Staring at her reflection in the water, she reflects on the exhaustion of pretending to be fine. Lucia is suddenly startled from her quiet thoughts, looking back as someone approaches. Lucia's eye widens in absolute shock as she recognizes the unexpected figure before her. Lucia is stunned to see Bianca standing there under the garden moonlight. Standing quietly in her elegant purple gown, Bianca gazes at her former friend. The atmosphere turns tense as Lucia turns around and softly whispers Bianca's name. With a slight look of unease, Bianca softly acknowledges that it has been a long time. When Bianca hesitantly asks if she can sit down, Lucia welcomes her to do so. Startled by the unexpected request, Lucia allows her former friend to sit by the fountain. Lucia quietly agrees, paving the way for a long overdue conversation between them. As they sit side by side, Lucia recalls thinking she would never see Bianca again after that painful night. The scene shifts to their academy days, returning to where their friendship first began. During her student years, a young Lucia quietly read her books in the classroom hall. Her peaceful reading is suddenly interrupted as two classmates walk up, calling her name. Looking up from her notebook, young Lucia politely asks what brings them over. The girls eagerly ask for an introduction to Herwin, noting her close childhood bond with him. Lucia awkwardly declines their request, explaining that Herwin is too shy to meet others easily. The girls whisper bitterly, expressing irritation at Lucia's constant refusal to introduce Herwin. Griping their hands maliciously, they mockingly ask if Lucia secretly has romantic feelings for Herwin. Bianca suddenly steps forward to defend her friend, demanding to know what is wrong with them. Bianca fiercely scolds the two girls for their greediness, leaving them absolutely furious. Bianca continues her sharp defense, questioning if they would enjoy being treated similarly. She commands them to stop bullying Lucia, who was simply trying to stay quiet. Lucia looks up in deep admiration and gratitude as Bianca defends her so fiercely. From that pivotal moment on, the two girls became close friends, walking the halls together. While other classmates eyed Lucia with jealousy over Herwin, Bianca became her safe haven. The two girls shared countless happy moments together, solidifying their deep friendship. While walking outside one day, Bianca suddenly stops Lucia to ask a question. Bianca looks at her with a serious expression, asking if she has a crush. Lucia turns away in a sudden panic, quickly denying that she likes anyone. Smiling slyly, Bianca teases her and asks if she secretly likes Herwin. Lucia gasps in absolute shock and embarrassment, realizing her secret has been discovered. Bianca gently reassures her that she only asked because they are close, comforting Lucia. Believing Bianca would never share her secret with others, Lucia wonders if she should tell her. Lucia gathers her courage and blushes as she confesses her true feelings for Herwin. Confirming her feelings with a nod, Lucia asks Bianca to keep it a secret, though Bianca wonders why. Bianca remarks that if others knew the truth, they would stop asking for introductions, but Lucia stands firm on her promise to Herwin. Surprised by her answer, Bianca asks about the nature of their promise, prompting Lucia to recall how she has confessed her feelings to Herwin since childhood. Bianca reacts with shock, prompting Lucia to explain that they agreed to stop making public confessions. Lucia notes that despite her deep feelings, they promised to remain just friends. Worried about her friend, Bianca anxiously asks what will happen if Herwin falls for someone else. Lucia innocently suggests she would simply stay quiet, leaving Bianca completely dumbfounded by her passive attitude. Bianca strongly advises her to intervene, pointing out that she has been waiting for him since they were children. Flustered by her encouragement, Lucia blushes and questions if she should truly take action. Bianca praises her sincerity, while Lucia internally recalls the immense relief and peace she felt simply sharing her emotions. Lucia reflects on how Bianca's attitude began to shift shortly after their talk. In a sudden revelation, Bianca points out that Herwin has feelings for Lady Lydia and asks Lucia if she was aware of this. Lucia tries to dismiss it as idle gossip, but Bianca darkly questions if she truly believes her own words. With a sinister smirk, Bianca warns Lucia that Lady Lydia is merely playing with her feelings. Lucia turns away defensively, asserting her firm trust in Arista. A solemn narrative transition marks the approach of the incident that changed everything. The memory shifts to Herwin's birthday party, where a crowd gathered around the two of them. The scene depicts the painful moment her first public confession was witnessed by everyone present. Shadowy figures point and laugh at young Lucia, highlighting the cruelty of her classmates. A narrative box conveys Lucia's lasting pain of becoming the Academy's laughingstock. Back in the present, Lucia reflects on how she never saw Bianca again after that fateful night and never learned why she did it. Fidgeting nervously, Bianca breaks the silence by hesitantly asking how Lucia has been. Bianca presses further, asking if Lucia is still close to Herwin or if they are engaged. Distressed by the sudden questioning, Lucia sharply asks why Bianca is bringing up such personal matters. Bianca looks down, explaining that she dropped out and has been out of touch for a long time. Carefully looking up, Bianca offers her sincere apology for her past actions. Stunned by the apology, Lucia angrily demands to know why she betrayed their friendship. Crying out, Bianca finally confesses that she also had feelings for Herwin. Shocked by the revelation, Lucia asks if jealousy was the sole reason behind her betrayal. Bianca admits her jealousy and regret, while Lucia bitterly wonders why she had to be the target of such malice. With a tearful gaze, Bianca confirms her feelings drove her to commit the betrayal. Bianca ruthlessly admits that she targeted Lucia because she hated her even more than she hated Arista. Sitting by the fountain, Bianca drops a shocking truth, stating that Herwin is actually in love with Lucia. Lucia's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as she gasps at Bianca's words. The two women sit in tense silence under the moonlight near the fountain. Bianca softly tells Lucia that there is a truth she probably never realized. Confused and overwhelmed, Lucia demands to know what Bianca means. Sitting side by side near the tranquil fountain, Bianca repeats that Herwin has always loved Lucia. Completely stunned, Lucia looks back at Bianca in total disbelief. Under the glowing moon, Bianca tells Lucia that she may have been completely blind to Herwin's true feelings. Frustrated, Lucia insists that Herwin does not like her and has feelings for Arista instead. Smiling sadly, Bianca reassures her that she does not need to lie because she gave up on Herwin long ago. A lighthearted chibi panel depicts Lucia looking utterly bewildered while Bianca stands calmly beside her. Suddenly grabbing Lucia's shoulders, Bianca frantically asks why there is talk of an engagement if she and Herwin are nothing. Looking away sadly, Lucia reveals that her engagement is actually with someone else. Bianca gasps in absolute shock, completely stunned by Lucia's sudden revelation. Their intense conversation is suddenly interrupted as Byrne approaches with drinks, asking if he kept Lucia waiting. Smiling warmly, Byrne holds out the glasses and notes that Lucia has a guest. Finding her composure, Lucia introduces Bianca as her old friend from their academy days. Polite once again, Bianca bows gracefully and introduces herself to Byrne as Bianca Lawrence. Byrne introduces himself with a charming smile, proudly announcing his marriage premise relationship with Lucia. Byrne offers Lucia a drink to comfort her, and she politely thanks him. Looking at her warmly, Byrne asks if she is feeling better, and she softly confirms she is. Bianca stands in tense silence under the moonlight, looking troubled as she watches them. Bianca bows politely to excuse herself, saying she must return to the banquet hall. As Bianca turns to walk away, Lucia calls out to stop her in surprise. Lucia hands her glass back to Byrne, explaining she will return after seeing Bianca off. Catching up, Lucia is asked by Bianca why she followed when she could have left alone. Lucia pauses, looking down as she prepares to explain something important to her. Lucia steps forward, asserting that everything Bianca believed about their school days was a misunderstanding. Lucia internally insists Herwin loving her is absurd, reminding herself she has already given up on him. Bianca notes that if Lucia remains unaware of Herwin's feelings, perhaps she was mistaken. Bidding a quiet farewell, Bianca wishes her the best with her choices and leaves. A sharp click sounds as the door closes, leaving Lucia standing alone in quiet disbelief. In her bedroom, Lucia sits at her vanity, gently brushing out her long brown hair. Reflecting on the fountain meeting, Lucia worries her downcast mood after Bianca's visit was too obvious. She anxiously wonders what she should say if Bern asks what is troubling her. Back at the fountain, Bern kindly asks if she would prefer to head home early. Lucia insists he shouldn't leave on her account, but Bern warmly expresses his genuine concern. Looking up at him, Lucia is deeply touched by his gentle words and consideration. Thanking him, Lucia reflects on how comforting it is to be with someone so considerate. A quiet thought reassures her that everything will turn out fine. Distracted from brushing her hair by a sudden knock, Lucia calls out to enter. Her brown-haired brother opens the door, surprised to see she is still awake. Turning to greet him, Lucia warmly asks what brings him to her room. She explains she came back early because she was not feeling well. Her brother explains he returned after hearing rumors about her potential marriage partner. Suggesting they have a long talk, her brother leads her over to sit down. He directly asks if she truly intends to get engaged to Marquis Casper. Lucia explains they are still getting to know each other, questioning his sudden concern. Her brother advises she wait to marry until she actually finds someone she likes. He acknowledges their parents' impatience, but urges her not to rush into marriage. The narrative bubble reveals Lucia's firm assertion that dating Bern was entirely her own choice. Her brother looks at her in stunned silence, caught off guard by her determination. Lucia explains to her brother that many significant things happened in the capital while he was away. Her brother stares in open-mouthed shock, struggling to process her words. Clutching her chest, Lucia quietly prepares to tell him the full truth of her past. Sitting across from her, her brother asks if she was rejected around 100 times. He leaps up in absolute disbelief upon learning her confession was rejected 100 times. A narrative block reveals that their parents suggested the blind date after witnessing those rejections. Lucia smiles sadly, explaining she agreed to the blind date to finally move on from him. When her brother asks if she likes Bern, she replies they communicate well, though love is uncertain. Slamming his hand down, her brother expresses frustration that she is pushed into an engagement without love. Flushing with embarrassment, her brother quickly reassures her he only wants her to be happy. Rolling up his sleeves in a fury, her brother demands to know who rejected her. Lucia reveals it is someone he knows, leaving her brother frantically demanding a name. Lucia states that it was Herwin Pania, striking her brother dumb with shock. In a fiery rage, her brother yells in disbelief that Herwin was the one who rejected her. Holding his head in distress, he admits he never imagined she still liked Herwin after graduation. Smiling gently, Lucia encourages her brother to marry for love for her sake. Tearing up, her brother agrees to her promise and asks her to promise the same. Her brown-haired brother smiles warmly, comforting her after their heartfelt talk about love. Under a border of golden sunflowers, Lucia firmly promises that she will do so. Smiling brightly, Lucia beams with relief and happiness amidst a backdrop of blooming sunflowers. The scene transitions to the majestic exterior of the grand estate under a clear blue sky. A massive stack of sealed invitation letters piles up on the marble table inside. Lucia sits across from her mother, who holds a stack of invitations, and notes that news of Marquis Casper courting Lucia has spread to everyone. Looking utterly baffled, Lucia demands to know what any of this has to do with the Casper family. A radiant wedding ceremony takes place on a beautifully decorated altar before a gathered crowd. Displaying the respected crests of House Agnes and Marquis Casper's family, narration explains that the match is drawing immense public attention. Looking distressed, Lucia complains that these gatherings will not be comfortable and flatly refuses to go. Her mother offers to narrow the invitations down to only the essential events that Lucia absolutely must attend. Her mother slides forward a gold-sealed green envelope advising her to attend this specific gathering first. Picking up the green envelope, Lucia looks at it curiously and notes that the handwriting on it looks familiar. The letter inside is an invitation addressed to Lucia, asking if she would like to share a secret conversation at the gathering, and expressing that the sender will be waiting for her reply. Holding the green letter with a bright smile, Lucia happily declares that there is a place she would like to go first. With a joyful expression, Lucia reiterates that there is somewhere she has been wanting to go first. Her mother watches her hold the invitation and curiously asks who sent the letter. Lucia explains it is from Christine, who wants to meet up after a long time, prompting her mother to anxiously ask if Herwin will be attending as well. Smiling warmly, Lucia reassures her mother that it is strictly a girls-only get-together this time. Breathing a deep sigh of relief, her mother expresses her immense comfort upon hearing that Herwin won't be there. Her mother offers to separate the invitations to events Lucia does not need to attend, and Lucia politely thanks her. An attendant guides Lucia down a grand hallway, announcing that Lady Christine has reserved a VIP room for their party. Lucia opens the door to the VIP room, cheerfully greeting her friends and apologizing for arriving late. Arista welcomes Lucia warmly as Christine waves from the table, noting they also just arrived. Lucia elegantly pulls out her chair, preparing to sit down with her friends at the tea party. Lucia asks Christine if this is the venue for the new business she mentioned starting, and Christine proudly confirms her father gave her full authority to run it. While Arista internally grumbles that the girls' meeting was just an excuse for Christine to show off, Christine gladly welcomes her two exclusive guests. In a playful chibi scene, Christine enthusiastically tells her friends to order whatever they want. A delicious assortment of freshly baked bread and fine dishes sits beautifully on the dining table. Leaning in with excitement, Arista and Christine eagerly press Lucia to spill the details about how she met Marquess Byrne and how the matchmaking went. Lucia aggressively cuts her steak, her irritation visibly mounting as she remembers her date. Lucia recalls Byrne confessing that he was already in love with a commoner, making marriage impossible. Clenching her eyes shut in annoyance, Lucia recalls how Byrne suddenly announced he had another woman. Hearing the outrageous story, Arista and Christine both clasp their hands in outrage and cry out that it is so rude. Lucia further recalls other terrible blind dates, where one demanded she care for his mother while another planned kids on their very first meeting. Clenching her fists, Christine declares she hates guys like that, while Arista admits she initially thought Marquess Casper would be awful too. A decorative text box highlights that Byrne at least admitted his mistake and apologized properly. Nodding slowly, Lucia looks thoughtful and calm as she reflects on the overall situation. Christine remarks that meeting Marquess Byrne actually feels like a stroke of luck, and Lucia happily agrees. Looking concerned, Arista asks Lucia if she truly believes he is a good match. Smiling gently, Lucia explains that marriage was something she would do eventually, and she simply got there a bit earlier than them. Arista praises Lucia as amazing, while Christine sighs that she cannot even imagine doing matchmaking yet. Lucia turns to her friends, asking if their families have started dropping hints about potential engagements. Holding her forehead in distress, Christine groans that she might be dragged to a matchmaking meeting any day now. Lucia asks her friends what kind of guy they would want if they had to go on a matchmaking meeting. Represented as a chibi, Christine flatly states she is fine with anyone as long as he does not get in the way of her work. Fidgeting with her fingers, Arista hesitantly begins to speak about her own desires. Smiling beautifully under a flowery background, Arista declares she wants to marry someone she actually likes. Christine playfully teases Arista about who she likes, making Arista blush and quickly deny having anyone yet. In a flustered chibi state, Arista waving her fist frantically explains that she likes swords but not in a romantic way. Lucia silently wonders who it could be that Arista actually has feelings for. A dark-haired knight in a regal uniform resolutely holds his sword under a bright sky. A light brown-haired woman looks to the side with a gentle and soft expression. Her lips part with a soft, quiet gasp as she prepares to speak. Lucia reassures Arista that she will marry someone she loves, causing Arista to murmur her name. Lucia encourages her friend by pointing out that the other person might already return her feelings. Arista smiles warmly and thanks Lucia, promising to always remember her encouraging words. The brown-haired friend happily celebrates their gathering while another enthusiastically agrees with her. Holding her wine glass, the brown-haired friend hesitantly speaks up to address Lucia. The brown-haired friend suggests discussing Marquis Casper, but Lucia notes they have already covered him. The brown-haired friend asks how Lucia's parents reacted to news of the Marquis's courtship. Lucia explains she has not formally introduced him yet, but expects it to happen during his upcoming visit. Her friends react in utter shock, asking if the Marquis is really visiting her house. Lucia smiles brightly and happily, bathed in a warm, floral-framed glow. Lucia praises the scent of the flowers, and Byrne explains they reminded him of her. Clutching the pink roses, Lucia smiles softly as she expresses her gratitude to him. His golden eye widens behind his glasses as a sudden startle takes him by surprise. Smiling warmly, Byrne tells Lucia that the flowers suit her absolutely perfectly. Lucia asks her maid Celine to take the beautiful roses up to her room. Byrne admits he did not expect an invitation home and asks if her family is around. Lucia explains that her parents are away on business and her brother is currently out. Byrne feels bad about missing them, but Lucia reassures him that his presence comforts her. Lucia quickly dismisses his concerns and reveals she has a specific reason for inviting him. A sudden rustling sounds as a large pile of colorful letters drops onto the table. Byrne stares in silent, wide-eyed bewilderment at the pile of envelopes on the table. Lucia notes the engagement announcement had an impact, and Byrne jokes she needs clones to attend. Byrne hums thoughtfully while carefully examining the collection of letters spread before him. Byrne advises her to skip certain invitations due to poor family relationships and unwelcome receptions. Byrne highlights a beneficial invitation for her, and Lucia expresses her gratitude for his help. Lucia asks Bern if there are any specific precautions she should take regarding these invitations. Lucia looks down thoughtfully, replying that there is nothing in particular to worry about. An intense close-up reveals her eye reflecting a deep hidden concern. Standing in a dark atmosphere, Lucia anxiously wonders if there are rumors about her. A sharp startle catches Bern completely off guard, making his eyes widen in surprise. Lucia quietly reiterates her worry about the rumors that might be spreading about her. Stunned by her confession, Bern looks at her in wide-eyed, silent disbelief. Lucia notes that he is likely already well aware of the rumors surrounding her. Lucia warns Bern that their association will bring him curiosity and outright ridicule from others. Lucia explains she is used to ridicule but expresses deep concern for how it affects him. Bern's gaze remains incredibly steady, filled with a quiet strength and deep sincerity. Bern calls Lucia's name, warmly assuring her that none of this is her fault. Bern tells her there is no need to apologize, leaving Lucia deeply moved. Bern declares he chose her freely and is entirely unaffected by the words of others. Bern's gaze remains steady, filled with a quiet strength and sincere determination. Her heart thumps loudly, painting her cheeks with a sudden and beautiful blush. Surrounded by lovely pink flowers, Lucia smiles with a heart full of relief. Lucia thanks Bern for putting her at ease, and Bern smiles, glad to hear it. Bern recalls her saying they were similar, and Lucia confirms that is correct. Lucia admits she cannot see their similarities and confesses she still hides secrets. Bern reveals he also hides secrets, admitting he is not as upright as she believes. Gently clasping Bern's hand, Lucia murmurs that she doesn't know what he is hiding, but with a gentle smile, Lucia expresses her hope that the day comes when they can both tell each other everything. Smiling softly with his hand over his chest, Bern agrees, replying that he hopes so too. Surrounded by blooming roses, the two share a peaceful moment together at the courtyard table. In the sunlit training courtyard, Herwin vigorously practices his swordsmanship while Jerome watches with crossed arms. Sweat pours down Herwin's face as he delivers another powerful swing with his sword. Watching from the side, Jerome lets out a tired sigh, wondering how many hours it has been. Jerome, Herwin's attendant, pulls out a clean white cloth with a deeply worried expression. Startled out of his training, Herwin turns back with a gasp, asking what is wrong. Jerome walks up to Herwin, asking if he has been training too hard these past few days, prompting Herwin to let out a weary sigh. Jerome hands him the white towel, begging his master to please just take a short break. Wiping the sweat from his neck, Herwin mutters a frustrated curse under his breath. Jerome asks if something is troubling him lately, but Herwin quickly averts his gaze and replies that it is nothing. Jerome implores him to have pity on them, explaining that his bad mood makes the entire mansion gloomy, and people are wondering if he has gone mad from swinging his sword for hours. Stunned, Herwin asks if he has truly seemed like a madman, while Jerome quickly covers his mouth in shock. Letting out a quiet sigh, Herwin reluctantly admits he must have looked that way for the past few days. Jerome nervously smiles, asking if he is angry and pleading with him to share if he has any worries. Herwin tentatively starts to speak, explaining there is something he wants to ask, clarifying it is not about himself but about a friend. Herwin scratches the back of his neck with a sheepish look, hesitating to continue his story. Jerome curiously guesses several mutual friends, but Herwin firmly cuts him off, stating it is a friend Jerome does not know. Herwin explains that his friend has a longtime childhood friend who confessed many times, but his friend rejected her every single time. Herwin says that the childhood friend suddenly showed up with her fiancé a few days ago, making Jerome sweat as he notes it sounds like someone he knows well. Jerome coughs and suggests that it is a good thing, since the childhood friend who always liked him has finally moved on to someone else. Herwin stares back in silent disbelief, clearly unsatisfied with his attendant's simple logic. Herwin reflects inwardly, realizing it did not feel like a good thing because his friend only seemed. Clutching his forehead, Herwin explains that his friend actually seemed incredibly confused by the news. Jerome shrugs in absolute bewilderment, questioning why the friend is confused when he was the one rejecting her, leaving Herwin admitting he doesn't understand either. Jerome summarizes the absurd chain of events, sweating as he silently wonders why this entire situation has to be so complicated. Herwin rests his chin in his hand, quietly clarifying that his friend merely did not seem to be in a very good mood. Jerome suddenly raises a finger, brightly suggesting that perhaps the friend is simply feeling slighted. Herwin's eyes widen as he slowly repeats the word, struck by the sudden realization. Jerome explains that as close childhood friends who knew everything, her suddenly bringing a fiancé would naturally trigger such feelings. A bitter realization hits Herwin, imagining Lucia walking away as he realizes they aren't as close as they once were. Jerome concludes that the friend feels left out because she didn't share her engagement news sooner, leaving Herwin quietly pondering the words. Jerome rubs his chin thoughtfully, wondering aloud if the friend is perhaps harboring some other kind of deeper feeling. Herwin suddenly snaps, shouting with a flushed and angry face that his friend absolutely is not. Jerome backpedals in alarm, stammering that he wasn't talking about him, while Herwin huffs and insists it is not like that anyway. With a swift, sharp motion, Herwin slides his ornate sword back into its sheath. Herwin abruptly walks away from the training grounds, declaring that he needs to go wash up now. Jerome watches his master walk away, sweating as he notes that Herwin seems even worse after their little chat. The scene shifts to Herwin's quiet chamber, where a glass of water sits beside a dark blue box. Barefoot steps softly onto the tiled floor as someone enters the warmly lit room. Wearing a white bathrobe, Herwin walks through his room, quietly questioning if he is truly feeling slighted by Lucia. Herwin takes a slow sip of water from his glass, reflecting deeply on the word slighted. He sets the glass down on the table right next to the elegant jewelry box. Herwin gazes at the box, realizing he still has not given her the gift he bought. Herwin looks down with a melancholic expression, holding the small velvet box in his hand. Opening the box to reveal a pair of beautiful teardrop earrings, Herwin thinks they would look perfect on Lucia. He recalls a past moment when Lucia turned to leave in a hurry, bidding him farewell. Herwin laments that he bought them as a surprise gift, but Lucia left so quickly that day he never got the chance. Herwin smiles faintly to himself while looking at the small box containing the teardrop earrings. He feels that these subtle earrings wouldn't suit Lucia's dazzling beauty. Suddenly, he freezes in his tracks as a sudden realization strikes him. He questions his own train of thought, wondering why he is overthinking so much. Touching his forehead in frustration, he lets out a weary sigh. He sets the jewelry box down on the table, wondering if he is truly feeling slighted. He looks down gloomily as he imagines Lucia happily standing beside her new fiancé, Bern. The scene shifts to a lovely outdoor tea party hosted in a sun-drenched green garden. Lucia walks nervously toward the gathering, hoping to establish useful social connections despite her anxiety. Step by step, her high heels click softly against the stone pathway of the garden. Lady Laren warmly asks if Lucia is ready for her introduction, and Lucia nervously agrees. Lucia politely introduces herself to the group of noble ladies gathered at the table. Smiling gracefully, she lifts her elegant yellow skirt to offer a polite, formal curtsy. The ladies warmly welcome Lucia, commenting on her youthful appearance as she enters high society. One lady mentions how highly sought-after Bern is, expressing surprise that Lucia won him over. Lucia privately reflects that claiming she won Bern's heart is far too generous a description. Lady Leiron points out that several jealous young ladies are already glaring in Lucia's direction. Two nearby ladies whisper conspiratorially behind a red fan, casting cold glances at Lucia. Nearby, an orange-haired girl with a black hat looks down with a sorrowful expression. Sensing the palpable hostility around her, Lucia resolves to stay strong and not show weakness. Lady Leiran warns her about future envy, but Lucia confidently attributes it to her remarkable fiancé. She decides to gracefully accept the challenges of her high-profile engagement as her destiny. Smiling brightly, she places her hand over her heart with a peaceful and determined look. Lady Leiran sips her tea, praising Lucia's strong resolve and facing high society scrutiny. The other guests chuckle warmly, admiring her spirited mindset and mature attitude despite her youth. Relief washes over Lucia as she realizes the ladies are satisfied with her diplomatic response. Noticing the hushed whispers of the other guests, Lucia looks around the beautiful garden table. Lucia politely asks Lady Loran for permission to walk around and explore the beautiful grounds. She stands up from the table, prompting a slightly surprised reaction from the host. Grateful for the host's kind permission, Lucia offers a sweet, polite smile of gratitude. Walking away, Lucia sighs, feeling utterly exhausted by the overwhelming pressure of socializing. She strolls down the quiet sunlit stone pathway lined with vibrant blooming red roses. A sudden rustle causes Lucia to turn around in surprise, her eyes widening. She discovers the quiet orange-haired girl standing alone and startled among the rose bushes. The orange-haired girl gasps softly, looking surprised as she is suddenly noticed by Lucia. Lucia gently inquires about her identity, prompting the girl to apologize and introduce herself. The girl introduces herself as Celine J., quickly correcting her surname to Romario. Lucia asks how she can help, but Celine hesitantly asks if Lucia is truly engaged. Lucia clarifies that while their engagement is not yet official, they have promised to marry. Hearing this confirmation, Celine gasps in deep distress, her face turning pale with grief. As Celine reacts silently, Lucia realizes with surprise that the girl harbors feelings for Bern. Suddenly, Celine reaches forward and desperately grabs both of Lucia's hands in her own. Startled by the sudden physical contact, Lucia asks if something is wrong. Celine tearfully begs to know if Bern has ever mentioned her name to Lucia. Realizing the desperation of her actions, Celine slowly lets go of Lucia's hands. Celine quickly backpedals, apologizing and pleading with Lucia to forget her outburst entirely. Lucia stares at her in stunned silence, deeply affected by the girl's raw heartbreak. Heavy tears begin to fall, splashing onto Celine's green dress as she quietly weeps. Seeing Celine's pain reminds Lucia of her own past, though she cannot offer comfort. Lucia quietly walks away down the path, leaving Celine alone to cry in the garden. Overhead view of the office as Lucas lets out a quiet sigh while sitting at his desk. A heavy grunt of frustration escapes from Lucas's side of the room. Blonde boss asks what Lucas's problem is this time, but Lucas dismisses it, replying that it is nothing. Smiling, the blonde boss tells him to stop sighing and just explain what is going on. Lucas flatly refuses, offering a stubborn and direct rejection. The blonde boss demands that Lucas stop answering vaguely, while Lucas sweats and jokingly threatens to cut his pay if he doesn't return to work. The blonde boss explains that he has bumped into Marquise Casper a few times for work but does not really know him. Lucas is convinced he has seen the Marquis somewhere before, but his boss asks if he is trying to dig up some dirt. Lucas suddenly realizes that his sister Lucia occasionally goes on dates with Marquis Casper, leaving his boss utterly shocked. Fuming with maximum anger, Lucas loudly repeats that Marquise Casper is dating his sister. The blonde boss casually asks if the Marquis did something wrong, amused by Lucas's dramatic outburst. Lucas rubs his forehead, explaining that Marquis Casper seems strangely familiar, perhaps from their academy days. Blonde boss taps his documents, pointing out that it has been too long since graduation for him to remember anyone. While Lucas continues to ponder the familiar feeling, the blonde boss snaps and yells at him to get back to work. A sudden sharp knock at the door interrupts their conversation. An assistant opens the door, announcing that advisor Lucas has a visitor named Becky. Lucas instantly stands up in surprise and excitement upon hearing Becky's name. The blonde boss reluctantly tells him to go see her, and a delighted Lucas promises to finish his backlog later. The chibi Lucas happily praises his boss for being incredibly understanding and generous. Left alone with his paperwork, the blonde boss grumbles to himself that he should probably dock Lucas's pay. Lucas eagerly opens the double doors to greet his beloved visitor. Becky runs toward him with a bright smile, clutching a heart-shaped box and calling out to him. Lucas wraps his arms around Becky in a warm hug, asking what she is doing here as she explains she brought him cookies. Lucas holds the heart-shaped cookie box, deeply moved and blushing at her sweet gesture. Becky giggles and explains that she has another appointment, so she must leave soon. Lucas happily offers to walk Becky to the front gate of the mansion. As they walk, Lucas asks Becky if she knows Marquise Casper, prompting her to wonder why he is bringing him up. Lucas explains that the Marquis might engage his sister, and Becky looks surprised by the news. Lucas insists on checking the Marquis out thoroughly, warning that there are many untrustworthy nobles who cheat on their partners. Becky suddenly freezes in her tracks, quietly agreeing with a tense look on her face. Lucas smiles confidently, declaring that no secret stays hidden forever once he starts digging. Becky clenches her teeth in absolute terror, visibly sweating from Lucas's ominous determination. With a sinister shadow over her face, Becky nervously asks if she should look into Marquise Casper for him. The scene transitions to a street where a black carriage suddenly screeches to a halt. A man steps down from the carriage as a voice nearby asks if he was already there. Byrne apologizes to Arista for keeping her waiting, but Arista assures him she just arrived. As they stroll down the street, Byrne asks what is wrong, and Arista admits she was feeling suffocated today. Byrne lets out a deep, troubled sigh as they continue walking. Arista looks at him with concern, noting that he does not look very well. Byrne claims that nothing is wrong, but Arista playfully teases him that his answer is boring. Arista smiles warmly, reassuring Byrne that she is always ready to listen to his worries. Byrne smiles back gratefully, deeply appreciating her comforting presence. Byrne reflects on how much fun he has with Arista and how she is the only one who shares his hobbies. A vision of Arista proudly holding her sword highlights her bright and spirited nature. Byrne imagines Arista marrying a stranger, realizing he would be devastated because she is so incredibly special to him. Byrne's shoes click against the stone pavement as he walks, lost in thought. He reflects that hearing about Arista's sudden engagement to another man was deeply disappointing. Looking at Arista, Byrne smiles with genuine warmth and affection. Arista playfully brushes off his serious mood, asking for a dagger instead if he has spare money. Arista points at her cheek with a grin, successfully snapping Byrne out of his melancholy thoughts. Herwin asks, with a troubled expression, if the Duke is still behaving that way. Arista explains that her father has always disliked her swordsmanship and is even more obvious about it now that she is of marriageable age. Herwin warmly promises to buy her a longsword instead of a dagger to cheer her up. Arista excitedly asks if he is serious, and Herwin reassures her that he would never break his promise. Light chime sounds as the couple steps through the door of a shop. Vern admits he valued her great taste for this task, and Lucia happily assures him she is glad to help. The store clerk welcomes them, mistakenly praising them as a beautiful couple and presenting their new jewelry collection. Both Vern and Lucia are momentarily stunned by the clerk's natural assumption that they are a couple. Blushing slightly, Vern clarifies to the clerk that they are actually searching for a birthday gift for his mother. The clerk quickly apologizes for his mistake and offers to guide them to the appropriate section. A playful suggestion is made about coming back together next time to choose their engagement rings. Walking side by side, Lucia agrees with a sweet smile to return for engagement rings. The clerk presents a beautiful tray filled with colorful, glittering gemstones for their selection. Vern examines the vibrant display, thoughtfully trying to decide which gem his mother would prefer. Recognizing his dilemma, Lucia helpfully requests the clerk to show them the collection of blue gemstones. Vern is deeply touched that she remembered his mother's tastes, and Lucia warmly confirms that she did. Vern confesses he initially hesitated to ask her since they aren't officially engaged yet, fearing it was too early. He expresses his genuine relief and gratitude, noting that her excellent taste has been incredibly helpful. Intrigued by her sudden change in expression, Vern gently inquires about the reason behind it. Vern explains that his father passed away only a year ago, leaving his mother still in mourning. A shadow of sorrow crosses Vern's face as he shares the heavy grief his family still carries. Lucia apologizes for prying, but Vern kindly reassures her that his family's loss is nothing he needs to hide. Lucia gazes up at him, her heart filled with deep empathy and warmth for his vulnerability. Vern finds himself completely captivated by her gentle gaze, momentarily lost for words. She beams with a bright smile, happy that she could offer some comfort and support. A sudden chime sounds at the door as familiar voices argue playfully about buying a thank you gift. Looking up, Lucia and Vern see Arista and Herwin walk into the very same jewelry boutique. Herwin stops in his tracks, his eyes widening in surprise as he calls out Lucia's name. Lucia's heart drops as she stares at them in absolute disbelief, whispering their names in shock. Arista playfully teases them about interrupting a date, prompting a flustered Lucia to clarify their innocent shopping trip. Vern steps forward and politely greets Arista, expressing his pleasure at meeting her. Herwin maintains a polite but unreadable smile as he observes the interaction unfold. Sensing the sudden heavy tension, Vern casts a concerned, sideways glance at a stiffened Lucia. Forcing a bright smile, Lucia nervously asks what brought the two of them to the same shop. Arista sheepishly admits that she and Herwin were simply out enjoying a shopping trip together. Swallowing her sadness, Lucia politely bids them farewell and tells them to take care. Arista warmly suggests that they should all look around the beautiful shop together instead. Lucia leaves the choice to Vern, who enthusiastically agrees, wanting to get to know her friends better. Lucia steals a quiet glance at Herwin, her heart aching as she wonders about his thoughts. Herwin smiles back with genuine warmth, completely at ease in the company of Arista. The four of them gather around the counter, a superficial sense of harmony masking the underlying tension. Vern enthusiastically points out the details of a sapphire, trying to keep the conversation lively and informative. Lucia quietly observes their interactions, unable to fully shake off her lingering feelings of heartbreak. Arista asks for Herwin's opinion on an earring, and he thoughtfully evaluates how it looks on her. Lucia's chest tightens as she realizes Herwin is shopping for a special gift meant for Arista. Clutching her skirt tightly, she wistfully reflects on how wonderful it must be to spend time with the one you love. Vern suddenly calls her name, breaking her away from her painful thoughts and prompting her to respond. Vern smiles warmly as he holds up a delicate, glowing green gemstone necklace for her to see. Stunned by the sudden gesture, Lucia asks if it is for her, and Vern smiles warmly. Vern steps closer, gently fastening the beautiful green necklace around her neck with a tender touch. Lucia gasps softly, touching the beautiful green necklace Vern has just placed around her neck. Vern smiles and admires how perfectly the necklace suits her. Vern asks the shopkeeper to wrap up both the sapphire necklace and the green one. Vern beams warmly at Lucia, expressing his sincere gratitude for her help today. Lucia clutches her chest as her heart flutters from his sweet gesture. Lucia stands quietly in the boutique while Vern finalizes their purchases at the counter. Touching the necklace, Lucia realizes Vern must have noticed her low spirits earlier. Lucia resolves to compose herself and focus more of her attention on Vern. Vern politely asks if she is ready to leave the shop. Lucia wonders about the purchased gift, and Vern clarifies it will be delivered later. Lucia happily offers to treat Vern to dinner to return his kind favor. Vern smiles back warmly, deeply appreciative of her invitation to dinner. Arista suddenly approaches the couple asking if they are preparing to leave for dinner. Arista turns back, asking Herwin about his own dinner plans. Herwin glances over, suggesting that he and Arista should also grab a bite to eat. Arista reacts with mild surprise to Herwin's sudden dinner suggestion. Arista proposes they all eat together, and Vern readily accepts the group invitation. Arista excitedly tells Herwin to come along, and he quietly agrees to join them. As they walk out, Lucia proposes they visit a lovely restaurant located nearby. Lucia suddenly pauses, realizing that is the very restaurant she previously visited with Herwin. Arista pulls Lucia along while Herwin and Vern follow closely behind them. Arista tilts her head and curiously asks Lucia if something is bothering her. Quickly masking her thoughts, Lucia smiles and urges Arista to head inside for food. The four of them enter the bustling, dimly lit dining hall of the restaurant. Arista takes her seat at the table with a bright, cheerful expression. Arista asks Herwin if it is his first time here, but he gently demurs. Herwin reveals he has dined here before and highly praises the food and atmosphere. Lucia freezes, nervously wondering if Herwin is referring to their past date here. Lucia asks Vern if he has decided on his order, and he confirms. Vern warmly encourages Lucia to take her time browsing the menu. Looking at the menu, Lucia fondly recalls the delicious dish Herwin ordered last time. Vern gazes at Lucia's distracted expression with a look of quiet concern. Lucia snaps out of her thoughts as she catches Vern staring directly at her. Vern helpfully suggests ordering the truffle steak, noting it is the restaurant's most popular dish. Lucia's smile falters as she realizes Vern is unaware of her mushroom allergy. Lucia politely explains she cannot eat mushrooms, prompting Vern to scratch his head apologetically. Herwin speaks up coldly, questioning how the Marquis could not know his own fiancé's food restrictions. Vern turns around in surprise, caught off guard by Herwin's sudden, sharp remark. Herwin points out that eating mushrooms would leave Lucia ill for days, making Arista gasp in realization. Vern looks apologetic, while Lucia quickly downplays the situation to ease the tension. Lucia nods with a sweet smile, promising Vern to be more careful. Herwin gently chides Lucia for not informing Vern of her dietary restrictions in advance. Vern takes the blame, promising to be much more considerate and careful from now on. Arista cheerfully suggests ordering the steak without mushrooms while she tries the truffle version. Arista asks Herwin what he is ordering, and he decides on the exact same dish. Lucia looks at Herwin, silently remembering that he had ordered that same dish last time. Vern pieces things together and asks Lucia if she previously dined here with Herwin. Lucia apologizes for not mentioning it sooner, but Vern kindly reassures her it is fine. Vern warmly notes they have only dated for 2 months and still have much to learn. Lucia smiles up at Vern gratefully, softly agreeing with his comforting words. The tense dinner atmosphere deepens as the four sit together under heavy, unspoken tension. Arista quietly glances sideways, her purple eyes filled with a sudden, silent calculation. The quiet clatter of silverware echoes as the awkward group continues eating their dinner. Vern asks if she has any other dietary restrictions, to which Lucia softly replies that she does not believe so. Lucia explains she hid her dislike of foods to avoid appearing picky, but realizes she must outgrow that habit. Vern reassures her by admitting he is also a highly selective eater, surprising Lucia with his sudden confession. Vern reveals his absolute hatred of carrots as he prepares to take a bite of food. Lucia gasps in shock as she points out he just ate a carrot despite claiming to hate them. A nervous gulp sounds as Vern bravely forces himself to swallow the avoided vegetable. Vern wipes his mouth with relief, admitting that swallowing the carrot was incredibly difficult. Vern confesses that despite his age, carrots remain impossible for him to enjoy, even after trying them recently. Vern warmly notes their shared food quirks make them quite similar, bringing a sweet smile to Lucia's face. Lucia gazes at Vern with newfound appreciation, deeply touched by his sweet attempt to comfort her. Arista playfully chides Vern for turning pale, advising him not to force himself to eat disliked foods again. Herwin's fork taps quietly against his untouched steak as his cold gaze remains fixed. Herwin stares intensely at his plate, his mood growing noticeably dark and somber during dinner. The restaurant server politely approaches Vern, apologizing for interrupting their dinner with an urgent matter. Vern turns to ask what is wrong, and the server hesitatingly begins to explain. The waiter whispers a quiet message, causing Vern's expression to instantly stiffen in surprise. Vern reacts with absolute disbelief to the shocking news just delivered by the waiter. A sudden wave of shock washes over Vern as he processes the unexpected message. The waiter reiterates his formal apology to Vern while explaining the urgent situation at hand. Dumbfounded by the unexpected interruption, Vern can only murmur a quiet question of utter disbelief. Vern abruptly stands up and apologizes to the table, announcing he must leave immediately for an urgent matter. Lucia offers him a warm, understanding smile, encouraging him to attend to his business. Vern bows politely to Lucia, expressing his sincere regret for cutting their dinner short. Steady footsteps echo as Vern quickly departs the restaurant, accompanied by the anxious waiter. After Vern leaves, a quiet shadow of sadness falls over Lucia's soft features. Arista pats her stomach contentedly, declaring that the dinner was absolutely delicious. Lucia generously offers to pay for the meal as she prepares to settle a bill. Lucia gasps in sudden realization upon noticing an untouched plate of food on the table. Arista asks Herwin why he didn't eat, prompting him to coldly state he lost his appetite. Lucia watches Herwin with deep concern, her eyes reflecting her unspoken worry for him. Herwin quickly tells Lucia not to worry, dismissing her silent concern with a detached tone. Lucia reluctantly drops the subject and suggests they all get going to head back home. A heavy creak sounds as they exit the warm glow of the restaurant into the night. Outside the restaurant, Arista turns back to ask Lucia and Herwin if they are heading home. Erwin states they have no other plans, and Arista chimes in that she doesn't either. Arista panics in sudden realization, screaming that she was supposed to return home early tonight. Stunned by the sudden outburst, Lucia reacts with a comical look of pure confusion. Lucia kindly comforts Arista, pointing out that it is still early enough in the evening. Relieved by Lucia's reassurance, Arista waves a cheerful goodbye and runs off ahead of them. Herwin sighs in exasperation at Arista's hasty departure while Lucia walks closely by his side. Lucia asks Herwin if he is heading home now that Arista has left, and he quietly agrees. A soft scuff sounds as Herwin suddenly halts his steps on the cobblestone street. Herwin pauses in his tracks, turning his head as an unspoken thought catches him. Lucia gazes up at Herwin with earnest concern, asking if he is truly feeling all right. Herwin insists he is fine, but Lucia points out his untouched plate and unhappy expression. Herwin gazes deeply into her eyes, quietly noting that she still deeply cares for him. Herwin confesses he doubted her interest, but Lucia emphasizes she will always care for him as a friend. Lucia asks Herwin if something is bothering him since he is not sick. Herwin asks if something is wrong, and Lucia points out his unusually cold behavior toward Vern. Herwin turns his gaze away, quietly admitting that he acted out of character. Lucia smiles gently, teasing him for speaking as if the issue does not involve them. Herwin clarifies he is referring to Marquis Casper, leaving Lucia surprised and confused.
Herwin scratches his neck hesitantly, expressing his deep suspicion toward Ver.
Lucia reacts with utter disbelief at Herwin's sudden distrust of her fiancé. Lucia defends Vern, highlighting his kind nature and his effort to eat carrots for her. Lucia humbly describes Vern as too good for her because he accepts her completely. Herwin's red eyes narrow sharply as he reacts with silent irritation to her self-deprecation. Herwin angrily raises his voice, demanding to know why she is putting herself down. Startled by his sudden outburst, Lucia stares back at him in stunned silence. Lucia smiles sadly to herself, internally reflecting on her helpless feelings of unrequited love. She recalls her past confessions of love to Herwin, which always ended in heartbreak. She remembers how Herwin rejected her repeatedly, yet she chooses not to blame him. Lucia smiles warmly amid blooming flowers, finding comfort in now having Vern by her side. Returning to the present, Lucia bids Herwin goodbye and he wishes her a safe journey. A loud creak sounds as Lucia climbs into her carriage to head home. Herwin watches her leave with a somber expression, his gaze lingering on the carriage. As the driver prepares to set off, Herwin suddenly commands him to stop. A quiet knock sounds as Herwin approaches the carriage door, asking to speak with Lucia. The soft creak sounds as Lucia opens the carriage door, surprised to see Herwin. Lucia asks what is wrong, prompting Herwin to hesitantly begin explaining his feelings. Herwin steps closer, admitting that he has been in a terrible mood all day. Lucia looks up at him in surprise as she quietly processes his confession. Lucia wonders if she caused his bad mood, but Herwin quickly reassures her otherwise. Herwin admits he felt deeply conflicted and flustered upon learning of her sudden engagement. Herwin gazes at her, expressing his surprise that she met her fiancé on a blind date. Looking away, Herwin admits he never expected her to pursue such a sudden arrangement. Lucia smiles sadly, explaining she only went on the date to forget her feelings for him. Lucia points out that they are adults now and things must naturally change between them. Herwin smiles bittersweetly, reluctantly agreeing with her words as he looks at her. Lucia asks Herwin to root for her, leaving him taken aback by her request. Lucia smiles warmly, asking him to support her relationship with Vern as her friend. Herwin looks at her in stunned silence, deeply hurt by her desire to remain friends. Lucia politely bids him farewell, and Herwin quietly agrees as she prepares to leave. Herwin stands silently in the street as the carriage door shuts. A steady clatter of hooves echoes as Herwin stands alone, watching the carriage drive away. Soft scuff sounds as Herwin takes a step back on the cobblestone street. Herwin acknowledges the truth of Lucia's words, but wonders why he cannot accept them. The scene transitions to the grand estate of the Marquis of Casper at night. Inside the mansion, a green-haired man with glasses asks a servant about his mother's whereabouts. A sharp creak echoes as the green-haired man quickly pushes open his mother's bedroom door. Entering the brightly lit room, the green-haired man calls out to his mother. Sitting in bed, his mother gently tells him he did not need to visit for something trivial. The green-haired man walks over, expressing deep concern about her sudden physical collapse. He sighs softly, urging her to stop working and rest to avoid further overexertion. His mother sadly explains she must contribute to the family since his father is gone. The green-haired man speaks up, but his mother questions if he pushed himself returning home for her. The green-haired man hesitates, quietly admitting to himself that he did not return for work. The older woman eagerly asks her son if he met someone special during his outing. Vern admits he met Lucia, prompting his mother to excitedly ask if it was a date. His mother fondly shares positive rumors about Lucia while playfully brushing off any minor concerns. Vern lets out a weary sigh, reminding his mother of their agreement to avoid that topic. Relieved to see her recovering, Vern politely excuses himself to leave his mother's bedside. A sudden realization washes over his mother, causing her to call out to him in concern. Vern pauses by the door, calmly telling his mother not to fret about him. Vern reassures his mother that he has no intention of disobeying his parents' wishes. The heavy sound of the bedroom door closing leaves his mother sitting in silent worry. Lively chatter echoes throughout a beautifully decorated garden pavilion where young noblewomen gather for tea. The pink-dressed lady compliments a necklace, prompting her companion to reveal it was a gift. A guest eagerly asks if the gorgeous necklace was gifted by the young marquise. Lucia sits quietly at the table, her gaze turning anxious as she listens to their conversation. Lucia's heart sinks as she anticipates what other gossipy rumors they might bring up next. Lucia notices Céline Lemarian sitting nearby, inwardly surprised to run into her once again. Lucia hopes Céline will not cry as before, but her thoughts are suddenly cut short. Startled, Lucia blinks in surprise as the pink-dressed lady suddenly asks for her opinion. Internally panicking, Lucia struggles to recall the topic of conversation they were just discussing. Lucia quickly agrees to play along, eliciting an enthusiastic response from her noble companion. The purple-dressed lady casually shifts the topic, asking Lucia about the rumors of her new courtship. The excited pink-dressed lady eagerly begs Lucia to share the story of how they met. Sensing Céline's somber mood, Lucia hesitates before deciding she has nothing to hide about Vern. Lucia smiles gently, playing down her relationship as nothing out of the ordinary. Lucia describes how they met through matchmaking and gradually grew comfortable with each other's company. When asked if her green necklace is from Vern, Lucia softly confirms it was indeed his gift. The purple-dressed lady narrows her eyes thoughtfully, clearly unconvinced by Lucia's simple explanation. The lady boldly asks if this means Lucia has completely moved on from Prince Herwin. Feigning ignorance, Lucia laughs nervously and asks the lady to clarify her provocative question. The lady bluntly points out that Lucia's long-standing affection for Herwin is common knowledge. While her friend gasps in shock at the rude question, the instigator smugly asks if she is wrong. Silence falls over the table as Lucia casts her eyes down, her expression turning somber. Lucia bravely admits her past feelings for Herwin while firmly stating they are completely behind her. Lucia points out that years have passed since graduation, making the old rumors entirely irrelevant now. The brown-haired noblewoman presses further, skeptically questioning if Lucia truly let go of her feelings. Inwardly, Lucia admits to herself that she struggled to let go of Herwin until very recently. Lucia clutches her necklace tightly, her hand trembling slightly under the weight of her memories. Putting on a brave front, Lucia softly confirms to the group that she has moved on. Sensing the heavy tension, the pink-dressed lady nervously laughs and suggests they change the subject. Exhausted by the interrogation, the brown-haired lady abruptly stands up and excuses herself from the table. Lucia quietly watches as the guest turns and quickly walks away from the garden pavilion. Letting out a deep sigh of relief, Lucia finally relaxes her tense shoulders once alone. Lucia reflects on her discomfort in social gatherings filled with gossipy acquaintances she barely knows. Lucia is suddenly startled by faint voices whispering about a girl from behind the garden hedges. Peeking around a tree, Lucia overhears the ladies gossiping about her and Viscountess Lemarian. Guests criticize Lucia's delicate demeanor, laughing about how easily she seems prone to tears. Lucia listens in quiet dismay, her heart sinking as she hears their harsh, mocking words. The blonde lady asks for confirmation about Lucia's relationship with Vern, which her companion confirms. Behind the tree, Lucia grows increasingly confused as they bring up Viscountess Lemarian's name again. The blonde noblewoman asks why they should worry about Céline, prompting a shocking revelation. Lucia gasps in absolute shock upon learning that Céline was previously in a relationship with Vern. Overhearing that Vern and his ex-lover dated until recently, Lucia's heart sinks in distress. Lucia listens in quiet dismay as the gossipers discuss how the ex-lover was forced to marry. Realizing the rudeness of eavesdropping, Lucia quickly walks away from the garden path. As she retreats, Lucia is haunted by the revelation that Vern and his ex-lover were once deeply committed. She suddenly stops in her tracks as a devastating realization begins to dawn on her. Lucia recalls Vern's past confession that he chose her because she reminded him of someone else. It finally makes painful sense to her why Vern chose her as his partner back then. Standing alone on the path, Lucia looks down, her heart heavy with sadness and regret. Clutching her hands tightly against her dress, Lucia tries to steady her trembling emotions. The scene transitions to a grand mansion standing quiet and beautifully lit under a full moon. Inside, Lucia rubs her forehead, feeling utterly exhausted and stressed by the day's distressing revelations. Her thoughts are suddenly interrupted when her brother Lucas approaches and calls her name. Lucas leans against the wall with his arms crossed, looking concerned and slightly tense. Surprised by his sudden presence, Lucia looks up and asks if something is wrong. Lucia and Lucas lock eyes, the air between them growing thick with unspoken concern. Lucas asks if she wants a drink, but Lucia politely declines as she awaits his explanation. Sitting down in the study, Lucia asks Lucas what he wanted to speak with her about. With a heavy sigh, Lucas sits down across from her to deliver some troubling news. Lucas looks at her with a serious expression, bringing up the name of Marquis Casper. Taken aback by his sudden mention of Byrne, Lucia asks why he is bringing him up. Lucas questions why she hid this, but Lucia thinks that past and present situations are different. Lucas explains that he recently heard some rumors concerning the Marquis' past relationship history. Lucia gets nervous, wondering if there is something bad about Byrne that she does not know. Lucas explains how Byrne and his former partner broke up when she suddenly married someone else. Lucas angrily objects to the engagement, worrying that Byrne still has not forgotten his ex-lover. Feeling relieved, Lucia laughs and admits that she was already fully aware of Byrne's past. Lucas is shocked to learn she knew about the past but still agreed to the engagement. Inwardly, Lucia reflects that her unrequited love for Herwin makes her situation no different from Byrne's. Seeing her quiet down, Lucas calls out her name with deep worry in his eyes. Lucia gently explains that Byrne's shared experience of heartbreak might help them understand each other better. Lucas sighs in resignation, admitting he cannot stop her if she truly feels that way. Rising to his feet, Lucas fiercely promises to teach Byrne a lesson if he causes any trouble. Lucia smiles warmly, thanking him for his care, while Lucas bashfully scratches his head. Lucas waves goodbye as he exits, wishing Lucia a warm and peaceful night. Left alone in the quiet room, Lucia smiles gently as she processes her brother's protective words. The next day, Lucas runs to his girlfriend Becky, frantically complaining about Lucia's refusal to break her engagement. Lucas rests his head on Becky's shoulder, deeply worried that Lucia will end up hurt. Becky gently reassures Lucas, reminding him that Lucia is an adult capable of handling her decisions. Lucas lets out a soft sigh, reluctantly agreeing with Becky's comforting words to ease his mind. Becky playfully turns his attention to her, asking if he should be worrying about her instead. Taking advantage of Prince Eris's absence, Becky initiates a romantic moment as they sit closely on the couch. Lucas suddenly reacts in surprise as he hears someone entering the room. A blonde woman named Arista opens the door holding papers and calls out to Lucas. Quickly breaking away, Lucas happily introduces Becky as his girlfriend to the visitor. Lucas introduces Arista as his younger sibling's friend, and Arista politely greets Becky. Becky smiles warmly, offering a friendly greeting to the blonde visitor. Lucas asks Arista what brings her by, and she explains she was looking for Prince Ares. Lucas offers to help instead, mentioning that the prince had stepped out of the office. Sensing she is interrupting, Becky politely excuses herself to get back to her work. Lucas waves goodbye to Becky with a cheerful smile as she departs from the room. Arista looks back in surprise as the brown-haired woman walks away, her heels clacking on the floor. Lucas asks Arista if that was her question, and she confirms it with a polite response. Arista hands the paperwork over to Lucas with a soft rustle, presenting the documents to him. Lucas observes her thoughtfully, commenting that she seems quite different than usual today. Lucas points out that her loose-haired dress and heels strongly remind him of Lucia today. Feeling a bit awkward, Arista remarks that his girlfriend must find him rather frustrating. Lucas wonders why she dressed up so elegantly, and Arista explains she is visiting a dressmaker with her mother. Arista enthusiastically declares she needs to finish her paperwork quickly, and Lucas readily agrees to help. With a confident chuckle, Lucas reassures her that the task will take less than 5 minutes. Arista smiles warmly, feeling grateful for his swift and reliable assistance. The scene shifts to a grand sunlit boutique filled with elegant gowns and luxurious furnishings. At the boutique, Lisa carefully adjusts a beautiful dark blue gown on Arista. Lisa mentions the Duchess requested more dresses, leaving Arista shocked by the excessive number. Lisa cheerfully invites her to proceed, leaving a deeply exhausted Arista to reluctantly follow. Opening a heavy curtain, Lisa announces that the next set of dresses is ready inside. Finding the stiff green dress uncomfortable, Arista requests something much simpler and easier to wear. As Lisa starts to suggest another option, she is suddenly interrupted by someone calling her name. Summoned by her colleague, Lisa politely excuses herself and steps away, leaving Arista alone. As Lisa runs off with light footsteps, Arista stands alone in the room. Letting out a relieved sigh, Arista flops onto a plush sofa to catch her breath. Arista's moment of rest is suddenly interrupted by faint, hushed whispering echoing from nearby. She overhears a male voice suggesting someone should ditch her partner and come to him. Arista gasps silently, her eyes wide with alarm. Tiptoeing quietly across the room, Arista stealthily approaches the curtain to investigate the voices. Arista is stunned to hear someone criticizing Lucas Agnes, wondering why his name was mentioned. Her heart thumps rapidly as she recognizes the female voices belonging to Lucas's girlfriend. With trembling fingers, Arista slowly pulls back the heavy curtain to peek inside. Behind the curtain, the woman boldly confesses her preference for a more masculine partner. Arista's eyes widen in absolute horror as she witnesses Becky intimately embracing another man. In complete disbelief, Arista reels back, her mind spinning from the shocking betrayal. The man's playful laughter echoes as he eagerly suggests they meet up later that night. Standing frozen in the dim hallway, Arista listens as the woman giggles in response. Hearing them decide to leave the room, Arista quickly flees the scene in a panic. Becky and her companions step out from behind the curtain, completely unaware of being watched. Becky looks around in confusion, noticing a slight disturbance near the dressing screen. The blonde man playfully pulls Becky close from behind, ignoring her mild protest. Becky glances around thoughtfully, briefly wondering why the fleeing figure felt familiar before dismissing it. Becky and the man walk away together with clacking footsteps as Arista watches from behind the screen. Arista struggles to process the devastating fact that Lucas is being cheated on by his girlfriend. Clutching her hands in deep anxiety, Arista agonizingly debates whether she should tell Lucas the truth. She hesitates, deeply worried about how shattered Lucas will be if he learns of this. Lisa finally returns, apologizing to Arista for keeping her waiting so long. Lisa warmly offers her assistance, ready to help Arista try on the next gown. Looking pale and visibly shaken, Arista softly confirms she is ready to continue. The scene transitions to a cheerful room as a young couple arrives together. Lucia welcomes them with a bright, joyful smile, thanking them warmly for coming. The tall man asks why she only invited them, and she explains the others were busy. She enthusiastically announces her intention to invite them all to a special upcoming event. Both Lucia and her companion stare at her in surprise, puzzled by the sudden mention of a party. The host presents them with elegant invitations, explaining the party will officially launch her new business. Christine invites Lucia to her upcoming large-scale event, and Lucia promises to attend with Byrne. Brian looks at the invitation with a confident, knowing smirk on his face. Christine scolds Brian for his playboy behavior, but he nonchalantly shrugs off her concern. Lucia and Christine watch in disbelief as Brian dramatically laments his own good looks. Lucia stares at Brian, her expression softening with quiet contemplation and gentle concern. Brian sighs dramatically as he walks over to the sofa, complaining about their judgment. Sinking into the sofa, Brian defends his playboy lifestyle as a temporary rebellion against his father. Brian bitterly admits that his strict father leaves him little choice, though he has more freedom than his older brother. Lucia recalls that Brian's father was indeed known for being an incredibly strict and controlling man. Lucia wonders if Brian's reckless dating habits stem from deep-seated resentment toward his demanding father. Brian questions whether he should finally settle down and end his carefree lifestyle as suggested. Christine advises Brian to stop his wild behavior to avoid creating misunderstandings with his future fiancé. Brian comments that Christine's future fiancé is lucky since she has always prioritized business over romance. Brian dismisses the concern, pointing out that he does not even have an engagement arranged yet. Brian jokingly suggests that they get engaged to each other since their families are already well acquainted. Christine is utterly repulsed by the joke, prompting Brian to playfully mock cry over his rejected proposal. Christine suddenly changes the subject, asking Lucia if she has heard from Herwin recently. Lucia quietly admits that she has not been in touch with Herwin lately either. Christine sighs, explaining that Herwin has ignored all her messages and invitations due to his busy schedule. Lucia tilts her head, silently wondering what could possibly keep Herwin so incredibly occupied right now. Christine eagerly decides to personally deliver the invitation to Herwin since she has business near his estate. Brian teases Christine about her sudden excitement, asking if she would help him with his errand instead. Brian blushes deeply and looks flustered when Christine playfully tells him she is counting on you. Lucia fondly reflects on how well Christine and Brian get along despite their constant bickering. Lucia watches her two friends with a warm, gentle smile gracing her face. Lucia realizes that Christine's business party will likely be a very formal and elegant event. Lucia decides that she needs to visit a tailor to get a new dress made for the occasion. The scene transitions to the bustling streets of the city lined with beautiful European-style buildings. After her dress fitting, Lucia walks down the street with her maid, unsure of where to go next. Lucia decides to take a stroll and explore the familiar streets since she has some free time. Smiling happily, Lucia recalls how often she visited this lively area during her academy days. The maid suddenly notices something in the crowd, her eyes widening slightly with recognition. Lucia notices a group of lively academy students chatting excitedly nearby. One of the students gasps in surprise, pointing towards someone in the distance. The girls squeal with excitement upon spotting Henry, while Lucia watches their reaction with confusion. The name Henry sparks a sudden memory for Lucia, causing her eyes to widen in shock. Henry stands confidently in the crowd, having grown into a remarkably handsome young man. Lucia is stunned to realize that the young man before her is indeed her childhood friend, Henry. Overjoyed by the unexpected reunion, Lucia smiles brightly as her cheeks flush with warmth. Lucia waves enthusiastically and calls out Henry's name, drawing the attention of the crowd. Henry stops in his tracks, turning around in absolute shock as he recognizes Lucia. Henry politely excuses himself from his friends, telling them he needs to say hello to someone. Henry eagerly runs over to greet Lucia, both of them expressing joy at seeing each other again. Lucia marvels at how tall Henry has grown, while he playfully downplays his impressive height. The Academy girls watch in awe, whispering about how they have never seen the stoic Henry smile so happily. Lucia jokingly recalls Henry's childhood promise to marry her, causing him to blush and laugh in embarrassment. Henry's playful smile fades slightly as a quiet, thoughtful expression crosses his face. Henry quickly dismisses his brief moment of distraction with a reassuring smile when Lucia asks what is wrong. Henry eagerly invites Lucia to join him for a meal, but she politely declines due to her prior plans. Lucia suddenly recalls that Christine had mentioned Herwin failing to reply to any of her messages. Henry explains to Lucia that academy work has kept him too busy to speak with his older brother. Henry playfully pouts, teasing Lucia that she only ever seems to care about his older brother. Surprised, Lucia realizes that Henry really hasn't been in contact with Herwin recently either. Henry is completely tensed up and shocked upon hearing Lucia mention her upcoming engagement. Henry tenses up and frantically asks if she is getting engaged to his brother, which she immediately denies. Lucia smiles warmly and assures him that Herwin is already fully aware of the engagement. Lucia's maid politely interrupts to remind her that it is almost time for her dress shop appointment. Lucia bids a cheerful farewell to Henry and walks away with her maid, leaving him behind. Henry stands alone in the street, muttering in absolute disbelief over the unexpected news he just received. Henry's mind races as he tries to process the shock of Lucia getting engaged to another man. Standing frozen on the street, Henry remains deeply preoccupied with the news of her impending marriage. Henry's freckled friend approaches and curiously asks about the identity of the departing woman. The friend points out that it is his first time seeing the usually stoic Henry smile so happily. Turning his head slightly, Henry casually brushes off his classmate's observation with a simple shrug. When Henry boldly declares his fondness for Lucia, his friend is left thoroughly bewildered and confused. Henry smirks with a sly grin, plotting to use this sudden situation to his own advantage. Uncomfortable, his classmates plead with Henry to stop making such a creepy, scheming expression. Freckles realizes who the girl was, asking if she is the youngest daughter of the Agnes family. Freckles looks at Henry in shock, asking if he is genuinely unaware that she is getting engaged soon. Henry awkwardly scratches his neck, admitting that Lucia literally just broke the news to him. Henry suddenly changes his mood, brightly dragging his friends along as he suggests they go get lunch. Henry silently reflects on how unimaginable it is for Lucia to marry anyone besides Herwin. Henry notes Lucia's cheerful expression, wondering if she has finally recovered from the pain his brother caused her. Henry's classmates walk ahead, leaving him momentarily standing alone in the bustling street. Henry runs to catch up, hoping his brother will not deeply regret letting Lucia move on. The scene transitions to a grand illuminated banquet hall filled with elegantly dressed aristocratic guests. Guests admire the lavish decor of the ballroom, commenting on how elaborate the party setup is. The gold-eyed, purple-haired man looks around in irritation, grumbling about Herwin's failure to show up. The noblewoman gasps in surprise as Herwin suddenly arrives, prompting the gold-eyed guest to ask when he got here. Herwin stands stoically in the grand ballroom, his silent presence drawing the attention of the surrounding guests. Looking at Herwin, his gold-eyed friend silently notes that Herwin appears to be in much better health. The scene flashes back to his friend remembering how Herwin looked on the verge of death during their last visit. The friend knocks firmly on the door to Herwin's private chambers, calling out his name. He cautiously opens the door and peers inside, calling out to Herwin once again. A heavy, quiet silence dominates the dimly lit bedroom, with the bed curtains drawn shut. From behind the curtains, a faint, tired voice weakly acknowledges the visitor's arrival. Herwin lies exhausted in his bed, looking pale and weary as he slowly blinks awake. Sitting up in bed, Herwin tiredly rubs his forehead and asks what is going on. The visitor peers at Herwin with deep concern, asking if something troublesome has happened. Sitting down next to Herwin, his friend asks if he is sick, which Herwin quietly denies. Herwin sighs and admits he had things to contemplate, earning a skeptical remark from his friend. His friend chuckles playfully, teasingly asking if Herwin has somehow been dumped by someone recently. Herwin falls completely silent, his grim and thoughtful expression indicating the tease might be true. Changing the subject, his friend reaches into his coat, announcing he has brought something to give him. He holds out an elegant sealed envelope, offering the invitation directly to Herwin. Staring at the sealed envelope, Herwin curiously asks what the letter is for. His friend explains that Christine is hosting a business party and strongly hopes he will attend. Herwin accepts the letter, looking down at the invitation with a quiet, thoughtful expression. Herwin asks if their friends will be present, and his friend confirms Lucia will bring her fiancé. Shocked by the news, Herwin tenses up as his friend confirms the fiancé is Marquise Casper. Herwin decides to attend the party since everyone else is planning to go. His purple-haired friend silently speculates that Herwin might have truly been ill. Purple-haired friend politely announces he is going to greet some other guests. Brian mutters to Christine that their friend is definitely going to mingle with ladies. Herwin suddenly arrives at the party, catching the attention of Brian and Christine. Christine admits she saw Lucia earlier, but is unsure where she went. Brian and Christine look startled by Herwin's sudden intense change in demeanor. Christine giggles cheerfully, clapping her hands together with an amused, happy expression. Herwin stands silently, his serious expression filled with deep contemplation and worry. Herwin announces he is going to find Lucia despite Christine's suggestion to wait. Herwin walks past them, explaining he wants to privately apologize to Lucia. Herwin departs toward the balcony, leaving Brian and Christine watching in silence. Christine wonders aloud if Herwin and Lucia had another argument with each other. Herwin walks through the dimly lit terrace, searching the outdoor grounds for Lucia. Looking around the dark garden, Herwin desperately wonders where Lucia could be. Herwin recalls a past moment when Lucia asked him to cheer her on. In his memory, Lucia smiled and hoped to get along well with Vern. Back in the present, Herwin deeply regrets his inability to answer her back. Herwin clenches his fist, resolved to apologize for making her feel so uneasy. Walking past the garden roses, Herwin questions his true motives for finding her. Herwin remembers how his mind has been filled solely with wanting to see her. A sudden realization causes Herwin to stop abruptly in his tracks in shock. Herwin looks visibly shaken as he questions his true reasons for wanting her. Herwin stands quietly in the courtyard, his attention drawn toward the garden fountain. Herwin calls out Lucia's name as he turns toward the sound of voices. Herwin spots a woman sitting alone by the brightly lit fountain in the distance. A gentle, hopeful smile begins to form on Herwin's face as he approaches. Herwin's smile quickly fades as he notices Casper sitting intimately beside Lucia. Herwin freezes in absolute shock, his gaze locked onto the couple together. Casper leans in remarkably close to Lucia, their faces only inches apart. Watching from the shadows, Herwin feels his chest tighten as they lean closer. Herwin is completely devastated, his eyes wide with heartbreak as he watches them. Standing frozen, Herwin struggles to process the painful sight of the two together. Overwhelmed by grief, Herwin covers his face with his hand in deep distress. Herwin's eyes well with tears as he reminds himself of their impending engagement. Clutching his chest, Herwin looks utterly pained by his sudden emotional distress. Herwin swiftly turns away, unable to bear the sight of them any longer. Herwin walks away into the dark night, leaving the couple in the garden. Casper gazes gently at Lucia, his face close to hers as he speaks softly. Casper sits closely beside Lucia by the fountain, offering his quiet support. Casper looks down with a solemn, understanding expression as Lucia remains silent. Casper gently places a comforting hand on Lucia's shoulder as she begins weeping. Lucia covers her face, tearfully apologizing as her emotions completely overflow in distress. Casper watches her with deep empathy, waiting patiently for her to calm down. At the party, Lucia and Casper present Christine with a beautiful flower bouquet. Casper politely suggests that they all find time to sit down and chat. Christine smiles warmly, telling Casper he is welcome to send a letter anytime. Christine walks away holding the bouquet while Lucia watches her departing friend fondly. Casper comments on how impressive it is for Christine to run her business. Lucia happily agrees that running her own business has always been Christine's dream. Vern resolves to treat Lucia exceptionally well to leave a positive impression on her friend. Celine playfully agrees, teasing Vern that he indeed must treat her very well. Celine suggests moving to another location, and Vern readily agrees to her proposal. While Celine smiles happily, Vern suddenly freezes, his attention captured by something in the distance. Celine turns to Vern, wondering in confusion about what has captured his intense focus. Lucia is startled to spot Celine, realizing she is now the wife of Viscount Lemario. Lucia worries that an unexpected encounter at the party will cause awkwardness for Vern and Celine. Celine politely bows and greets Lucia, who responds with a gentle greeting in return. Celine politely nods, maintaining a gentle and courteous demeanor as she responds. Celine explains her husband's absence while noting Lucia's companion, causing Vern to freeze in shock. When Celine inquires about the upcoming engagement, Lucia warmly confirms that the ceremony is approaching. Lucia seeks confirmation from Vern, who quickly offers a polite but tense agreement. A sudden tense silence fills the air as Lucia silently observes Vern's uneasy expression. Noticing his pale face, Lucia asks Vern if he is feeling unwell. Lucia politely excuses them from the conversation, prompting a soft farewell from Celine. Celine quietly watches from behind as Vern and Lucia walk away together. Vern casts a lingering, troubled glance over his shoulder as they depart. Lucia maintains a serene and reassuring smile, completely hiding her inner thoughts. The soothing sound of a sparkling fountain echoes as Lucia prepares to speak her mind. Sitting by the glowing fountain, Vern gently calls Lucia's name to initiate a conversation. Looking troubled, Vern hesitantly asks Lucia if she was already aware of the situation. Lucia feigns ignorance with a light laugh, pretending not to understand his question. Lucia admits she has heard some details but is unsure if they are true. Lucia explains she heard rumors about Celine after running into her at tea parties. Vern is shocked to learn that Celine directly questioned Lucia about their engagement. A heavy silence falls between them as Vern lets out a long, weary sigh. Vern quietly confesses the truth when Lucia asks if Celine was his intended bride. Lucia gently asks Vern to share his past with Celine whenever he feels ready. Vern softly agrees to open up about his past, stealing his resolve. Vern begins his tale, recalling how their mutual love for books brought them together. In a warm flashback, a studious young Vern spends his day surrounded by books. He remembers initially viewing the cheerful, book-loving young Celine as just a close friend. Vern fondly recalls how he fell in love, finding himself smiling whenever she was near. Celine excitedly shares a new discovery with Vern, pulling him along to show him. Celine eagerly leads Vern to a massive double door, which he recognizes as the storage room. With a playful giggle, Celine turns the door handle, promising him a wonderful surprise. Vern gasps in amazement as Celine reveals a hidden library room filled with rare books. Despite Vern's initial hesitation about sneaking in, Celine playfully reassures him that it is fine. The hidden room quickly becomes their secret sanctuary where they spend their happiest moments together. Sitting back-to-back on the library floor, they lose themselves in their books together. Vern recalls the countless hours he and Celine spent together in their secret haven. Celine rests her head against Vern's back as they share a quiet, tender moment. Their deep connection blossoms into love, and the two officially begin dating. Vern explains that their love was strong enough to ignore any surrounding rumors. Hand in hand, Vern and Celine face the world together, completely devoted to one another. A dark shadow falls over their happiness as the dreaded day of reckoning arrives. A sudden harsh sound shatters the quiet peace of the grand estate. Vern stands frozen and deeply unsettled, bracing himself for the looming confrontation. Vern's father furiously objects to the union, refusing to accept someone of lesser nobility. Vern passionately defends his love, swearing he will never abandon Celine despite his father's opposition. Vern's father questions if Vern believes he opposes Celine solely due to her lower social status. The father reveals Celine's father has been borrowing money using their family name. Vern stands stunned as his father warns their romance is ruining the family. A sudden realization strikes Vern's heart as the harsh reality leaves him completely speechless. Vern desperately questions his father, who furiously accuses his romance of destroying the household. Deeply shaken, Vern struggles to process the devastating accusation brought against his relationship. A heavy silence hangs between father and son as they confront the painful truth. Vern apologizes to his father but firmly refuses to break up with Celine. Visibly angered, the father incredulously asks Vern to repeat his defiant statement. The father furiously yells, asking his son if he has completely lost his mind over a woman. Defying his family, Vern asks his father to disown him if he cannot accept Celine. Vern reflects on his failed efforts to protect her against his family's severe opposition. A carriage arrives at a bustling city street carrying Vern and Celine away. Vern earnestly pleads with Celine to run away with him, but she reacts with confusion. Vern eagerly proposes starting their lives over in a place where nobody can interfere. Vern grips his chest tightly, hoping she will accept his desperate proposal. Celine skeptically questions if he truly expects her to abandon everything for him. Celine bluntly rejects his idea, leaving Vern shocked by her sudden, cold demeanor. Celine calmly announces her practical plans to marry Viscount Lamario instead. A sudden thump of heartbreak strikes Vern as he listens to her confession in disbelief. Celine coldly explains that marrying the wealthy Viscount will secure her financial future. She notes she will finally escape her father's relentless pressure regarding their family wealth. Celine points out she would lose everything by running away, ignoring Vern's desperate pleas. Celine declares him useless to her now, heartlessly telling him to find someone else. When Vern asks if she only loved his status, Celine mockingly confirms his naive assumption. Without looking back, Celine opens the carriage door and coldly announces her departure. With a series of steady clicks, her footsteps fade as she walks away forever. Having lost the woman he loved, Vern sits alone in the dark, completely shattered. For an entire year, Vern remained locked away in his room like a hollow shell. Not long after his self-imposed isolation, another tragedy struck his family. Vern stands in the cemetery, mourning the sudden and tragic passing of his father. Vern quickly inherited his family's title and buried his lingering grief in endless work. Vern explains that by the time his pain faded, Celine was already happily married. Lucia questions Vern directly, asking if he still harbors deep feelings for Celine. Vern is caught completely off guard by her direct question, looking up in surprise. Turning away, Vern admits he now understands why Lucia felt they were so similar. Lucia smiles gently, explaining that they both love someone they cannot be with. Lucia adds that his tragic romantic past was not the sole reason she chose him. Lucia shakes her head, assuring Vern he does not need to apologize given their shared circumstances. Inspired by Vern's honesty, Lucia decides it is time to share her own story. Lucia softly confesses her long-standing, unrequited love for Herwin. She explains she confessed one last time to Herwin to sort out her remaining feelings. Laughing weakly, Lucia doubts she can never love someone so passionately again. Byrne gently covers her hand with his, hoping she does not overthink their situation. Byrne smiles warmly, admitting he would have felt burdened if she had wanted love from him. The two share a playful, lighthearted moment as they chuckle over their mutual lack of romantic expectations. Byrne suddenly strokes his chin, murmuring that it is still better to make sure. Byrne grins playfully, suggesting they verify if they truly have no mutual feelings. Lucia looks at him in complete confusion, wondering how he plans to check. Sitting together by the fountain, Byrne boldly asks Lucia if she would try kissing him. Byrne reacts with shock to her kissing proposal, while she points out they must grow closer as future spouses. Byrne gazes thoughtfully, contemplating the unexpected proposal with a soft look of hesitation. Smiling gently, Lucia softly admits she would be grateful if he were her first. Making his decision, Byrne slowly leans down toward Lucia to fulfill her request. From the shadows, Herwin stands frozen as he watches the couple intimately lean in by the fountain. Byrne and Lucia share a quiet, gentle kiss in the soft glow of the courtyard. Herwin's voice softly echoes her name, breaking through the quiet darkness of her thoughts. Lucia longingly whispers Herwin's name as she visualizes his warm, gentle presence before her. She imagines a tender embrace with Herwin, dreaming of how he would hold her. Lucia wonderingly contemplates how emotional it would feel if Herwin were the one kissing her. While Byrne kisses her, she continues to lament what could have been with Herwin. Suddenly struck by a sharp pang of realization, Lucia pulls back with wide, startled eyes. Overwhelmed by grief, Lucia weeps as she admits her feelings for Herwin remain too strong. Seeing her sudden distress, Byrne gently reaches out his hand to offer comfort. Byrne patiently consoles Lucia, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder as she weeps. Understanding her pain, Byrne gently reassures her that she does not need to explain. Sobbing into her hands, Lucia tearfully confesses she will never be able to forget Herwin. Byrne holds her arm in a comforting grip, calling her name to draw her back. Lucia looks up in surprise, her tear-filled blue eyes locked onto him in wonder. Byrne promises to never make her cry, though Lucia hesitates in response to his vow. Smiling gently, Byrne suggests that she likely felt a familiar sense of comfort from him. Byrne gently lifts her chin, explaining how this moment has only solidified his resolve about their marriage. Byrne warmly assures her that they will build a marriage based on mutual support and understanding. Looking at him with a tender, watery smile, Lucia softly utters his name in gratitude. As Byrne holds Lucia comforting by the fountain, Herwin silently departs into the dark garden, heartbroken. The scene shifts back to the grand party venue as the night deepens. Christine searches the terrace, noting that she cannot find either Herwin or Lucia anywhere. She wonders if she should check the darker corridor of the palace one last time. A sudden sweet voice calling out "honey" echoes from ahead, stopping her in her tracks. Christine stops abruptly, looking visibly startled by the unexpected conversation echoing nearby. Peering past a stone pillar, Christine spots a dark-haired man and Celine kissing passionately. The couple pulls apart as the man alerts Celine that someone is watching them. Christine stands frozen in shock as she catches Celine red-handed in her secret tryst. The man recognizes Christine as Lady Lydia, prompting her to ask how he knows her. He explains that he previously visited the Lydia estate for business investments with the Duke. Christine directly asks if the man is Celine's lover, and Celine hesitantly confirms it. Christine requests to speak with Celine privately, prompting the man to politely step aside. As the man walks away, a tense silence fills the corridor between the two women. Celine arrogantly questions their closeness, but Christine firmly counters that their relationship is irrelevant. Christine demands to know his identity, noting he is different from Celine's previous partner. Celine feigns ignorance, defensively asking Christine who she is referring to. Celine panics internally as she realizes Christine is caught on to her secret affairs. Quickly recovering her composure, Celine flashes a smug, manipulative smile at her accuser. Celine smugly asks if she intends to snitch to Lucas, which Christine immediately confirms. Celine mockingly doubts Lucas would believe her accusations, catching Christine off guard. Celine smugly asserts that Lucas would never believe allegations of her affairs without concrete proof. Christine angrily tells her not to deny her actions, while Celine sighs in mock frustration. Celine takes a slow, deliberate step closer to her, asserting her confidence. Celine mockingly whispers that without concrete evidence, her cheating actions do not matter. Celine warns her to remain silent, leaving Christine stunned as she reaches a sudden realization. Celine accuses Christine of trying to steal Lucas away from her because of her hidden feelings. Deeply angered by the accusation, Celine tightly clenches her fists in silent rage. Christine suddenly halts her departure, leaving Celine bewildered by her unexpected hesitation. Celine boldly confesses her affection for Lucas, defiantly confronting her accuser with a sharp glare. Christine reacts in utter shock as Celine declares that Lucas is wasted on her. Christine smugly counters, questioning whether Lucas would believe Celine's word over hers, dismissing it as mere jealousy. Celine asserts her position as Lucas's girlfriend, but Christine retorts that the decision ultimately belongs to Lucas. Defeated by the sharp rebuttal, Celine stands in stunned silence, deeply shaken by the cold truth. Celine hastily turns and walks away, ignoring Christine's desperate call for her to wait. Left alone, Christine bites her hand in mounting frustration and anxiety over the unresolved confrontation. The next morning, bright sunlight streams through the bedroom window, marking the start of a new day. Lucia wakes up and lets out a soft yawn, rubbing her neck as she sits up in bed. Sane enters the room with a tray, expressing deep concern over Lucia's visibly swollen eyes. Lucia asks if her appearance is truly that noticeable, and Sane confirms it, relieved their mistress slept early. Lucia gently applies a cold compress to her swollen eye, dismissing the maid's worries. Sane playfully teases Lucia about getting dumped again, prompting an annoyed groan from her. Lucia reassures Sane that her honest conversation with Byrne was actually refreshing and not a cause for worry. Sane expresses her relief while gently tending to Lucia, who firmly insists that nothing bad occurred. Sane notes the swelling has decreased and offers further assistance before Lucia politely dismisses her for the morning. Sane bows respectfully and departs, leaving Lucia alone in her bedroom to gather her thoughts. Sitting alone, Lucia reflects on her conversation, realizing she did not entirely lie to Sane but still harbors hidden pain. She recalls the painful moment she wept, feeling miserable that her resolve crumbles whenever she thinks of her win. Recalling Byrne comforting her during her breakdown, she wonders if their mutual pain will only continue to grow. Attempting to clear her mind, Lucia gazes out the window, noting how beautiful the weather is. Peering through the glass, Lucia is surprised to spot her mother enjoying the garden outside. A close-up of Lucia's eye captures her sudden focus as a thought begins to form. Hoping for guidance, Lucia contemplates joining her mother in the garden to ask for some personal advice. With a soft click of her slippers, Lucia heads down to the sunny terrace. Her mother looks up in surprise as Lucia approaches, expressing her desire to ask an important question. Her mother warmly invites her to sit down at the garden tea table before they begin. Smiling gently, her mother kindly prompts Lucia to share whatever is on her mind. Lucia directly asks if her parents' union was a political marriage, which her mother calmly confirms. Lucia asks when her mother fell in love with her father, causing her mother to pause thoughtfully over her tea. Her mother admits she never shared their first meeting, revealing that the father initially loved someone else. Lucia gasps in absolute shock, her eyes wide with disbelief at her mother's sudden revelation. Her mother adds that it was only a one-sided love, keeping the other woman's identity a secret. Flashback shows the father's cold demeanor as he flatly declared he would never love her. During their wedding, both remained distant, with neither expecting to find genuine affection in their arranged union. However, their solemn ceremony was interrupted when the woman the father loved unexpectedly appeared at the wedding. Gripped by suspense, Lucia eagerly asks her mother how she responded to the woman's intrusion. With a proud smile, her mother gleefully recalls turning the wedding venue upside down, chasing the rival away. Lucia is bewildered by her mother's casual cheerfulness as she muses if that bold action won her father's heart. Her mother's warm, content expression highlights the fond memory she holds of their unconventional beginning. Her mother explains that arranged marriages were the norm, noting that no couple starts off perfect. She reflects on how their mutual happiness grew over time, as her father's kind treatment eventually opened her heart. Her mother happily gushes about how inseparable they are today, leaving Lucia slightly flustered by the sweet display. Looking at her reflection in the tea, Lucia realizes happiness is possible even without love at first sight. With a glimmer of hope, Lucia wonders if she and Byrne might also find happiness together. Surrounded by drifting petals, Lucia contemplates whether they can leave their past hurts behind and start fresh. Bathed in warm sunlight, the grand family estate stands serene as new hope begins to blossom. Vern works diligently at his desk, writing on a scroll in his quiet study. Vern mutters to himself that he should set a wedding date in the near future. Vern reflects on past emotional struggles, grateful that Lucia helped him regain his composure. Feeling pressured, Vern realizes he can no longer postpone his upcoming engagement. A maid hesitantly opens the door, interrupting his thoughts to deliver some news. Vern asks if their guest has arrived early, but the maid quickly clarifies otherwise. Vern is visibly startled upon hearing mention of the Lamario estate. The maid delivers shocking news of Viscount Lamario's sudden death, leaving Vern utterly stunned. After learning the Viscount died in an accident, Vern quietly laments the tragic misfortune. The maid acknowledges his somber response before leaving him alone with his thoughts. Left alone, Vern repeats the news of Viscount Lamario's fatal accident in disbelief. Vern sighs deeply as he worries about whether Celine will be all right after her loss. Vern sits across from Lucia in a grand parlor, sharing a quiet tea time. Lucia nervously sips her tea while casting a tentative glance in his direction. Vern sits in somber silence, completely lost in his own troubled thoughts. Lucia calls out his name, breaking Vern out of his deep daydream. Lucia mentions she also heard the news of the Viscount's passing on her way. Lucia suggests visiting the grieving Viscountess, but Vern quickly declines out of propriety. Lucia encourages him to attend the funeral since they were longtime friends. Vern reluctantly agrees, acknowledging their long friendship with a quiet nod. Vern resolves that attending the funeral to pay his respects is the right choice. The scene shifts to the Grand Lamario estate during a bright, clear day. Dressed in mourning attire, a tearful Celine expresses her gratitude to the guests. Celine gasps in surprise as she recognizes Vern standing among the attendees. Vern bows respectfully, offering his silent condolences to the grieving young widow. Celine looks at Vern with a mixture of surprise and hidden vulnerability. Vern politely announces his departure, preparing to leave her to her grief. Celine is caught completely off guard, a sudden flush of desperation on her face. Celine frantically calls out his name, quickly correcting herself to his formal title. Vern turns back to ask if she has something to say, leaving her hesitant. Celine hesitantly invites him to stay and share a cup of tea together. The two stand together in the sunny courtyard, wrapped in a tense silence. Vern hesitates, looking deeply conflicted about whether he should accept her invitation. Celine pleads with him desperately, admitting she is having a very difficult time. Sitting in the parlor, Celine tearfully confesses she feels completely lost and hopeless. While offering condolences, Vern firmly reminds her of her responsibility to her house. Celine doubts her own capability to lead the Viscounty on her own. Celine quietly slips up, confessing that nobody actually wanted their marriage anyway. Vern is stunned into silence by her unexpected and revealing confession. Celine instantly regrets her words, quickly covering her mouth in sudden panic. Celine frantically begs him to forget her slip of the tongue, and Vern agrees. Vern politely thanks her for the tea and announces his immediate departure. Celine stands frozen in distress as Vern makes his cold, silent exit. Vern walks away, leaving a dejected Celine alone in the quiet parlor. The scene shifts to a sunny street outside a cozy cafe named Rainbow Espresso. Vern looks up in mild surprise as someone calls out his name. Lucia asks if he is feeling all right, noticing his unusually distant demeanor. Vern apologizes with a sigh, admitting that his mind was simply elsewhere. He remains haunted by Celine's words about her marriage being unwanted. Vern questions the claim, remembering that Celine supposedly married the Viscount for wealth. Disturbed by Celine's words, Vern admits he has been unable to focus on anything since. Clutching his hand tightly, Vern wonders if he is wavering because of Celine's claims. Seeing Lucia's concerned expression, Vern questions whether he deserves to remain by her side. Sitting together at the cafe, Lucia gently asks Vern if something happened with the Viscountess. Lucia smiles softly, admitting she never expected the two of them to remain so silent. Vern apologizes to Lucia, honestly confessing that his heart briefly wavered during their conversation. Surrounded by white flowers, Vern smiles with a sense of clarity and relief. The two sit quietly together at the sunlit cafe, facing each other in silence. Lucia looks at him earnestly, confirming she is completely certain about their mutual path. Clasping his hand tightly, Lucia promises she will not let his heart feel uncertain. Against a beautiful floral background, she suggests they act as protective shields for each other. Vern smiles warmly, deeply comforted by her reassurance and dedication to their future. The grand stone family estate stands serene and beautiful under a bright, sunny sky. Inside the mansion, Herwin's mother stands in a green gown, speaking with a worried maid. The maid expresses concern for the young master, and the mother sighs, deeply worried. Looking at the closed, ornate doors, the mother laments her son's complete isolation. Worried about his lack of appetite, she accepts the maid's offer to consult the butler. The two women walk down the bright, elegant hallway, leaving the locked bedroom behind. Inside the darkened bedchamber, heavy curtains block out most of the bright daytime sun. Lying miserably in bed, a despondent Herwin covers his forehead in deep frustration. A polite knock sounds as the maid outside announces it is time for his meal. Receiving no response, the maid gently announces she will leave his tray at the door. Holding the dinner tray, the maid turns away from the closed white double doors. Herwin remains isolated in his dark, spacious room, staring blankly up at the ceiling. Tossing and turning, Herwin resolves to fix his life but remains haunted by past memories. He recalls the painful sight of Lucia and Vern sharing an intimate moment by a fountain. The painful memory of walking away in the dark night still weighs heavily on him. Herwin remembers his sudden fear of what if it had been Arista standing there instead. He visualizes the blonde-haired Arista kissing another man to test his own emotional response. Clutching his chest, Herwin remembers feeling absolutely nothing, realizing his true feelings have changed. Lying in bed, Herwin realizes his long-held affection for Arista was merely a misunderstanding. Gritting his teeth, Herwin finally acknowledges that the one he truly loves is actually Lucia. He fondly envisions a radiant Lucia smiling brightly while holding a pink lace parasol. Herwin sits up slightly, bitterly noting that his realization comes too late for them. He decides to keep his feelings hidden, wanting to avoid causing her any further distress. Recalling her tearful face when he rejected her before, he feels too ashamed to confess now. Grimacing in pain, Herwin squeezes his eyes shut, overwhelmed by his deep-seated regrets. Parting his bed curtains, Herwin calls out to check if his butler Jerome is outside. A soft creak sounds as a pair of polished black boots steps into the room. Jerome bows respectfully, placing his hand over his chest to greet his troubled master. Herwin turns to Jerome, flatly requesting alcohol to help drown his miserable thoughts. Instead of complying, Jerome steps away with a soft, apologetic decline for his master. With a swift movement, Jerome pulls open the thick drapes to let the light in. Herwin groans in discomfort, shielding his eyes from the sudden flood of bright sunlight. The soft step of elegant slippers reveals another visitor entering the illuminated room. Herwin is utterly stunned to see his mother standing elegantly before him in her green gown. Pulling off his covers, Herwin sits up to ask when she arrived in the capital. Standing tall, his mother explains her visit and gently scolds him for isolating himself. Rubbing his neck, Herwin sighs in embarrassment as his mother reprimands his long seclusion. Gaining his full attention, his mother seriously asks if he has heard any outside news. His mother informs him of Lucia's upcoming engagement, chiding him for failing to congratulate his childhood friend. Herwin urgently asks how much time remains before the ceremony, but his mother suggests asking Lucia directly. Overwhelmed by the sudden news, Herwin collapses onto his bed in heavy silence. Worried by her son's sudden despondency, his mother calls out his name with concern. His mother watches in realization as Herwin tightly clenches his fist in silent distress. His mother asks if he fought with Lucia, which he quickly denies. Still confused, his mother wonders if he fought with someone else or got dumped by Arista. Herwin laughs off the accusation, though his mother insists he still acts like a child. The cozy moment is interrupted as a maid politely calls for Herwin's mother. His mother turns to address the maid, asking her what business she has. His mother expresses mild surprise upon hearing the maid's unexpected update. His mother instructs the maid to escort the unexpected guest to the drawing room. Jerome finds it highly unusual that a guest would arrive without any prior notice. Jerome muses that such a sudden arrival would make sense if it were the young lady. Herwin is struck by sudden hope and anxiety, wondering if Lucia has actually come. Herwin suddenly stands up and asks Jerome how his current appearance looks. Jerome hesitantly suggests that his master should at least wash his face first. Herwin quickly turns around, eager to prepare himself to meet the guest. Jerome is baffled by Herwin's sudden eagerness to greet a visitor after days of isolation. Dressed in a formal red vest, Herwin walks briskly down the grand hallway. Standing outside the drawing room doors, Herwin realizes his body is trembling with nervous anticipation. Although he knows it might not be Lucia, Herwin cannot calm his racing heart. With a deep breath, he reaches out and firmly grabs the ornate brass doorknob. Herwin opens the door, only to freeze in shock as he sees the guest. Sitting elegantly in the sunlit parlor, a smiling Arista warmly greets him. Herwin stands completely motionless, his expression blank with utter disbelief. Arista pleasantly asks him how he has been faring since they last met. She looks up at him with a warm, familiar smile, awaiting his response. Herwin demands to know what brought Arista to his family's estate. Arista explains that she came to visit his mother after a long time apart. Flustered and disappointed that the guest is not Lucia, Herwin struggles to find words. Herwin quickly dismisses his own reaction, turning his head away in deep disappointment. Arista kindly invites him to sit down and share a cup of tea with them. Sensing the air, his mother excuses herself to leave the two young people alone. His mother firmly warns him not to retreat back to his bedroom before leaving. Herwin reluctantly sits down, claiming his recent behavior was just due to having things on his mind. Herwin slumps onto the sofa, realizing he has always acted far too casual around Arista. He realizes his comfortable bond with Arista was never true romantic love compared to his feelings for Lucia. Arista notes his sudden mood shift from gloomy to strangely amused. She asks if he is sick, pointing out his sudden, silly-looking grin. Herwin claims he just remembered something amusing, prompting Arista's curiosity. Herwin bluntly confesses that he used to believe he was in love with her. Arista is utterly dumbfounded by his sudden and unexpected confession. Surprised by her shock, Herwin asks if she truly had no idea, which she vehemently confirms. When Herwin traces his feelings back to the ogre incident, Arista facepalms in pure disbelief. He explains that he mistook their comfortable and easy friendship for a unique romantic bond. Herwin concludes that her marrying someone else wouldn't bother him in the slightest. Arista wonders why he is suddenly sharing such random and unexpected thoughts. Arista suddenly pieces everything together, realizing why he has been so depressed lately. Herwin quietly confirms her suspicion, finally acknowledging the true source of his heartache. Herwin admits with heavy regret that he truly loves Lucia, but realizes his feelings far too late. Arista is utterly stunned when Herwin confesses that he repeatedly rejected Lucia's feelings in the past. Arista feels a wave of shock upon learning Lucia confessed multiple times even after graduating from the academy. Outraged, Arista demands to know if Herwin really turned down every single one of those heartfelt confessions. Suspicion dawns on Arista as she wonders if Herwin used her as an excuse to reject Lucia. When Herwin shamelessly admits to it, Arista yells at him in absolute fury, calling him a lunatic. Arista fixes Herwin with a sharp, tense look, asking if he plans to keep this secret from Lucia. Herwin despondently explains he cannot speak up now, especially with Lucia's upcoming engagement to Marquis Casper. Arista sighs sympathetically, noting that Herwin was completely blind to his own true feelings back then. Arista is silenced as Herwin gives her a sad, bittersweet smile, accepting his own tragic timing. Herwin strictly warns Arista not to breathe a word about his feelings to Lucia. An awkward, heavy silence falls over the sunlit drawing room as they both sit in quiet contemplation. Arista quietly sips her tea, nodding in somber agreement to keep his secret safe. The scene transitions to the grand estate standing serene and beautiful under the starry night sky. Outside, Lucia happily tells Byrne she had a wonderful time, and he warmly expresses his gratitude. Byrne gently encourages a tired Lucia to head inside and get some well-deserved rest. Byrne suddenly leans in and leaves a tender, surprising kiss on her cheek. Smiling warmly, Byrne bids her farewell and promises to see her again very soon. With a fluttering heart, Lucia turns and walks back toward the grand entrance of her mansion. Stepping inside the brightly lit hall, Lucia is warmly welcomed back by her maid Sign. Lucia smiles softly to herself, realizing that opening her heart to Byrne has made everything feel comfortable. Lucia requests her maid Scene to help her prepare stationery to write out some invitations. Sane is momentarily taken aback by the sudden mention of sending out invitations. Lucia explains her desire to notify their close friends first, and Sign bows in polite agreement. Determined to focus on her chosen path, Lucia walks back to her quiet study to begin. Standing in her room, Lucia resolves to stay strong and not let any lingering feelings sway her. A soft scratching sound fills the air as she begins writing the invitations with a quill. Sitting at her desk, Lucia focuses entirely on completing the invitations to prepare for the party. She realizes that inviting Byrne's acquaintances as well will require writing a massive stack of letters. With a satisfied stretch, Lucia is relieved to finally finish writing invitations for Christine and Arista. She looks at the pile of sealed envelopes, noting that Brian and Ethan are up next. Lucia looks up thoughtfully, realizing she must also write one for her childhood friend, Herwin. With diligent focus, she carefully addresses the invitations for Brian and Ethan. Picking up the final envelope, her hand suddenly freezes as she hesitates over the next name. Lucia squeezes her eyes shut, trying to block out the bittersweet memories associated with him. Stealing her resolve, she decides she must write the invitation for her childhood friend, Herwin. Her quill glides across the paper as she carefully finishes addressing the envelope to Herwin. Bright daylight reveals elegant horse-drawn carriages arriving outside the grand party venue. Inside the beautifully decorated banquet hall, a group of friends gathers around a tea table. Wearing a lovely pink gown, Lucia arrives at the table with a bright, welcoming smile. Her friends warmly welcome her, noting how rare it has been to see her face lately. Christine clasps her hands together in excitement, eagerly bringing up the upcoming engagement to Marquis Casper. Brian smiles, casually suggesting that a tight schedule is fine, even if some guests cannot attend. Lucia scans the lively table, placing a hand to her cheek as she wonders why Herwin is absent. Brian mentions Herwin's recent seclusion, while Ethan notes it is the first time Herwin has been unreachable. Lucia's expression fills with concern as she wonders if something unfortunate has happened to her childhood friend. Arista quickly speaks up, reassuring Lucia that Herwin is simply feeling a bit under the weather. Laughing nervously, Arista explains she briefly stopped by the Phineas estate and saw him. When asked if he is all right, Arista sweats nervously, saying he merely has a lot on his mind. Arista waves it off with a forced smile, suggesting his thoughts are just keeping him slightly preoccupied. Lucia quietly wonders if Arista and Herwin have been meeting frequently in secret. Lucia reflects on how her past jealousy has faded, realizing she has finally grown and changed. Byrne politely excuses himself to greet other party guests, and Arista amiably bids him farewell. Arista suddenly stands up and calls out to Lucia, stopping her in her tracks. Lucia turns around curiously when Arista hesitantly asks if they can speak privately for a moment. The two young women step away to find a quiet space to talk in private. Lucia expresses her gentle disappointment that Herwin could not make it to the gathering. Arista quietly acknowledges her words with a look of deep, unresolved concern on her face. Arista hesitantly questions if it is truly wise to rush into the engagement so quickly. Arista gently points out that the decision seems incredibly sudden given how briefly they have known each other. Lucia reassures Arista, explaining that she and Byrne came to this decision after many thorough discussions. Lucia then asks Arista to pass along the date of her upcoming engagement to Herwin. Arista is momentarily taken aback before awkwardly agreeing to deliver the message to him. Arista sighs heavily, deeply troubled because Lucia is completely unaware of Herwin's true romantic feelings. Though Herwin swore her to secrecy, Arista feels increasingly conflicted as Lucia asks what is troubling her. Overwhelmed by her friend's ignorance, Arista clenches her fists in a surge of silent frustration. A sudden flashback reveals Arista questioning if the two are actually in a relationship. In the past, Herwin and his companion had both firmly insisted that they were merely friends. Arista recalls accepting their explanation back then, despite her lingering doubts about their bond. Thinking of the pain Lucia endured, Arista resolves that she cannot let her friend live in ignorance. Stealing her resolve, Arista declares she has something vital to share, sparking Lucia's immediate curiosity. Arista bluntly advises Lucia that she needs to have an honest conversation with Herwin first. Arista stares intensely at her friend, urging her to face the truth before it is too late. Arista explains that her advice stems from a shocking revelation she heard directly from Herwin. She urges Lucia to discover what Herwin is truly holding deep inside his heart. Lucia is left utterly bewildered and deeply unsettled by Arista's sudden, highly emotional outburst. Lucia laughs off the tension, teasingly asking if Arista is implying that Herwin actually harbors feelings for her. Arista's grim silence instantly shatters Lucia's lighthearted mood, replacing it with a sudden chill. Stunned, Lucia begs Arista to stop joking, insisting she knows better than anyone that Herwin does not like her. Arista steps forward, completely serious, refusing to let her friend dismiss the truth any longer. Lucia desperately claims that everything in the past was merely a massive, unfortunate misunderstanding. Arista counters by revealing that Herwin admitted he had mistaken their deep friendship for romantic love. Lucia tries to brush it off, suggesting Herwin likely never thought too deeply about his feelings anyway. Arista gently calls her name, pointing out that Herwin must have communicated his feelings completely wrong. Arista firmly urges Lucia to go meet Herwin and ask him about his feelings directly. Lucia is utterly stunned, questioning if she is seriously expected to go see him right now. Lucia wonders aloud what difference hearing Herwin's true feelings would actually make at this point. Arista points out that remaining ignorant is entirely different from making a fully informed choice. Arista promises not to force her, but reiterates her deep desire for Lucia to hear the truth. Lucia tightly grips the fabric of her pink dress as a wave of distress washes over her. Back in her room, Lucia sits on her bed, deeply contemplating Arista's advice to speak with Herwin. Arista apologizes for prying, but confesses she simply cannot stand to see Lucia living in unresolved heartache. Lucia admits to herself that she genuinely wants to know the truth, but remains deeply hesitant. Lucia worries that seeking out Herwin will only bring disappointment and hurt to her fiancé Bern. Her elegant white heels click softly against the floor as she paces around in deep thought. Torn between her past feelings and her current commitment, Lucia desperately wonders what path she should choose. Looking out into the quiet night, Lucia stands alone, gripped by an agonizing storm of indecision. Meanwhile, the scene transitions back to the outside of another grand estate during the day. A handsome man with green hair and glasses asks his unexpected guest what brings them by so late. The green-haired man is utterly surprised to see Celine standing before him under the night sky. Bern tells Celine that it is too late to talk and suggests discussing whatever she wants tomorrow. A hand suddenly reaches out and grabs Bern's sleeve to stop him from walking away. Celine tightly holds Bern's arm, pleading with him to spare her just a moment to talk right now. Celine looks up at Bern with a bright, hopeful smile amidst glowing blue roses. The two sit opposite each other on red sofas in a quiet, dimly lit drawing room. Celine nervously twiddles her fingers, mentioning she heard his engagement date has been set. Bern looks down silently as Celine softly calls out his name. Bern mentions the sudden passing of Viscount Lemario, but firmly requests that such unannounced visits do not happen again. Celine clutches her skirt in sadness, her expression filled with deep regret. Celine reacts with shock, questioning what he means by his distant attitude. Bern states the engagement date and venue are already set, warning her not to say anything negative about Lady Agnes. Celine hesitatingly asks if his decision remains unchanged even if she confesses her lingering feelings for him. Bern dismisses her confession, but Celine insists she is completely serious. Celine tearfully confesses she never forgot him during her marriage and deeply regrets not running away with him in the past. Bern counters by pointing out that her past rejection was based on his lack of wealth and background. A flashback reveals Celine's father approaching Bern in secret. Bern recalls her father demanding he end their relationship or face dire financial consequences. Celine explains that her marriage was the only way to save her father from massive debts, preventing them both from ruin. Celine weeps, admitting she rushed into marriage to forget her feelings, though it proved impossible. Byrne clenches his fist, expressing bitterness over how coldly she left him only to confess her love now. Byrne stands up abruptly, refusing to acknowledge her sudden confession of love. Walking away, Byrne tells her to calm down and promises to inform the butler of her departure. Celine is left sitting entirely alone in the quiet, empty drawing room. Crying hysterically, Celine covers her face and tearfully apologizes to Byrne. The scene shifts to Lucia, who walks down the street looking completely dazed and distracted. Lucia pauses in confusion as her maid, Seem, walks beside her. Sane laughs cheerfully, telling Lucia to keep moving forward. Lucia smiles awkwardly, trying to brush off her troubled thoughts. Lucia reflects on how Arista's revelation about Herwin's feelings has completely preoccupied her mind. While walking, Lucia is suddenly startled as someone calls out to her. Lucia turns around in surprise to see who is calling her name. A young man with dark hair and red eyes waves at her with a bright, cheerful smile. Lucia recognizes him as Henry, who happily notes how unexpected it is to run into her again. Henry asks what brings her out, and Lucia explains she is enjoying the pleasant weather. Henry asks if she has any plans, and Lucia confirms she is free. Henry smiles warmly, pointing out that it is the perfect time for lunch. Lucia hesitates, awkwardly explaining that she is not particularly hungry. Henry reacts with a comical, pleading puppy dog face, causing Lucia to reluctantly give in. Henry excitedly suggests visiting his favorite regular spot and insists on paying for their meal. Lucia offers to pay instead, but Henry waves it off, eager to treat her. Henry grabs her hand enthusiastically, telling her they should head over quickly. Henry pulls Lucia along as they run down the street together. Sign follows behind them, calling out a cheerful apology as she catches up. 2 delicious steak dishes are served on the beautifully decorated table. Henry wonders if he made Scene uncomfortable, wishing she could have joined them for the meal. Sane is shown cheerfully declining, urging the two of them to enjoy their lunch. Lucia smiles softly, reassuring Henry that Sane was not uncomfortable at all. Henry cuts his food, asking Lucia how she has been, and she replies she is doing well. Henry gazes at Lucia with a warm, gentle smile as they continue eating. Lucia closes her eyes and smiles happily, feeling comforted by his presence. Henry reacts with comical shock and alarm upon hearing Lucia's unexpected news. Lucia gently explains her reasoning, though Henry remains deeply skeptical about her sudden timeline. Over their lunch, Lucia suddenly realizes that Herwin is likely completely unaware of her plans. She melancholically confesses that Herwin failed to attend her recent engagement announcement party. Henry is utterly bewildered by his brother's absence, while Lucia can only wonder about his reasons. Memory resurfaces of Arista urging Lucia to discover Herwin's true feelings before making her final choice. Lucia quietly reflects on the past conversation, hoping Arista will bring her updates soon. Henry grows increasingly irritated by his brother's thoughtless neglect of a childhood friend. Trying to ease the tension, Lucia softly changes the subject as they resume their lunch. Henry quickly apologizes for his blunt outburst, but Lucia warmly reassures him that it is fine. A quiet clattering of utensils fills the silence of the dining room as they eat. After finishing their pleasant meal, the two step outside the restaurant into the afternoon light. Henry asks about her plans, and Lucia reveals she is visiting her family home for a change. Henry kindly offers to deliver her engagement news to his family, which Lucia gratefully accepts. He enthusiastically invites her to join him so she can deliver the news in person. Caught off guard, Lucia hesitates before gently declining his offer to visit together. Putting on a bright smile, Lucia bids Henry farewell as they part ways on the street. The moment she is alone, Lucia's smile fades, replaced by a sudden wave of deep unease. She admits to herself that facing Herwin terrifies her, fearing she might harbor foolish hopes again. Gripped by anxiety, she dreads the pain of having her fragile expectations completely shattered. Stealing her heart, Lucia walks away, resolving to avoid meeting Herwin for a while. The scene shifts to the grand estate of Henry and Herwin's family under the evening sky. Henry steps inside his family's luxurious home, calling out a cheerful greeting. His mother looks down from the grand staircase, thoroughly surprised by his unannounced arrival. Henry approaches his mother warmly, explaining that he simply wanted to visit her. With a bright grin, Henry happily shares that he spent his afternoon dining with Lucia. His mother is intrigued by the mention of Lucia, and Henry clarifies their encounter was accidental. Henry eagerly asks for his older brother's whereabouts, and his mother points him toward his room. She sighs deeply, expressing concern over Herwin's recent isolation and obsessive training. Henry explains that he must urgently deliver the news regarding Lucia's finalized engagement date. They both share a look of deep concern as they realize Herwin is likely completely in the dark. Henry turns to head upstairs, determined to break the news to his brother immediately. His leather shoes click firmly against the stone steps as he makes his way up. A crisp, rhythmic knock sounds as Henry calls out to see if his brother is inside. Met only with a heavy, unsettling silence from within, Henry tilts his head in confusion. A soft creak echoes as Henry grasps the handle and slowly pushes the door open. Henry steps into the dimly lit bedroom, finding Herwin sitting silently on the edge of the bed. Herwin looks up with a gloomy, exhausted expression, quietly calling out his brother's name. Henry walks closer, asking why his brother has been isolating himself in the dark lately. Herwin defensively questions the sudden visit, and Henry answers that he has vital news to share. Henry bluntly informs him that Lucia's engagement ceremony is set for less than a month away. He urges Herwin to put aside his brooding and at least show his face at the event. Henry questions if Herwin realizes how incredibly cruel his constant rejection has been to Lucia. Herwin clutches his face in distress as Henry points out how harsh his behavior truly was. Herwin defensively demands to know who gossiped about his actions, and Henry reveals his source. Henry firmly commands him to attend the ceremony and leave his room for once. In a playful teasing shift, Henry suggests inviting Arista over, triggering Herwin's instant comical fury. Herwin declares with absolute cold certainty that he harbors no feelings for Arista whatsoever. Herwin curtly orders his brother to leave, and Henry waves a casual goodbye as he departs. Walking away down the hall, Henry mutters in frustration about his brother's stubborn and sour attitude. Herwin despondently realizes that confessing his feelings to Lucia now would only make her think he has lost his mind. Running a hand through his hair, Herwin sighs as he acknowledges that Lucia's engagement date is already set. Sitting alone on his bed, Herwin realizes that doing nothing now will truly mean losing her forever. The scene transitions to the grand, blue-roofed estate of the Agnes family under a bright sky. A horse-drawn carriage rolls smoothly along the stone path toward the main gate of the estate. Sitting quietly inside the carriage, Herwin clenches his hands together with a tense and determined expression. As they approach the gate, a guard holding a spear politely asks how he can assist them. Herwin states that he has come to see Lucia, prompting the guard to ask if he has an appointment. Herwin silently looks ahead, his sharp red eyes conveying a mix of urgency and deep conflict. The guard grows visibly nervous as he recognizes that they are members of the prominent Peneus family. Requesting them to wait a moment, the guard turns back toward the manor. Jerome remarks that it is strange, noting they are usually let in immediately upon mentioning the Peneus name. Jerome wonders if something has happened, but Herwin quietly replies that he does not know. A young master steps outside the manor doors, walking down the stone path toward the gates. The brown-haired young master stands tall, exuding an air of calm authority as he approaches the visitors. Standing behind the iron gates, the young master of Agnes directly asks if they have come to see Lucia. While Jerome bows politely and greets the young master, Herwin directly asks if Lucia is currently at home. The young master explains that Lucia went out and suggests they leave since she will return quite late. Looking down with a disappointed expression, Herwin apologizes for his unannounced and potentially rude visit. As Herwin turns to walk away, the young master of Agnes watches his retreating figure through the gate. A stark warning echoes, advising Herwin to stop looking for Lucia if he only intends to break her heart. Taken aback by the sudden harsh words, Herwin turns around with a look of utter shock. The young master reveals he knows of Lucia's long-term feelings, having assumed Herwin stayed away for her sake. Confronted with the direct question of what he is thinking, Herwin stands frozen and completely speechless. The young master apologizes for losing his temper while Herwin quietly requests him to congratulate Lucia on her engagement. With a solemn and cold gaze, the brown-haired young master simply nods and accepts the message. Jerome calls out to him with deep concern, but Herwin weakly reassures him that he is fine. As Herwin and Jerome walk back to their carriage, the young master of Agnes turns back toward his estate. Reaching the carriage, Herwin stands silently on the gravel path as Jerome waits nearby. Jerome gently mentions that Lady Agnes did indeed say she would be returning home late. Herwin contemplates if he should greet the Count since they are here, but hesitates over the idea. As Herwin decides that leaving immediately would be too awkward, an elegant white carriage suddenly pulls up. The ornate wheel of the white carriage grinds to a halt against the gravel driveway. With a soft creak, the door of the white carriage begins to slowly swing open. Bowing respectfully, a voice cheerfully calls out to wish Herwin a very good day. Lucia steps out of the carriage in her beautiful yellow dress, freezing in shock as she spots Herwin. Jerome looks on in utter surprise as he realizes who has just arrived. Lucia gazes ahead with wide, sparkling blue eyes, her long wavy brown hair framing her delicate face. Jerome stands utterly baffled, recalling that they were told she would be coming home late. Tilting her head in confusion, Lucia explains that she only went out briefly before coming right back. Jerome asks what could have happened, while Herwin realizes that the young master lied because he is unwelcome. Lucia stands before Herwin, clutching her hands to her chest in a mix of nervousness and anticipation. Lucia confronts him directly, asking why he failed to attend even after she personally sent him an invitation. Herwin stares back at her silently, wondering if she has something specific to tell him. Herwin requests Jerome to give them some privacy, prompting Jerome to politely excuse himself to the carriage. As Jerome walks away, Lucia and Herwin are left standing completely alone under the open sky. Clutching her chest, Lucia looks up at him with a hopeful smile, wondering what he will say. Herwin remains silent, causing Lucia's hopeful expression to falter into a soft realization. Forcing a bright laugh, Lucia quickly dismisses her foolish hopes, realizing that could not be the case. Clutching her chest in silent sorrow, Lucia concludes that Arista must have completely misunderstood Herwin's feelings. Smiling brightly, Lucia expresses her sincere hope that Herwin will attend her upcoming engagement ceremony. Herwin asks Lucia directly if her fiancé, Marquis Casper, is a good person. Standing outside her carriage, Lucia firmly confirms her fiancé is good, stating she wouldn't marry him otherwise. Herwin quietly wishes Lucia happiness in her marriage, and she offers her polite thanks in return. Lucia bids Herwin a safe journey home as she prepares to head inside the manor. As she walks away, Herwin suddenly halts, his expression filled with intense conflict. A sudden gust of wind echoes as Lucia turns around to face him in complete confusion. Caught entirely off guard, Lucia asks Herwin what he is suddenly trying to say. Lucia asks if he has been feeling ill, but Herwin quickly denies being sick. With a shadowed, solemn face, Herwin quietly calls out Lucia's name. Herwin stares at her with deep vulnerability, his red eyes sparkling with unsaid words. Clutching his face in emotional turmoil, Herwin confesses that he genuinely likes her. Lucia stands frozen in stunned silence, completely speechless at his sudden confession. Herwin anxiously calls out her name, desperately wanting to prove his sincerity. With a pained look, Lucia skeptically asks if his confession is just another mistake. Lucia reveals she heard from Arista that his feelings for her were merely a misunderstanding. As Herwin tries to explain, Lucia asks if he is making another mistake now. Lucia sorrowfully recalls how he spent years repeatedly rejecting her feelings. Smiling sadly, Lucia remarks on how jarring it is for him to suddenly confess. Herwin desperately pleads his sincerity, but Lucia firmly cuts off his frantic explanation. Lucia points out that he spent 13 long years insisting he had no feelings for her. With a shadowed face, Herwin deeply apologizes, admitting he was incredibly foolish. Herwin explains he saw her as a friend, but Lucia coldly orders him to stop. Standing with her back turned, Lucia quietly speaks of the reality of her own feelings. Herwin looks devastated as Lucia declares she refuses to be hurt anymore, asking for his understanding. Herwin stands completely frozen and silent as Lucia prepares to walk away from him. Lucia coldly ends the conversation, stating she is heading inside the estate immediately. A soft creak sounds as she pushes past the grand iron gates of her home. Rhythmic, heavy footsteps echo as a defeated Herwin slowly walks back toward his carriage. Inside the manor, the steady clicking of Lucia's heels echoes down the grand hallway. Her brother expresses surprise at her incredibly quick return as she walks past him. Sensing her deep distress, her brother asks if something happened while she was outside. He scratches his head in confusion as Lucia ignores him and walks away. Lucia stands silently in front of her bedroom door, her shoulders slumped in exhaustion. Once safely alone, Lucia's composure completely shatters as tears stream down her face. A quiet sob escapes her lips as she resolves to never let Herwin sway her heart again. Slapping her cheeks, Lucia commands herself to snap out of it with her engagement ceremony approaching. Sniffling softly, Lucia wipes away her tears, desperately trying to regain her composure. The scene shifts to the next day at the ground estate under a bright sky. Jerome knocks firmly on Herwin's door, announcing it is time for his daily sword practice. A crisp knock sounds as Jerome waits for a response from within the silent room. Jerome finds it incredibly strange, noting that the young master never misses his practice. Asking if he can enter, Jerome slowly pushes the heavy bedroom door open. Jerome gasps in utter shock as his eyes widen at the scene before him. Spotting him running frantically, the mother calls out Jerome's name in deep confusion. Jerome frantically warns that something is terribly wrong, sending the mother into an instant panic. Jerome exclaims that Herwin is terribly sick as the young master lies flushed and sweating. The scene transitions to the grand estate of the Peneus family under the night sky. A soft thud sounds as the heavy wooden door of Herwin's bedroom is closed. The mother anxiously asks about Herwin's condition, and Jerome reassures her that he just fell asleep. Deeply distressed, the red-eyed mother worries because Herwin has never been sick since childhood. Jerome tries to ease her worries, reassuring her that Herwin took his medicine. Jerome is visibly startled when the mother asks if something happened to Herwin. The mother explains Herwin only falls ill when heartbroken, asking if something transpired. Jerome remains completely speechless, sweat dripping down his face and his rising pack. Jerome internally reflects on how the young master recently realized his feelings for Lucia. Jerome reflects on Lucia losing interest just as the mother calls his name. Bowing deeply, Jerome apologizes and states he cannot be the one to explain. Sweating with worry, the mother accepts his reluctance and gently dismisses Jerome. Rhythmic footsteps echo as a conflicted Jerome departs down the grand hallway. Standing alone, the mother anxiously ponders what occurred during Herwin's visit to the Agnes estate. Wishing to see her longtime friend, the mother resolves to visit the Agnes mansion. Bright morning light streams through the window as a feverish Herwin groans in bed. A weary Herwin slowly sits up, brushing a hand against his aching forehead. Herwin stares down at his trembling hand, wondering if he simply caught a cold. Murmuring to himself, the sweating young master struggles to comprehend his sudden illness. Wincing in discomfort, Herwin quickly realizes his condition is far worse than a simple cold. Gripping his chest tightly, Herwin feels a sharp pain as if pierced by a thorn. A heavy realization hits Herwin that Lucia endured this painful heartbreak repeatedly for years. Clutching his chest, Herwin doubts he has ever suffered a more agonizing feeling. A soft creak sounds as his bedroom door begins to open from the outside. Jerome walks into the bedroom carrying a serving tray with an expression of concern. Jerome kindly asks if he is hungry, but Herwin listlessly declines the offer. Jerome gently insists that he must eat, but Herwin only replies with silence. When Jerome inquires if he feels any better, Herwin directly responds in the negative. Herwin casts his gaze downward, a melancholic and defeated smile touching his lips. Bowing respectfully, Jerome accepts his young master's quiet refusal and prepares to leave. A soft click echoes through the quiet room as the bedroom door closes shut. Herwin buries his head under the covers, trying to escape his emotional and physical pain. Annoyed by a sudden sound, Herwin calls out that he does not want food. Parting the curtains, Herwin's mother steps into the room, catching him completely off guard. Looking up in utter shock, Herwin asks what his mother is doing there. Walking closer, the mother gently notes that it has been years since he was last sick. Sitting on the bed, the mother directly asks him what happened at the Agnes mansion. Herwin averts his gaze, sweating with intense anxiety as he struggles to respond. Herwin retreats into a heavy silence, unable to face his mother's questioning gaze. Sensing his hesitation, the mother gently presses him to find out what is wrong. With pained honesty, Herwin confesses that he left a permanent emotional scar on Lucia. The mother looks back with sorrow, expressing deep regret and sympathy for the situation. Placing a comforting hand on his shoulder, the mother gently pats him to offer solace. The mother sighs softly, acknowledging that the situation must be deeply serious. She teasingly adds that it can be fixed unless he has committed an actual crime. She advises him to eat first when he feels better, explaining food helps overcome illness. Herwin weakly smiles back, agreeing to follow his mother's warm advice. Rhythmic clicking sounds as the mother gracefully walks away, leaving Herwin to rest. Jerome runs down the grand hallway, calling out to the mother to catch her attention. Jerome reports she is welcome to visit any time, prompting a pleased thank you from her. The mother asks to prepare the carriage immediately, leaving Jerome quite surprised by her urgency. Giggling softly, the mother happily anticipates her upcoming visit to her old friend. A grand white mansion with blue-tiled roofs stands majestic under the bright, clear sky. Herwin's mother warmly greets her longtime friend, asking how she has been faring recently. Lucia's mother explains her busy schedule, detailing the immense importance of her daughter's upcoming engagement ceremony. Lucas suddenly enters the room, drawing an excited greeting from his mother. Lucas politely welcomes Herwin's mother, thanking her sincerely for making the trip to visit them. Herwin's mother casually mentions Herwin's recent visit, catching Lucia's mother completely by surprise. Lucia's mother expresses deep confusion over Herwin's unannounced visit, leaving an anxious Lucas sweating under her questioning gaze. Sensing the rising tension, a nervous Lucas internally panics as he struggles to maintain his composure. Herwin's mother repeats her inquiry about Herwin's visit, prompting another look of complete bewilderment. Lucia's mother reiterates her surprise, demanding to know why she was kept in the dark about Herwin's arrival. Sweat dripping, Lucas desperately wonders how to handle this highly delicate situation without exposing his sister's distress. Lucas quickly speaks up, explaining that he was the only one home to greet Herwin when he arrived. When pressed on why he hid the visit, Lucas nervously stammers that Herwin departed so quickly that he simply forgot. Herwin's mother thoughtfully deduces that Herwin must have quickly left because he crossed paths with Lucia. Lucas reacts in utter shock at the sudden revelation that Herwin actually met with his sister. Herwin's mother confirms her suspicion while Lucas nervously tries to process the implications of their meeting. Herwin's mother sadly remarks that Herwin seemed to harbor a deep, painful regret regarding his actions toward Lucia. Lucas flinches in surprise as the emotional weight of Herwin's feelings is laid bare before him. Herwin's mother reveals that her usually resilient son has become completely bedridden from his severe emotional distress. Sensing a deeper conversation is needed, Lucia's mother gently requests that Lucas excuse himself from the room. Lucas politely bows and retreats, relieved to escape his mother's intense questioning. A soft click echoes through the quiet room as the heavy wooden door gently swings shut. Herwin's mother asks if she knows the truth, prompting a quiet admission that she only knows part of the story. Lucia's mother thoughtfully admits she can understand the painful reasons driving Herwin's sudden emotional behavior. Lucia's mother reveals Lucia's long-held feelings, sending Herwin's mother into a state of absolute wide-eyed shock. Believing it was just childhood puppy love, Herwin's mother is stunned to learn Lucia's feelings persisted until very recently. Lucia's mother worries that her daughter's heart might still waver because of Herwin's sudden confession. Lucia's mother smiles wistfully, wishing only for her daughter's peace and happiness after years of silent heartbreak. Herwin's mother nods in quiet understanding, deeply sympathizing with the mother's protective worries for her daughter. Herwin's mother slowly walks down the long corridor, her mind heavy with thoughts of her son's heartbreak. Herwin's mother suddenly halts her steps, turning around as a familiar voice calls out to her. Lucia stands before her with a bright, lovely smile, radiating warmth in her elegant blue gown. Herwin's mother praises Lucia's maturity, while Lucia politely admits she was completely surprised by her unexpected visit. Placing a loving hand on Lucia's head, Herwin's mother affectionately asks if she has been doing well. Gently squeezing Lucia's blushing cheeks, Herwin's mother playfully wishes that Lucia could be her own daughter instead. Hugging her close, Herwin's mother's heart aches with deep guilt over the immense suffering Lucia endured because of her son. Herwin's mother suddenly pulls Lucia into a tight emotional embrace, catching the young woman completely off guard. Releasing her from the hug, Herwin's mother quickly apologizes, explaining she was simply overjoyed to see her. Lucia gently questions her early departure, wondering why she cannot stay to share a warm dinner with them. With a sorrowful expression, Herwin's mother softly confesses that Herwin is currently dealing with a sudden illness. Lucia reacts with immediate worry and confusion, repeating that Herwin has fallen ill once again. Lucia recalls that Herwin also missed their last gathering due to illness, quietly absorbing the concerning news. Herwin's mother sighs, explaining that his high fever has left him completely bedridden and incredibly weak. Lucia turns away in deep concern, silently wondering if Herwin's physical health has truly become so fragile lately. Shifting the topic, Herwin's mother warmly congratulates Lucia on her engagement, drawing a polite thank you in response. Lucia softly asks to pass along her warm regards to Herwin, which his mother immediately promises to do. Herwin's mother gently suggests that Lucia should consider dropping by the Pennius estate for a visit sometime soon. She encourages Lucia to visit Herwin during his recovery or simply join them for a pleasant, quiet meal. Lucia promises to try and find some time, while her mother warmly insists she shouldn't feel any pressure. Waving a warm farewell, Herwin's mother bids Lucia goodbye and promises to see her again soon. Walking away, Herwin's mother sighs as she realizes her matchmaking attempt would likely draw her husband's immense frustration. Walking away, Herwin's mother quietly admits her heart still leans toward matchmaking them. A few days later, a grand white carriage arrives outside the majestic estate gates. Standing outside, the brown-haired young lady nervously admits she decided to visit him after all. As the guards bow, she privately worries that others might misunderstand her unexpected arrival. Looking at the massive entrance gates, she remains deeply concerned about Herwin's sudden illness. A soft clicking sound echoes as she takes a hesitant step onto the stone path. A cheerful black-haired young man with crimson eyes warmly greets her upon her arrival. Surprised, she asks Henry why he has not yet returned to his academy studies. Henry excitedly expresses his happiness at seeing her, while she responds with affectionate amusement. Henry casually inquires about the unexpected reason behind her sudden visit to the mansion. She softly explains that she came to visit Herwin after hearing he was severely ill. Henry politely offers to escort her up to the sick young master's bedroom. Giggling warmly, she praises Henry for growing up well and thanks him for the escort. Henry complains about being treated like a child, but she fondly recalls their first meeting. Henry gently notes that the feverish young master is likely sleeping at the moment. Rhythmic footsteps echo as they both walk up the grand sunlit spiral staircase. Pointing out the bedroom down the hall, Henry receives her warm thanks for his guidance. Just as she turns to enter, Henry suddenly calls out her name to halt her. Henry pauses in heavy silence, looking deeply conflicted with unspoken thoughts weighing on him. Brushing it off, Henry softly reassures her that his sudden hesitation was nothing important. Feeling curious, she playfully teases him for being so dull and keeping secrets. Henry looks back at her with a remarkably serious, silent, and contemplative expression. Turning away, Henry quietly departs down the corridor, leaving her to face the door. A soft creak sounds as the heavy bedroom door gently swings open before her. Peering nervously into the quiet bedroom, she softly calls out Herwin's name. Herwin lies bedridden, looking pale and feverish with a damp cloth on his forehead. Approaching his bedside, she sadly remarks on how much physical pain he must be enduring. Placing her hand over his forehead, she gently checks if his fever is still high. Gasping in shock, she reacts to the intense radiating heat coming from his feverish body. She is astonished to find that the damp cloth has already become completely hot. Panicking over his severe fever, she hurriedly looks around the bedroom for fresh water. She spots a water basin and a folded white handkerchief resting on the table. Picking it up, she realizes it is the custom handkerchief she once gave him. Staring at the familiar gift, she blushes deeply, touched that he still keeps it. Tears suddenly well up in her eyes as complex, long-held emotions wash over her. Sniffling quietly, she prepares a fresh cold cloth for his forehead at the basin. She scolds herself to stop harboring silly, hopeful thoughts about his true feelings. Walking back, she reasons he is likely using her gift out of simple politeness. A soft splashing sound echoes as she tightly wrings out the fresh wet cloth. Gently tapping his forehead, she carefully replaces the warm cloth with the cool one. Watching him rest peacefully under the fresh cloth, a tender smile touches her lips. Believing it is best to leave quickly, she decides to slip out of the room. As she walks away, a pained groan from the bed suddenly holds her steps. Startled by the sound, she quickly spins back toward the bed in deep concern. Slowly opening his eyes, the feverish Herwin calls out her name in disbelief. Blushing, she awkwardly advises him to rest and tells him she will leave now. With a sudden movement, Herwin desperately grabs her wrist and begs her not to leave. Pulling her close, the weak young master desperately begs her to stay beside her. Holding her hand tightly, Herwin gently kisses her knuckles with deep, emotional longing. Shocked by his desperate affection, she stands completely frozen with her face blushing crimson. Blushing deeply, the flustered Lucia awkwardly announces her departure as she quickly turns to leave the room. A sharp clicking of heels echoes as she hurriedly retreats down the stone hallway. The heavy wooden door clicks shut, leaving the bedridden Herwin alone in his quiet room. Leaning back against the closed double doors, Lucia clutches her chest as her heart beats rapidly. She desperately tries to convince herself that his warm affection was merely a delusion caused by his fever. Despite her rationalizations, her face remains flushed as her heart continues to beat in heavy agitation. A moment later, the sick young master groans softly as his eyes begin to flutter open. A soft splash sounds as a pair of hands tightly wring out a cool wetla. Still heavily dazed, Herwin weakly looks up and calls out Lucia's name in confusion. Standing beside him, the dark-haired servant Jerome turns in surprise, asking if his master had called him. Realizing his mistake, Herwin smiles weakly and dismisses the thought as nothing more than a passing dream. Looking around the bedroom, Herwin asks Jerome if Lucia had actually come by the estate to see him. He quietly admits to himself that while it must have been a dream, it felt incredibly vivid. Jerome brightly confirms that Lady Lucia did indeed visit the estate just a short while ago. Absolutely stunned by the unexpected news, Herwin stands frozen as he weakly tries to process her arrival. A quiet clicking sound echoes as the door shuts completely, sealing the room in silence. Herwin murmurs in sudden realization, realizing that Lucia's comforting presence beside him was not a dream after all. His eyes widen in complete shock as he remembers the bold details of their physical encounter. He vividly recalls desperately grabbing her wrist and pleading with her not to leave his side. He remembers pulling her close and holding her hand tightly to his face during his feverish state. Sitting up abruptly in his bed, Herwin reacts with immense shock as the memories rush back. His face flushes bright red as he covers his mouth, completely overwhelmed by intense embarrassment. Meanwhile, Lucas slumps back in his armchair at his estate, letting out a long, heavy sigh. Behind him, his blonde employer Eris mutters in irritation, questioning why he continues to employ Lucas. Lucas yells back in sheer frustration, demanding to know why Ares is also giving him a hard time. Entering the study, the blonde-haired Arista playfully remarks that she could hear Lucas's heavy sighs from outside. Ares looks up in surprise at Arista's sudden arrival, reminding her he called her to help work tomorrow. Arista glances over at Ares, who quietly looks down in silence at his desk. Stepping close, Arista whispers to her brother, asking if this is his first time acting so strange. She brightly suggests that her brother should step out for a moment to let her handle him. Agreeing to her suggestion, Ares stands up and remarks that leaving is probably better for his peace of mind. Before departing, Ares casts a final, deeply suspicious look at his troubled employee. A sharp click sounds as the study doors firmly close behind Ares. Walking up to Lucas, Arista gently questions if he has been deeply worried about something lately. Lucas nervously tries to dismiss her concerns, but she insists his constant sighing proves something is wrong. Lucas looks away in heavy silence, keeping his troubling thoughts strictly to himself. Lucas cautiously poses a hypothetical question, asking how she would feel if another family turned her away at the door. Arista immediately responds with anger, stating she would be absolutely furious at such rude treatment. She points out that leaving a guest outside without a proper explanation is incredibly impolite. Lucas smiles sweatily, quietly agreeing with her assessment while feeling immense guilt. Sensing his hidden guilt, Arista suspects he is hiding a real event and demands to know the truth. Lucas breaks into a cold sweat, struggling to maintain his composure under her sharp questioning. Arista gasps in sudden shock, asking if he actually turned Herwin away from their gates. A soothing splash sounds as warm tea is carefully poured into a delicate cup. Holding her teacup, Arista demands confirmation on whether he actually drove Herwin away. Lucas nods guiltily, admitting he behaved that way because he was incredibly angry at the time. Arista is left completely speechless, staring at him with a sweat drop of absolute disbelief. The room falls quiet as they sit together, the gravity of his confession settling between them. Arista admits she understands the situation, prompting Lucas to ask if she knows the truth about Lucia and Herwin. Lucas directly questions her, asking if Herwin was the real reason behind his sister's sudden engagement. Arista gasps in sudden surprise, realizing she had only a vague suspicion about the truth. Lucas explains how Lucia constantly rejected arranged dates for Herwin, only to eventually grow exhausted from his repeated rejections. Arista softly admits that she can understand her brother's protective and frustrated perspective. While Arista lectures him that slamming the door was too harsh, a sheepish Lucas quietly agrees. Lucas grumbles that he hesitated to tell her because he fully expected this critical reaction. Lucas admits he originally did not want to interfere, but detests how Herwin keeps confusing Lucia's feelings. Arista shakes her head in disagreement, reminding her brother that Herwin is not that malicious. When Lucas questions what Herwin's true issue is, Arista admits she is also uncertain. A vivid memory reveals Herwin's confession that his rejections stem from a deep misunderstanding of his own heart. Lucas asks in disbelief if Herwin actually mistook his romantic feelings for someone else all this time. Arista sweats nervously, hesitating to give a definitive answer regarding Herwin's emotional confusion. Arista defends Herwin, noting that he seemed genuinely remorseful for his past actions when they spoke. She recalls Herwin expressing deep regret over repeatedly breaking Lucia's heart. Arista is suddenly left speechless as she reflects deeply on the complexity of the situation. Lucas clenches his fist in heavy silence, digesting the weight of Herwin's true intentions. Lucas quietly admits that while he still cannot comprehend Herwin, he wishes them well if his feelings are sincere. Arista softly agrees, relieved to see her brother's anger finally beginning to subside. Lucas thanks his sister for helping him clear his mind and promises to send her a gift. Arista, trailing off, suggests she wants something else entirely, catching her brother off guard. Smiling brightly, Arista requests that her brother set aside some time for her instead. Taken aback by her request, Lucas readily agrees to make time for his sister. When Lucas asks what she has planned, Arista blushes and suggests they simply share a quiet meal. Meanwhile, a luxurious carriage arrives at a grand manor as a new situation unfolds elsewhere. Inside his study, the green-haired Marquis intently reads a stack of official documents. Hearing a knock at his study door, the green-haired man calmly calls out for them down. A servant enters the room to inform the Marquis that a guest has arrived. The Marquis plans to finish his work quickly, but the servant reveals the visitor as Viscountess Lamario. The servant explains that the persistent female visitor is firmly insisting on waiting for him. Letting out a frustrated sigh, the Marquis reacts with clear irritation at her persistent return. The Marquis questions if she is still waiting outside, and the servant confirms she is. The irritated Marquis threatens to file a formal complaint if she continues to linger outside. The servant bows respectfully and accepts his master's harsh instructions before departing. A soft click echoes through the quiet room as the heavy wooden door firmly closes. Left alone, the Marquis closes his eyes as a wave of exhaustion washes over him. He sighs heavily in distress, deeply troubled by her persistent and confusing behavior. Resting his forehead in his hand, the stressed Marquis struggles to focus on his work. Outside in the courtyard, the servant politely informs the orange-haired Viscountess that the Marquis cannot see her. The orange-haired woman stands frozen, her face flushed with deep embarrassment and sorrow. A heavy, awkward silence falls between them as she processes the blunt rejection. The servant adds that the Marquis finds her persistent presence to be quite troublesome. Clutching her chest, she quietly accepts his cold rejection, referring to him as Byrne. Turning away quickly, she prepares to depart the estate to hide her tears. She politely requests the servant to ask the Marquis for forgiveness regarding her persistent intrusion. The servant bows respectfully as the heartbroken Viscountess steps back into her carriage. The carriage rattles away down the stone path, leaving the silent estate behind. Sitting alone inside the carriage, she bitterly rationalizes that his cold rejection is only natural. Tears stream down her cheeks as she realizes how deeply she must have hurt him in the past. She vividly remembers Byrne's harsh, pouting words telling her she was useless and should forget him. The memory of her walking away in deep despair flashes through her troubled mind. She relives the intense grief of that painful day, deeply regretting the distance between them now. Filled with regret, the crying orange-haired woman wishes she had run away with Byrne back then. Sobbing softly, she presses a green handkerchief to her face as her tears flow freely. Resolving never to let Byrne go again, she reflects on how empty her world is without him. A violent jolt suddenly rattles the carriage, catching the orange-haired woman completely off guard. Frantically pulling the reins, the panicked coachman shouts in terror as the carriage spins out of control. A terrifying snap echoes as a carriage wheel breaks off, sending the vehicle crashing violently. The overturned carriage rests in ruins, leaving the coachman lying unconscious on the dirt road. A bedside lamp casts a warm, soft glow across the quiet bedroom. The orange-haired woman tosses and turns in bed, slowly recovering from the carriage accident. Slowly opening her eyes, she weakly tries to process her unfamiliar surroundings. Her vision remains blurry as she vaguely recognizes a man wearing glasses standing nearby. She gasps in surprise as she recognizes the green-haired Byrne looking down at her. Weakly looking up, she asks Byrne if she is dreaming or if he is truly beside her. Shaking his head gently, Byrne reassures her that she is awake and not dreaming. Byrne explains he brought her to his estate for urgent treatment after finding her crashed carriage. Byrne angrily scolds her for riding in a damaged carriage and risking her life. She grows emotional, recognizing his worried expression from their cherished past together. Byrne coldly states she must leave once she recovers, prompting a disappointed sigh from her. With a heavy heart, the orange-haired woman quietly nods and accepts his decision. He silently walks away, leaving her alone with her thoughts in the spacious bedroom. Hesitating for a brief moment, she calls out his name to stop him from leaving. Turning back toward her, Byrne politely asks if she requires anything else. Blushing deeply, she softly admits that she simply wanted him to stay a little longer. Realizing her selfishness, she quickly dismisses her plea and tells him it was nothing. Byrne turns away to leave, simply stating that he will go now. A quiet click sounds as the heavy wooden door firmly shuts behind him. Left completely alone, she wonders if she is merely imagining his lingering feelings. Hugging her knees tightly, she admits she still believes Byrne holds affection for her. She curls up beneath the blanket, sobbing quietly as her grief overwhelms her. Soft sobs and hiccups echo through the quiet bedroom behind the closed door. A new day dawns, shifting the scene to a grand estate under a bright sky. The brown-haired Lucia praises Byrne for perfectly organizing the guest list for their upcoming engagement. While holding his teacup, Byrne stares off blankly, clearly distracted by his troubled thoughts. Snapping out of his daze, Byrne reacts with surprise as Lucia calls his name. Apologizing for his distraction, Byrne claims he was merely lost in thought for a moment. Byrne hesitantly asks if they should push back their engagement date slightly. Seeing her surprise, Byrne immediately backtracks and asks her to forget his suggestion. Lucia gently notes that delaying the date is possible if he has a valid reason. Byrne calls her name in concern, prompting a flustered Lucia to apologize for her reaction. Turning her head away quickly, Lucia asks him to ignore her comment as well. An awkward, heavy silence falls between them as they sit together in the parlor. Lucia suggests ending their meeting for the day, and a sweating Byrne readily agrees. Trying to ease the tension, Lucia brightly asks if he will join the summer hunting tournament. Byrne confirms his plans to attend, but warns her not to expect much from him. He sheepishly explains he is not athletic, but Lucia kindly reassures him it is fine. Byrne smiles warmly, admitting he simply does not wish to embarrass his fiancée in public. Lucia laughs softly, promising to prepare an embroidered handkerchief for him despite her lack of skill. When Lucia asks what design he would prefer, Byrne replies that anything is fine. Lucia thoughtfully suggests forget-me-nots, noting the flower is highly appropriate for the summer season. Byrne freezes in sudden shock, deeply unsettled by her choice of forget-me-nots. A warm memory shows the orange-haired Celine calling out Byrne's name in a quiet library. Byrne looks up from his book and gently acknowledges her call. With a cheerful exclamation, Celine proudly presents a white cloth embroidered with blue flowers. Byrne asks if she made it herself, and Celine beams with pride as she confirms she did. Celine sits close to Byrne, explaining that she lovingly embroidered the handkerchief just for him. Smiling warmly, Byrne takes the precious gift and sincerely thanks Celine. Looking at the small blue flowers, Byrne curiously inquires about their name. He gently holds the delicate handkerchief, admiring the blue blossoms embroidered on the white fabric. Celine brightly explains that the flower is a forget-me-not, which symbolizes true love. When Byrne repeats the romantic meaning, Celine nods and hints at another deeper meaning. Back in the present, the green-haired Byrne struggles to recall that second meaning until Lucia calls him. Snapping out of his deep trance, Byrne turns his attention back to his fiancée, Lucia. Looking at him with concern, Lucia curiously asks what has him thinking so deeply. Byrne silently reflects on his inability to remember the full meaning behind the forget-me-nots. While gazing downward, Byrne struggles to piece together the lost memories of Celine's words. The long-forgotten words, pleading not to be forgotten, echo softly in the quiet air. Lucia smiles warmly, revealing that the primary meaning of the flower is "don't forget me." Byrne freezes in sudden realization as his lost memories of Celine's confession instantly flood back. Hiding his inner turmoil behind a strained smile, Byrne quietly accepts her explanation with a soft laugh. Looking away in deep remorse, Byrne remembers that those were Celine's exact parting words. He vividly recalls Celine tearfully asking him to think of her whenever he looked at the handkerchief. Back in the parlor, Lucia notes that Byrne must have a deep affection for the flower. Looking directly at her, Byrne gently denies her assumption about his personal preferences. He explains that his attachment is actually to the special person who originally gifted it to him. Lucia repeats her observation about his knowledge of flowers, but Byrne remains quiet and reserved. Tilting her head in slight confusion, Lucia questions his vague response before quickly dismissing the matter. Byrne places his hand over his chest, softly acknowledging her words with a solemn look. Lucia secretly wonders if her mind is playing tricks on her, noticing Byrne's lingering sadness. The scene shifts to the sunny courtyard of the Grand Manor as their afternoon together concludes. Walking down the steps together, Lucia and Byrne politely express how much they enjoyed each other's company.
Gently holding her hand, Byrne wishes her a safe journey home as she promises to see him again soon.
A sudden sharp clack sounds as the heavy wooden carriage door is firmly shut. Standing on the paved path, Byrne raises his hand and waves a polite farewell. The elegant carriage rolls away down the driveway, leaving the green-haired Marquis standing alone. Left in isolation, Byrne bows his head in heavy guilt and quietly apologizes to Lucia. The carriage speeds along a scenic road surrounded by lush green trees and bright sunlight. Inside the carriage, the gray-brown-haired maid gushes excitedly over Byrne's polite manners and devotion. The maid happily expresses her joy about the match, contrasting it with Lucia's past heartbreak. She continues to praise the Marquis' impeccable character and constant kindness with a bright smile. Looking out the window, Lucia's sweat drops as she realizes the maid is mistakenly comparing him to Herwin. The maid playfully accuses Lucia of leaving her behind on purpose to avoid these conversations. Flustered, Lucia waves her hands frantically, claiming she only wanted to spare her from extra chores. Desperate to change the subject, Lucia excitedly suggests stopping by the shopping district to buy handkerchief materials. Lucia asks if they have any white silk left at home to prepare for her embroidery project. The cheerful maid readily agrees as the carriage rattles down the paved streets of a busy city. The sunlit shopping district bustles with activity as carriages and citizens move between tall buildings. Two armed palace guards carrying long spears march vigilantly past the elegant storefronts. Noticing the unusual tension, Lucia questions a nearby guard about the high volume of street patrols. The guard reveals that terrifying monsters have suddenly been sighted lurking within the capital city. He urgently advises Lucia and her maid to return home and avoid traveling alone outdoors. Brown-haired Lucia smiles warmly and acknowledges her maid Cian's suggestion inside the shop. Bright sunlight illuminates the luxurious interior of the boutique, showcasing elegant displays of fabrics. The blonde shopkeeper cheerfully presents a shimmering piece of white silk woven with gold thread. Cian excitedly recommends the white silk fabric, but Lucia hesitates with a troubled look. A dark memory of sewing Herwin's handkerchief reminds Lucia why she cannot use this fabric. Requesting to see other options, Lucia asks the shopkeeper for materials suited for her gift. Lucia's expression darkens as she reveals her plan to make a handkerchief for her fiancé. Changing her phrasing, Lucia clarifies that she wants to give it as a good luck charm. Cian looks at her mistress with sudden realization and concern about her intentions.
Lucia gently smiles, trying to reassure her concerned maid that everything is fine.
The shopkeeper eagerly presents several rolls of brighter-colored fabrics for Lucia to choose from. Multicolored rolls of premium silk fabrics gleam brightly under the warm store lights. Pleased with a vibrant green silk, Lucia decides it will perfectly suit the recipient. Clapping her hands, the delighted shopkeeper inquires if she should wrap the fabric. Lucia happily hugs the chosen green fabric, excited to begin her embroidery at home. Two women walk out of the elegant boutique as the shopkeeper bids them farewell. Lucia cheerfully asks Cian where they should go next on their shopping trip. Cian's stomach suddenly rumbles loudly, causing her to blush in extreme embarrassment. Smiling playfully, Lucia suggests they grab a bite to eat first to satisfy Cian's hunger. As they walk down the paved street, a suspicious hooded figure observes them from behind. The hooded man intentionally brushes past them, walking closely behind the distracted women. Bumping hard against Cian, the mysterious thief swiftly snatches the blue shopping bag. Cian gasps in shock and screams to alert everyone of the pickpocket. Urging Lucia to stay put, Cian prepares to run and call the nearby guards. Before Serene can react, Lucia suddenly dashes past her in pursuit of the thief. Gathering her long skirts, Lucia runs down the street with fierce determination. Cian watches in complete despair, panicking over her lady's surprisingly reckless behavior. A childhood memory flashes back, illustrating a young Lucia running in terror from a wolf. Puffing heavily, Lucia continues her desperate chase through the city's winding alleys. Slowing down, Lucia gasps for breath, realizing her high-heeled shoes are hindering her speed. Exhausted, Lucia leans forward and clutches her chest, fearing she has lost the thief. A sudden, loud shout nearby startles Lucia, drawing her attention further down the alley. A sharp heel clicks against the pavement as someone steps forward to block the path. The hooded thief struggles fruitlessly as a tall, dark-clothed man firmly grabs him. Turning the corner, Lucia cautiously approaches to see who stopped the fleeing pickpocket. The black-haired Herwin glares coldly at the thief, scolding him for stealing in daylight. A sword hangs at Herwin's waist as he holds the thief in an iron grip. Lucia freezes in absolute shock as she recognizes the man standing before her. Herwin's eyes widen in surprise as he looks up and spots Lucia standing nearby. Seizing the moment of distraction, the thief cries out as he struggles to break free. With a sudden twist, the thief successfully breaks away from Erwin's grasp. The thief quickly runs off, dropping the blue shopping bag onto the paved ground. Retrieving the dropped bag, Herwin holds it out and asks Lucia if it belongs to her. Amidst a soft glow of flowers, the two stand together in a tense, silent reunion. The city guard runs up and assures Herwin that they will apprehend the thief. The fleeing thief complains that he only wanted to steal food, feeling unfairly pursued. Shouting angrily, Lucia retorts that there is absolutely no excuse for stealing. Anger fading, Lucia looks up at Herwin with a mixture of confusion and shock. Feeling awkward, Herwin rubs the back of his neck and gently asks if she is all right. Lucia softly thanks him, holding her back close as she acknowledges his timely help. Lucia warmly smiles as she reveals her plan to make a special handkerchief for Byrne. Herwin looks away, quietly acknowledging her response with a somber expression. Lucia asks Herwin if his cold has improved, and he quietly confirms that he has recovered. Herwin rubs his neck awkwardly, feeling a lingering tension as they stand together in silence. Lucia frantically waves her hand, blushing as she quickly denies his unspoken assumption. Lucia reassures Herwin with a bright smile, telling him not to worry since he did nothing wrong. Herwin gazes at her with a troubled expression, softly repeating that he understands. Herwin reflects on his past behavior, concluding that Lucia's casual reaction proves she no longer has feelings for him. Lucia politely bids him farewell as she prepares to take her leave. Herwin suddenly calls out to stop Lucia, prompting her to turn back in surprise. Herwin stands tall and gently warns Lucia to be careful on her journey home. Lucia realizes that patrol duty brought him there, which Herwin quietly confirms. Herwin hesitantly asks if he can escort her for a portion of her walk home. Lucia politely declines, teasingly reminding him to be careful instead after his past injury by an ogre. Lucia cheerfully bids him goodbye as she spins around and walks away. Herwin is left standing completely alone in the quiet alley, staring at the closed doors. Herwin slowly turns and walks away, his expression filled with a quiet, lingering sadness. Night falls over the grand estate, bathed in the soft glow of street lamps and starlight. Inside the manor, Sign asks Lucia if she actually ran into Herwin earlier that day. Lucia cheerfully explains how Herwin caught the pickpocket, marveling at the incredible coincidence of their meeting. Lucia explains Herwin was patrolling due to monster sightings, prompting an understanding nod from Scene. As Lucia embroiders blue flowers, she reassures Scene that the knights will keep them safe from monsters. Scene points out the large amount of leftover fabric, and Lucia admits she bought extra. Lucia thoughtfully muses to herself about using the leftover green fabric to sew a handkerchief for Herwin. Scene gasps in utter shock at the suggestion, while Lucia looks completely bewildered by her reaction. Flustered, Lucia quickly laughs off her slip of the tongue, blaming it on her extreme exhaustion. Scene sternly warns Lucia that giving another man a handkerchief while engaged is highly inappropriate behavior. Lucia quickly agrees, assuring her maid that it was merely nonsense she blurted out without thinking. A quiet, heavy silence falls over the room as Lucia gazes down at her embroidery hoop. Sign hesitantly asks her mistress if she still harbors lingering feelings for Herwin. Lucia immediately denies the accusation, her eyes widening in complete shock and vulnerability. Lucia clutches her embroidery tightly, trembling as a wave of intense emotion suddenly washes over her. Scene watches with rising concern as Lucia stands frozen, tears welling up in her eyes. Forcing a strained smile through her tears, Lucia quietly announces that she needs to rest. Scene bows politely and quietly exits the room, leaving her mistress alone with her thoughts. Outside the door, Scene deeply worries that Lucia still harbors feelings for her past lover. A quiet doubt arises, questioning whether Lucia should reconsider her entire engagement to Marquis Casper. Lucia looks deeply shaken, her eyes wide with shock as the painful realization sinks in. Scene bows and apologizes for being too forward, promising to bring some warm tea immediately. Her attention is drawn by a sudden soft clack of the door gently closing behind her. Clutching the fabric tightly, Lucia desperately reminds herself that she must not behave this way. Tearfully, Lucia resolves to take responsibility for her chosen path to avoid causing Byrne any trouble. Sitting alone, Lucia silently begs herself to remain strong and stop wavering in her decision. The scene shifts to a grand, sunlit office where Arista and Eris work in quiet focus. Ares suddenly pauses his work, confessing that he has an ominous, bad feeling about something. Ares predicts that something troublesome is looming, which catches Arista's attention as she looks up. Lucas cheerfully bursts into the office, warmly calling out to Ares and Arista as he enters. Arista happily greets Lucas while Ares facepalms in despair that his troublesome prediction was immediately proven correct. Lucas happily unpacks gifts from his bag while Ares insists he is perfectly fine in the background. Lucas sighs and playfully complains to Arista about how grumpy Ares always chooses to be. Lucas cheerfully suggests eating the treats themselves, and a flustered Arista reluctantly agrees. Arista asks about the special occasion, and Lucas explains he made time specifically for today. Lucas winks playfully, explaining he simply wanted to come and meet her. Arista beams happily, touched that he went out of his way to bring her food. With a sharp click of heels, an elegant woman arrives and playfully teases the princess. Turning around in surprise, Lucas blushes while Arista questions the newcomer's identity. Recognizing her friend Becky, Arista listens as the woman expresses relief about not postponing their date. Becky steps forward, realizing that it was actually Lady Arista who initiated the meeting. Arista freezes in shock, confused by the sudden mention of a postponed date. Becky affectionately leans on Lucas, calling him honey, which a blushing Lucas happily confirms. Arista looks away in mild annoyance, questioning the need to monitor each other's moves. Becky marvels at the abundance of sweets, and Arista explains she bought extra for everyone. Lucas animatedly joins the conversation, expressing his excitement to share the treats. A sudden, heavy footstep echoes as Aries arrives and slumps down onto the sofa. Lucas cheerfully offers to pour the tea for everyone to ease the tension. Quick footsteps sound as Lucas heads off to fetch the refreshments. A quiet, tense silence falls over the room as the three wait in awkward stillness. Trying to break the ice, Becky politely asks Aries if he prefers cookies or cake. Aries bluntly declines, stating that he does not have a fondness for sweets. Becky giggles softly, admitting she fully expected him to give that exact response. When Becky presses about his favorite foods, a suspicious Aries asks if she is teasing him. Becky acts surprised, while Arista silently judges her behavior as inappropriate for an engaged woman. Becky's eyes well up with tears as she reacts to the unspoken criticism. Becky tearfully asks why she is being painted as a villain, prompting a weary sigh from Arista. Arista bites her tongue, realizing further complaints will only make her look unreasonable. Lucas returns with a bright smile, triumphantly presenting a tray of freshly brewed tea. Setting the tray down, Lucas asks if anything happened, but Becky quickly denies it. Becky clings to Lucas's arm dramatically, though he points out he was only gone 5 minutes. Aries sternly demands they show some restraint and save their affection for private moments. Taken aback by his harsh tone, Becky quickly offers a polite apology. Arista sips her tea, quietly pleased that her brother is so surprisingly in sync with her. Becky suddenly asks if Arista is seeing anyone, causing her to choke on her tea. Arista quickly denies it, privately panicking because Becky already knows her feelings for Lucas. Becky smiles knowingly, commenting that Arista seems like she would have many admirers. Becky turns to Lucas, suggesting it is a waste for Arista to remain single. Becky playfully suggests introducing Arista to a man, while Lucas chuckles in agreement. As Arista stammers a refusal, Lucas surprisingly agrees that a blind date is a good idea. Lucas smilingly warns Becky to be careful with her selection of potential suitors. Lucas's smile fades as he looks directly at Becky with a serious, testing gaze. Becky freezes in complete shock, her face losing all color at his implication. Flying into a rage, Becky loudly demands to know if he thinks her friends aren't good enough. Terrified by her explosive reaction, Lucas frantically waves his hands to deny her accusation. Lucas desperately apologizes for his slip of the tongue, while an angry Becky warns him to be careful. Arista intervenes with a polite smile, firmly stating that she has no need for any introductions. Arista clarifies that she is currently not interested in romance, so they shouldn't bother. Becky tilts her head in deep confusion, finding Arista's lack of interest quite strange. An ominous shadow falls over Arista as Becky brings up her past confession of liking someone. Lucas looks at Arista in pure shock, demanding to know if she truly has someone she likes. Sweating nervously, Arista quickly turns away and insists that Becky must be mistaken. Lucas is left completely stunned, his wide eyes betraying his intense shock and dismay. Becky senses Arista's mounting tension and looks back at her with a highly skeptical gaze. Aries quietly sips his tea while reflecting on the growing friction in the room. Aries claims to have figured out the truth, causing Lucas to panic and demand to know the identity of Arista's crush. A sudden rustling sound draws their attention as Aries reaches into the box to grab a cookie. Aries forcefully shoves a cookie into Lucas's mouth, bluntly telling him to remain silent. As evening approaches, Becky warmly expresses her appreciation for the pleasant day they spent together. Becky turns her attention back to Arista, smiling politely as she addresses the princess. Becky requests some private time with Arista, prompting a confused but agreeable response from Lucas. Arista stands up abruptly to accompany her guest, ready to conclude their gathering. Arista turns around sharply, her expression filled with a mixture of suspicion and unease. Becky lets out a quiet smirk, clearly harboring a hidden motive as they prepare to speak. Becky bids a sweet, affectionate farewell to Lucas before stepping away. Quiet clack echoes through the room as the door gently closes behind them. Lucas wonders aloud when Arista and Becky became close enough to share private secrets. Aries sighs and shakes his head, criticizing Lucas for his utter lack of awareness. Out in the courtyard, Becky begins the conversation by addressing Arista's obvious curiosity. Becky tells Arista to relax, claiming she only wants to clarify a certain matter. When Arista questions her intent, Becky drops a bombshell about her upcoming engagement to Lucas. Becky beams with triumph, clearly enjoying the impact of her shocking announcement. Arista is left entirely speechless, staring in utter disbelief at her rival. Becky gloats about Lucas's bright future and his deep, unquestioning devotion to her. Arista angrily demands to know if Becky has truly severed her relationships with other suitors. Becky nonchalantly dismisses the concern, provoking further outrage from a highly disgusted Arista. Becky mockingly reminds Arista that her anger is useless and that she has never taken action. Becky delivers a parting warning, calling Arista a coward who is too afraid to confess her feelings. The scene shifts to Casper, who gravely observes the destruction and notes the situation is worse than expected. Casper deduces that the threat has shifted territories rather than merely expanding its reach. Casper's gloved hand picks up a sharp fragment of debris, confirming the lack of monster activity in the west. Casper realizes the monsters migrated due to a lack of food, raising a disturbing possibility. The subordinate respectfully bows and acknowledges Casper's commands as they plan their next move. Heavy footsteps echo through the ruins as Casper investigates reports of a massive early morning explosion. Casper observes the uneven path of destruction, finding the selective damage highly unusual. The subordinate reports back, relieved that there were no human casualties despite the heavy damage. Casper questions the report, expressing deep skepticism about the lack of any casualties. Casper points out that typical monster instincts drive them to attack people rather than focus on storage. Referring to a map, Casper notes the monsters targeted food storehouses, suggesting they are raising young. The subordinate argues that intelligent monsters should avoid the heavily patrolled area near the royal forest. Casper agrees, explaining that the lack of casualties was a calculated choice to avoid night intervention. The discussion is suddenly interrupted as a soldier in a red uniform freezes at attention nearby. The soldier bows respectfully, greeting the Lord and waiting for permission to speak. The soldier explains he is checking the outskirts to prepare for the upcoming summer hunt festival. The soldier reveals they are relocating wild beasts to stock the royal forest for the hunt. Casper immediately connects the relocation of prey to the monster's sudden migration for food. Casper dismisses the soldier, who bows and thanks him before taking his leave. Casper warns his subordinate that the monsters will inevitably head toward the prey-rich areas. Casper realizes that the migrating monsters will soon target the royal forest itself. Casper worries that participating nobles will be in grave danger, yet canceling the festival is impossible. A sudden, chilling realization strikes Casper as he remembers a crucial detail. Casper realizes that Lucia is scheduled to attend the hunt, putting her directly in harm's way. Refusing to let Lucia face danger, Casper immediately orders his men to move out. Vern questions where they are heading as they walk through the tout. The red-eyed man looks back over his shoulder with a quiet, questioning gaze. Vern stands outside the brick building, arms crossed as he waits patiently. Vern smiles warmly as he calls out Lucia's name upon spotting her. Celine turns around in surprise, startled to hear Vern calling out to her. Vern questions her presence, prompting Celine to apologize for their last encounter. Celine looks down bashfully, softly expressing her heartfelt gratitude to him as well. Vern looks at Celine with a mixture of surprise and slight awkwardness. Celine's eyes widen in sudden shock as she notices someone approaching from behind. Celine beams with a radiant, joyful smile, her worries seemingly melting away. Lucia stands a short distance away, silently observing the two of them together. Lucia freezes in utter shock, her hand clutched tightly against her chest. Vern gasps in startled surprise as he suddenly notices Lucia standing nearby. Vern frantically explains their meeting was coincidental, while Lucia calmly greets his companion. Celine expresses her sincere condolences, which Lucia politely accepts with a quiet thanks. Celine politely bows and takes her leave, wishing them a pleasant time together. Vern anxiously reassures Lucia once more that his encounter with Celine was purely accidental. Lucia giggles softly at his nervous reaction, completely unfazed by the situation. Vern holds the door open and invites Lucia inside, to which she happily agrees. Lucia internally reflects that Vern's flustered state reveals his true feelings for Celine. Lucia sadly admits she would react similarly if she encountered Vern while with Herwin. Lucia doubts if their engagement can succeed while they both long for other people. The two walk side by side in quiet reflection as evening begins to fall. Vern expresses how much he enjoyed their time together, and Lucia warmly agrees. Lucia points out that her carriage has arrived first to take her home. A white horse-drawn carriage pulls up smoothly on the cobblestone street to meet them. Vern warns of nearby monster sightings, but Lucia assures him they are far away. Vern bids Lucia a safe journey home as she offers a polite parting bow. Vern stands waving farewell as the carriage wheels begin to roll away down the street. Night falls over the grand estate, bathed in a brilliant, star-filled blue sky. Back home, Lucia sits at a table reading a book with her maid. Lucia lets out a weary sigh, her thoughts clearly weighed down by heavy worries. Sane asks if she quarreled with Marquise Casper, but Lucia quickly denies it. Sine wonders if she is anxious about the upcoming summer festival, catching Lucia off guard. Sine excitedly explains the festival's grand scale and the importance of what she wears. Lucia suddenly gasps as a crucial realization about the festival strikes her mind. Lucia recalls the pleasant conversation she shared with Vern regarding his preference for green tones. In her memory, Lucia cheerfully promises to wear a green dress for the event. Present-day Lucia panics in absolute horror upon remembering her promise to wear green. Lucia frantically begs Sine to find a dressmaker quickly, leaving the maid completely baffled. They arrive outside the grand boutique named Rosienne to find a suitable outfit. Blonde woman warmly expresses her joy that Lucia was able to make time today. The blonde woman asks her companion how she managed to secure a meeting with Lucia. Her companion explains that Lucia had previously turned down invitations, claiming she was too busy. Gray-haired woman pauses thoughtfully as she recalls her friend's busy schedule. The blonde woman inquires if that busy schedule was the reason for their current venue. Her companion finds it highly unusual that Lucia is rushing to secure a dress last minute. Down below, a rhythmic clacking sound echoes as the carriage rolls over the stone streets. Two women stand together, watching the empty carriage depart down the narrow street. Lucia bursts into the room in a bright yellow dress, apologizing for her delay. The maid frantically warns her rushing mistress to be careful so she doesn't trip.
Blonde woman cheerfully reassures Lucia that they have not been waiting very long.
The gray-haired woman kindly tells Lucia they are fine and advises her to be careful.